What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 15 Pi Chapter 341 You were hanging, brothers, run? What? Brother Pinktu. Sorata looked at the guy standing with Ahua, whose body was not as big as Ahua, but whose aura was more violent than Ahua. There was a strange flash in his eyes. The front of this guy is covered with black hair, but the top of the head has white hair, and the white hair extends all the way to the back, like a white blanket. Isn't this Brother Pinktu? Brother Pinktu, whose real name is Honeybadger, is a member of the Weaselidy family. It is a member of the same family as the weasels and ferrets we are talking about, but it has its own subfamily of honeybadgers. Because the white hair on the top of their heads makes the top of their foreheads look flat, they are named flat-headed brothers. Haha. Shaking his head, Sorata raised his head and took a sip of his wine. He didn't expect to meet such an interesting fruitability user here. Judging by this guy's appearance, if Awa doesn't use his full strength, he probably won't be his opponent. Yes, this is New World after all. If it is still the same as the first half of the park, it will be boring. The joy of reunion is always short-lived. Charles and the others have not forgotten that there are countless pirates out there. So they followed Sophie to the Liberty, and thanked Kuina, the savior. Then he walked to the other side of the Liberty, stood by the guardrail, and looked at the battlefield in the distance. Charles and the others have been harassed by the pirates for several months, so naturally they are not in the mood to care about the newspapers, and they don't know who Sorata and the others are. But they could see from the battlefield that the pirates didn't want to fight. Therefore, it is also guessed that Sorata's group should be stronger. So I felt more at ease. However, the battlefield was changing rapidly, and the four of Ahua gradually fell into a disadvantage after a while. After all, these pirates are not newbies. Even if they cooperated tacitly, they killed a lot of pirates, but there are a lot of pirates after all. There are not only 3 leading pirates, but also more than a dozen cadres who know hockey. Under the siege, the four of Ahua have to move closer to the center, and their physical strength is also rapidly exhausted. On the Liberty, Charles and the others looked at the four Ahua who were deeply trapped among the pirates, with anxious expressions on their faces. If Ahua and others are defeated, then the pirates will come again. Charles tilted his head to look at Kuina and Robin who were standing aside, and said in a serious tone, "Benefactor, shall we go up and help those four?" Kuina tilted her head and glanced at Charles, with the corners of her mouth upturned, and said with a smile, "It's still early." Morning. Puzzled faces appeared on the faces of Charles and others. They are all surrounded by pirates. Anyone with a discerning eye can tell that Ahua and the others are at a disadvantage. Is it too early? Kuina didn't explain either, and just signaled them to just watch. Although Charles and the others were anxious, there was nothing they could do. They knew their strength, and in the past they would have been sent to death. Since no one else was in a hurry, they had no choice but to let go of the anxiety in their hearts and turn their eyes to the battlefield again. Advertisement just when they felt that the four of Ahua were getting exhausted. They saw the four of them take out a carrot from their pockets at the same time. Carrots, normal carrots. What's the use of this? Not only were they puzzled, even the pirates were also puzzled. The four of Ahua swung away their opponents, took a step back, raised the carrot, and opened their mouths to take a bite. Don't chew it carefully, just swallow it directly into the stomach. The next moment, their unceasingly rising and falling chests calmed down instantly, and their panting also stopped. The look that was still panting a moment ago suddenly returned to the state they had just landed from the Liberty. The pirates looked at the four of Ahua, all stunned, and swallowed. The same sentence popped up in my heart, FK. There are rumors, I want to report, someone is publicly cheating. The 3 ghost hands froze in place. How the hell did this fight? The 4 of them were about to be suppressed. They took a bite of a carrot and revived with full blood. What the hell? The 3 looked at each other. Hang brothers, run. The 3 turned around at the same time, divided into 3 directions, and ran towards other directions. There are 2 scary guys at the back, and there are 4 hanging walls in front. It is impossible to fight. You can only survive by smearing oil on the soles of your feet and running away. So all 3 of them used all their strength, but not for fighting, but for escaping. Charles and the others were speechless as they watched the battlefield that had changed instantly. Then a look of excitement appeared on his face. They can tell. These pirates are now headless flies, just want to escape. Run? Can you run away? The 4 recovered their strength, looked at the fleeing pirates, rushed over again, found their opponents, and started to fight rumblingly. One side has no scruples, and the other just wants to escape, so although the battle is fierce, it is also exceptionally peaceful. Looking at the pirates who left the boss and kept heading towards the big ship parked by the sea in the distance, Sorata had a look of boredom in his eyes. Advertisement. Then he stared slightly ahead, click. The void generates electricity. An overbearing aura that was much stronger than the previous ghost hand swept across the entire battlefield like a wave of water. The fleeing pirates froze for a moment, then their eyes turned white and they fell to the ground. This is... The 3 ghost hands who were fighting against the 3 of Ahua looked up at the white figure sitting lazily on the top of the mast of the Liberty at the same time. It was as if the heart had been squeezed by a pair of big hands, and the blood all over his body stopped for a moment. This feeling is familiar to them. The bull-horned monster that left countless shadows on them had such a domineering aura that seemed to surpass everything. Although Ghost Hand also has Conqueror's Haki, he knows that his Conqueror's Haki can only deter ordinary people, and he should not whisper to people like Sorata, who is truly on top of the world. You dare to be distracted while fighting with me. Adao looked at Mark, who paused slightly, with the corners of her mouth raised, and a cruel smile appeared on her face. The raised sword slashed at Mark without hesitation. The attack of the blade brought Mark back to his senses in an instant. He was not a novice. Although Adao's sword was fast, he still raised his weapon and made a blocking movement. But when he turned his head and met Adao's orange pupils, his body stopped in place strangely, as if he had been immobilized. A hint of sarcasm flashed in Adao's pupils, and he flipped the sword with his right hand, covering Armament Haki's blade, from right to left, from top to bottom, and slashed across Mark's neck without hesitation. Puff. The severe pain in the body made Mark's eyes clear in an instant. He opened his mouth to shout, but his neck was cut off, so he could only make a small sound. Then the darkness hit. His body couldn't support the weight of the darkness, causing him to fall backwards. The moment he fell, his body and head were separated. Bump, splashing faint dust, the last sliver of clarity disappeared from Gululu's head that was rolling towards the distance, and in a pair of eyes full of unwillingness. Adao looked at Mark's body, pursed her lips, and then swung her right hand to the right. Puff, the clear one-shaped bloodline is inconspicuous on this battlefield, but it is so dazzling in the eyes of Liberty, Charles, and others. Dazzling, their eye sockets instantly turned red, with warm tears swirling inside. They knew that the disaster of Kokolua was over, past. Chapter 342 Blood Debt paid in blood. The battlefield changes rapidly. Mark's death caused the hearts of Guisho and others to contract violently, making them feel as if they were about to suffocate for a moment. They had no intention of fighting, but after Mark's death, they panicked and fell into a disadvantage in the battle with Aluo and Ahua in an instant. And their subordinates even gave up besieging Brook, turned around and ran away. However, the other party lacked a mark, so no one could restrain Adao. His tall body was like a violent rhinoceros, and there was no enemy wherever he went. Even if these pirates have awakened Armament Haki, but the gap between them and Adao is too large, and they have no intention of fighting at all, just want to escape, so under the pursuit of Adao and Brook, they will be killed on the battlefield after a while. Only the Ghost Hand and the Hunter are still fighting. Seeing that all his subordinates were dead, unprecedented fear appeared on the faces of Ghost Hand and Hunter. In the past, they also gave others fear in this way, but now it's their turn, really unhappy with retribution. The fear in their hearts, coupled with the tall figures of Adao and Brook standing aside watching the play, completely changed the shape of their attack, and they followed Mark's footsteps in a short while. At the last moment of death, Ghost Hand turned his head and glanced at Liberty and Sophie, with regret in his eyes. The first time he saw Sophie, he knew why the silver-haired gang came here. He sent his men to capture Sophie. On the one hand, it was to make Kelu mess up, and on the other hand, it was also to further test Marine. However, he didn't expect that it was such a normal decision that ruined them. If he had known earlier, he would not have sold Sophie to traffickers for the hundreds of thousands of berry. If Sophie was killed, wouldn't the current situation be over? If Sophie was killed, wouldn't they just let them plunder the huge city in the distance and the countless treasures in the palace? Unwilling. However, it was useless to be unwilling. The bullet would not show mercy to his reluctance, and ended his sinful life straight away. So slow. Adao returned to her human body, with her left arm on her chest, a cigarette in her right hand, hanging on the right side, squinting, and haughtily glanced at Aluo and Awa, eyes full of contempt. What did you guys say? As soon as Aluo and Awa came over, they were ridiculed by Adao, and the flame in their hearts was instantly ignited. I said, you were really slow. Why? Adao squinted at Aluo and Awa, took a puff of cigarette gracefully, then put down her hand, leaned forward, exhaled a puff of smoke at the two of them, and said contemptuously, not convinced? Unconvinced, come and bite me. ADVERTISEMENT. You be ********** D. I've had enough of you. Awa and the two looked at each other, their bodies swelled rapidly, and rushed towards Adao with a roar. Adao looked at the two of them, curled her lips in disdain, then threw away the cigarette in her hand, twisted her neck, and her body swelled accordingly. Then without hesitation, they rushed towards Ahua and the others. Boom, the three of them collided with each other in an instant, and the momentum was louder than their fight with the Ghost Hand. This, on the Liberty, Charles and the others looked excited, but were a little confused by the three of Ahua. Is this an infighting? They quickly turned to look at Sorata. Sensing the strange gaze cast by Charles and others, the corners of Sorata's mouth twitched. These guys are too disrespectful of the occasion. This good hero is not suitable, but must be a funny comparison. Sorata turned around, looked at Charles, and smiled indifferently. It's okay, they just have too much energy, it's just that they didn't have a good time just now. Usually there's Kuina on board, and the three of them want to release the ever-expanding power, so they can only expect to meet the pirates, but the pirates in the first half are basically instantly killed by Arlo, which makes them feel powerless. So as soon as they landed on the island, they would tacitly find all kinds of excuses and fight to release their power-expanding rage. Although the three Ghost Hands were strong, they wanted to escape, and Mark died too quickly, which caused the remaining two to collapse quickly. Therefore, although the three had fought for a while, they really didn't enjoy themselves. Therefore, as soon as the battle is over, the next battle will begin. Oh, Charles and the others nodded, although they didn't believe it, but since the benefactor said so, let's treat it as excess energy. Anyway, this is their own business, and they are not qualified to take care of it. Oh, right. Charles suddenly looked at Sorata with a serious face, his bloodshot eyes were full of murderous intent. Of course, the killing intent couldn't be aimed at Sorata, but... What's wrong? Sorata was startled, and looked at Charles suspiciously. Advertisement. The strong murderous intent emerging from Charles made him a little strange. The pirates are all here. Who is his murderous intent aimed at? I think. Charles turned his head and looked at the countless pirates who fell on the ground outside. The hatred and murderous intent on his body seemed to be condensed into a solid body. And the generals behind him also understood their king's plan at this moment, so they also condensed murderous intent. These guys can't let them go. The city of Butrice, where the Kokoroto Palace is located, is the center and radiates to the entire island. During this time, the pirates destroyed all the towns except Bretis, causing countless casualties and captured civilians. Seeing that the enemy is right in front of them, although these pirates are already down, they will not just let them go. Blood debts are paid in blood. Sorata looked at Charles with contemptuous eyes, and gradually became serious. He didn't intend to let these pirates go, he was still thinking about sending them to hell later, but now it seems that it is obvious that Charles and others can't wait any longer. That's right, they flew from outside the island, and all they saw along the way were ruins. He could imagine how much harm the pirates had brought to this island and this kingdom during this period of time. Lawless pirates don't know how to treat common people with kindness. In their eyes, there is only Barry, only one life. This is the status quo of the island without the sea area guarded by marine. He has seen it in Bath. It's just that Base was after the event. Although he saw it, he didn't see the tragedy happen. However, K. Keladuo is different. He can feel the sadness of Charles and others. After all, countless compatriots have died at the hands of pirates outside. And more compatriots don't know where they were sold. So he has no reason to stop and will not stop the ideas of Charles and others. It's good to vent. Sorata nodded and said in a deep voice, whatever you want to do, go for it. Thanks. Charles and the others bowed to thank Sorata, then stood up, drew their weapons suddenly, and jumped off the Liberty. This time it's not hell, it's revenge, it's venting, it's revenge for those who died for Coco Ludo. Therefore, even if the enemies have all fallen to the ground and have no power to fight back, they will not show any mercy. Chapter 343 Horror Strikes. Sorata and the others looked at the backs of Charles and the others without speaking. They could feel the sadness emanating from Charles and others. The world looks beautiful on the surface. But under this beauty, there are all kinds of darkness hidden, as well as unparalleled oppression. They sailed all the way to say the most peaceful island. Actually not. Not nothing, their hometown, Seymour GG village is very peaceful, but it is in the remote place of East Blue, under the protection of Marine, and the hero Garp goes back from time to time, which caused the weakest East Blue in the name of the sea. And there are not many places like this in this world. From his perspective, there is probably no truly peaceful place. Even in the sky above 10,000 meters, wars are breaking out, and there are oppressions from powerful beings called gods. Even the Fishmen Island under 10,000 meters is nestled in the air bubbles, living a life like a prison bird because of the arrival of countless pirates and human traffickers. What really prevents this world from becoming prosperous is not the danger of nature, because as long as the danger of nature reaches a certain level, although it is also very dangerous, it can be avoided consciously. And what stops all of this is the human heart, the lawlessness, and the malice that keeps growing after gaining power. In this world where freedom is the ideal, the rules made by the world government selfishly only serve a few people, and the people at the bottom don't care about life or death. Although there are marines, the sea is too vast, and the world government will not take care of countries that do not pay them protection fees. So tragedy is everywhere. There are dangers of the sea outside, pirates, and nobles inside. It is conceivable how difficult the life of the people at the bottom is. That's why the world is so closed. People shut themselves on their own small islands, like frogs in a well. Although they yearn for the outside world, the fear given to them by the heart and the sea stops them. Advertisement. This is also the reason why in this world, developed places are very developed, while backward places are like primitive societies. And the source of all tragedies is feudalism. In order to end this tragedy, we must fundamentally solve the problem. Make rules, really fair rules. Support Marine, let them truly serve the whole sea, the whole world. The most important point is the abolition of slavery. If there were no slavery, there would be fewer pirates and fewer tragedies in this world. The last is to completely open up the whole world and communicate with each other, then this world will no longer be a feudal society, but will gradually become a society ruled by law. Sorata can't solve all the tragedies in this world, and he won't do anything to make rules, and breaking the feudalism of the world is not what he should do. But although he can't solve the above, he can solve slavery. And to solve slavery, we must first. Sorata raised her head and looked in the direction of Red Line, her eyes filled with murderous intent. No rush, it's not safe enough yet. Although he doesn't know the specific strength of IM, he can erase 100 years of history, erase a peak power that has dominated the world for an unknown number of years, coerce the 20 strongest countries in the world, and sit on the top of the world, the void throne 800 years. The power he possessed absolutely surpassed everyone's imagination. It can be known from the Kraken that in the years long ago, a very powerful technological civilization must have been born on this planet. Such a civilization might have already figured out what devil fruit is, and the current devil fruit might have been made at that time. And maybe it also produced nuclear weapons and even more powerful weapons. Although he is not afraid, his partners and relatives are. He has to be truly invincible before he can go to the top of the world and overthrow this ignorant slave system that disgusts him. Sorata withdrew her gaze, raised the wine gourd in her hand, gulped a few gulps, then took a step forward, lying on the guardrail with her upper body, staring at the carnage in the distance. Advertisement just when he was in a trance. What he didn't know was that at the end of the horizon, above the sky beyond the clouds, a huge monster was approaching rapidly. It came from outer space, and I couldn't see what it was. Due to its high speed, it rubbed against the atmosphere and produced flames. From a distance, it looked like a broom dragging a long flame. Wherever it passes, the surrounding space is distorted. Just by looking at it from a distance, one can feel the frightening energy contained in this behemoth. If this energy falls on an island, it can instantly destroy an island. And this huge monster, the direction of going here is Kekeleduo. More than 10 minutes ago, behind Sorata and the others, Bretz, who was separated from the city wall by only one wall, was in a fruit stand near the city gate. A middle-aged man with ordinary looks, ordinary clothes, and everything, felt the quiet outside, couldn't help but walk to the gate of the city, and looked out through the cracks in the gate. When he saw the liberty outside, his pupils shrank violently, and his ordinary temperament suddenly changed, becoming extremely profound. Then he withdrew his gaze, quickly retreated to the house behind the fruit stand, took out a phone bug from a secret place, hesitated for a moment, and dialed the number. That's right, he is a member of the CP organization. There are members like him in almost every island in the world. They don't have much strength, but they are the eyes and ears of the world government. They have only one role, which is to represent the world government and listen to the voices of every corner of the world. A few days ago, he received an order from his superiors to report to the Silver Hair Pirates as soon as he saw them. Blue blue blue. The call was made, and it was connected immediately. He quickly told the news about the silver-haired pirate in Cocoa Road, and before he received any further instructions, the other person hung up the phone, and asked him to stand there with the microphone in a daze. But he didn't think much about it. After hiding the phone bug, he continued to restore it to its original state. After leaving the room, he was still the ordinary fruit stand owner. After the CP organization received the news, it reported it immediately, and within a few minutes, a news about the silver-haired pirates in Cocoa Road was placed in the lobby where the 5 elders usually stayed. The 5 elders who received the news became serious instantly. They looked at each other, picked up the paper in front of them, stood up, and secretly went to the holy place, among the flowers in the forbidden place, through the hidden portal behind them. In an empty and bright room full of blue moss and surrounded by flowers, they saw I Am covered in a black robe. Chapter 344 Danger Arrives. Master I Am. Facing I Am's back, the 5 elders all knelt down to show their respect. What's up? I Am covered in black robes, stretched out his right hand, and caught a colorful butterfly flying in front of him. He didn't look back, but the indistinguishable and emotionless voice of 5 elders clearly rang in the mind. Wearing a dark blue suit, the long-bearded 5 elders respectfully said, Master I Am, the coordinates of the silver-haired pirates are already available. The silver-haired pirates? Im's slender eyes narrowed slightly, and a murderous intent appeared in the blood-red pupils. He shook his hands lightly, let go of the butterfly, and then turned to look at the bearded 5 elders holding the map in both hands. At his feet, there were a few reward orders scattered around, on which were Sorata, Kuina, and Robin's head. He didn't see any movement. The map automatically flew in front of him. He reached out to take it, and then calmly said, Okay, I understand, you can go down. 5 elders hurriedly moved their bodies, took a few steps back, and then stood up, not daring to look directly at I Am, but lowered their heads, turned around, and quickly walked out of the room. I Am waited until 5 elders walked out of the room and disappeared into the dark corridor before looking down at the map. On the map, there was a big red dot on an island close to Calm Belt, where the new world started, and the name on it was Kekeleduo. Coco Ludo. I Am looked at the map with no emotion in his eyes, and then he took out a pen from nowhere, then raised his hand, and marked a big fork on the island of Kokorodo on the map. Those who try to challenge the authority of the world government, who try to uncover history, and who try to spy on me will be ruthlessly obliterated and completely disappeared in history. The indifferent, murderous voice resounded throughout the room. Time to go back to Cocoa Road. Although there were a lot of pirates, they all fell to the ground after all. There were dozens of people including Charles and others, as well as the soldiers who came down from the city wall behind. They just went to make up the knife, one knife, and quickly sent all the pirates to hell in 10 minutes. And after they killed the pirates, they took a look at the 3 Ahuas who were still fighting, and they didn't stop. Under the order of Charles, they rushed into the city quickly to announce the victory. After all, the people in the city are blocked by the city wall, and they don't know the situation outside at all, and they are wandering and hiding in the houses. After a while, monstrous cheers erupted in the city. The civilians who were close to the city wall even rushed out of the city wall, casting unparalleled gazes at Liberty. Advertisement, and at this moment, aboard Liberty. Sorata raised her head suddenly, her pupils contracted rapidly, and looked towards the end of the sky. He felt a palpitation, as if a great danger was about to come. What is it? His heart was full of doubts. This feeling, since he came to this world, has never appeared before. It's not that he feels that he is in danger, but that he feels people around you are in danger. At this moment, Kuina also seemed to find something unusual. She also raised her head to look at the sky. The smile on her face disappeared and turned solemn. Looking back, Sorata and Kuina glanced at each other. Kuina spoke first. Sorata, there are oddities above the sky. Although she didn't know what it was, she had never felt the palpitation that made her heart throb like a needle K. Even when she was still very weak, she didn't feel this way when facing the meteorite of the Golden Lion that seemed to be about to destroy the world for the first time. Although the thing on it hadn't been exposed yet, she knew that it would definitely threaten her life. With me. Seeing Kuina's concern, Sorata reached out and touched her head. At this time, the originally clear sky suddenly became stormy, and at the end of the sky, a fiery red dot was rapidly falling towards Keleduo. As the distance shortened, a sense of oppression struck everyone on the island, causing the cheers on the island to disappear instantly. Countless people stopped their movements and looked up at the sky together. I saw that above the sky, I don't know when it has been blocked by thick clouds. The clouds kept churning and rotating, and there was even more fiery red light shining in the center, making the entire cloud layer reflect the sunset glow. It was beautiful and spectacular, but full of murderous intent. Before anyone can appreciate it, there seems to be a huge monster in the center of the cloud layer, opening its mouth to the bottom. Advertisement: the dazzling white light replaced the sun in the sky, and then the white light shrank suddenly, turning into a small light cluster. From the fall of the fireball, to the cloud cover, and then to this light ball, it was actually only a matter of 10 seconds. In such a short period of time, even if Sorata finds danger, there is nothing I can do. 10 seconds ago. The first time he spotted the fireball, Sorata took out a necklace from his pocket. The necklace is nothing special, but the gem at the top of the necklace is not ordinary. He is the devil fruit weapon researched by Sorata. I saw him pinching the necklace and flicking it forward. Creak. In the blank space, a door opened. Come in. Sorata turned her head to look at Kuina, Robin and the others, with an unprecedented gloomy expression on her face. At this time, everyone could feel the destructive aura above their heads, and without any hesitation, they rushed into the gate of space quickly. Only Kuina remained outside. Sorata glanced at Kuina, and before he could say anything more, the figure disappeared in place and appeared at the place where the three of Ahua were fighting. They also felt the danger at the moment, and stood there looking up at the sky. Sorata appeared, also holding the necklace, and opened a door in front of her. The three of Ahua and Brooke, who had been watching the show, rushed in quickly without hesitation. In the next few seconds, Sorata's figure flickered and appeared on the battlefield, taking Charles and others into the different space opened by the door fruit. By the time he appeared on the Liberty again, the light cluster above had already formed. In this short period of time, it is impossible for him to take away everyone in Bretis, as for their life and death. Sorata raised his head and looked at the ball of light in the sky. He could feel the destructive energy in the ball of light. This is the hidden power of the world government. Is this the power controlled by that fellow I am? The light group gave him the feeling that even people at the level of Admiral and 4 Emperors, who were unlucky, would definitely not be able to resist. Not to say that he will die, but he will definitely be seriously injured. Sorata narrowed her eyes, and in her blue pupils, the nebula was spinning rapidly. He could see through the gaps in the clouds and see the huge silver monster looming above the clouds. A monster bigger than that siren. Chapter 345: The Strongest Collision. Bretis. The owner of the fruit stand, who was actually a middle-aged man who was a spy organized by CP, also walked out of the house and cheered along with the crowd. But when the huge monster above came, he didn't feel the slightest joy, but like everyone else, his whole body was icy cold. What is this? As a member of the World Government CP organization, he knows most of the secrets in this world that are impossible for ordinary people to know in a lifetime. But he had never seen that thing in the sky. No wonder the boss didn't give me the next order. The middle-aged man looked up at the sky, and Ultimate's despair was revealed in his eyes. This is to erase the island. At this moment, even he, whose mind was as tough as iron, felt deep despair and sadness. As long as he can remember, he has trained on an island with many children of the same age. They were instilled with the concept of absolute loyalty to the world government, and he has also achieved this concept throughout his life. In these decades of life, due to his poor strength, all he did was espionage. He wandered all his life, had no wife, no children, and was alone. He dedicated his life to world government. In his mind, although this job is dangerous, he should be able to retire honorably. Being in the dark organization of the world government, he has seen all kinds of darkness, but he never thought that one day, he would become the one that was abandoned. At this moment, he has no complaints. After all, he has been working for the world government all his life. His childhood philosophy is to do everything for the world government. Although he has no resentment, he has sorrow. Looking at the light cluster like another sun in the sky, he closed his eyes. The moment he closed his eyes, he seemed to see that beautiful figure in white clothes fluttering in the wind. That was a girl he met more than 10 years ago. This girl was very kind and beautiful. He loved her, but in the end he easily killed her for the world government. Here I come. At this moment, the corner of his mouth was filled with the danger of being relieved, as if he had really let go of something. Aboard Liberty. Advertisement. Kuina stepped forward, stretched out her hand to hold Sorata's hand, and interlocked her fingers tightly. Ever since she was a child, she has never seen Sorata so solemn. Sorata withdrew her gaze, turned her head and smiled at Kuina, then let go of her hand, motioning her to take 2 steps back. Sorata is indeed dignified. But I feel lucky, fortunately, he didn't do nothing during this period of time, but in the space field, he forcibly combined the energy and items in Devil Fruit to create a monster that can open doors everywhere. Special necklace. It is impossible for the world government not to know that, just by himself, no one in this world can kill him unless he is trapped and prevented from using teleportation. But the world government still came, probably because he was sure that he couldn't let his companions ignore him and run away by himself. It is indeed impossible for him to let his partner do nothing, but what the world government did not expect was that he could actually intercept the rebirth of Devil Fruit and forcibly manufacture Devil Fruit weapons. The different space opened by the door fruit, not to mention the big guys above, unless the world is destroyed, no one can hurt the people inside, of course, except him. Although he could leave now, not to care about the guys on TNTN, nor the countless civilians in Bretta's city, but he couldn't do it. He had to try to see if he could stop the light ball above, and even if he couldn't stop it, he couldn't let him land on Bretta's. After all, the guys above may have come for them, and Coco Roto was only implicated by them. Thinking of this, Sorata reached out his hand from the interspatial bag, took out a glass ball, and then shook it hard with his right hand. Click. The space ball shattered, and a feeling that didn't emit any breath, but made people feel extremely dangerous came from Sorata's hands. Amid the buzzing sound, Sorata opened his hand, a jet-black sword that could swallow even light floated above his palm, and gradually grew larger. This is exactly the space blade condensed by Sorata in the Sabodi archipelago. With his physical strength at this time, he can only condense one blow, and the second blow can make him collapse to the ground. As soon as the space blade appeared, it seemed as if it was not something from this world, causing the space around the space blade to twist with ultimate. Just where it is placed, the space can be overwhelmed. If it is not controlled by Sorata, the space blade can pierce the space in reality just by falling. Kuina looked at the blade of space, her pupils shrunk. Regarding the black hole energy, Sorata didn't hide it from her, so she knew what killed Carteris when Sorata was in Light Island. But this is the first time for her to feel this energy that can swallow even light at such a close distance. No wonder, null is rarely used, because it is just too dangerous. Advertisement. Although the spatial blade didn't emit any aura, it gave him the feeling that it was more dangerous than the light cluster that replaced the sun in the sky above. If the ball of light in the sky could seriously injure her, then the pitch-black sword in front of her would definitely kill her if it hit. Sorata raised her head, looking at the increasingly condensed light cluster in the sky. With a thought, the space domain emerged. And he stretched out his left hand and squeezed it hard in the void. In the void, the phantom of a transparent bow gradually condensed. Sorata raised his right hand, pinched the hilt of the blade of space, and then bent down, placing the blade of space on the void bow condensed from the space domain. Then draw the bow. At this moment, the space around him was distorted, making his figure, as if he had entered a different time and space. Only a faint figure could be seen. The violent fluctuation of the space made Kuina take a few steps back. She felt that the space in front of her could tear apart anything in this world at this moment. That ultimate sharpness made her feel like an ant facing the sun. If she didn't know that this distorted space was made by Sorata, she would definitely be terrified. Time seemed to stop at this moment. The energy light cluster in the air has reached the final step. This period of time seems to be very long, but in fact, it only took a few seconds from the time when the light cluster appeared to when Sorata drew the bow. But it's just a few seconds. There will be an explosion, the strongest collision in the world of One Piece. It is not the false strongest, but the real collision of standing on the pinnacle of a planet. Boom, at the end of the light group, it shot straight down. Coming. Sorata frowned slightly, fixed her eyes on the light ball, and let go of her right hand. Compared to the earth-shattering light cluster, the arrows formed by the blade of space seemed too peaceful. Silently, in the distortion of space, a black line connecting the sky and the earth crossed the sky. Where the blade of space goes, the space is directly cut through. If you feel it carefully, you can even feel the breath that does not belong to this world from the black line. Chapter 346 Uranus. To be honest, Sorata is also the first time to use this thing. He didn't know how powerful the space blade was when it exploded at full strength. The shocking eyes that pierced through the space last time when I was on the Island of Lights, can I see them again this time? If he wakes up that guy, will the world be destroyed? To be honest, he didn't know. Come to think of it, those existences would not pay attention to these little bugs. No, in front of him, they are not even bugs, at most they are just dust and bacteria. Even if his bacterium is the biggest one on a planet, in front of him, it can't attract his attention. Because, if there is a god in this world, then he must be God. Puff. The blade of space and the ball of light met, as if an arrow had shot into a watermelon. The blade of space easily shot into the ball of light. There is no earth-shattering explosion at this moment, nor is there any unparalleled depression. I saw the light cluster suddenly stopped in the air, and then collapsed inward, together with the surrounding space, ultimate collapse towards the middle. The whole sky, at this moment, became an uzumaki, and at the center of the uzumaki, a black hole slowly took shape and grew bigger and bigger over time. When the black hole reaches a certain limit, it explodes directly. Boom, shocking explosion. The dazzling light, accompanied by the crackling sound of space, filled the world. At this moment, everyone saw that the sky, was split open. Like a spider's web, cracks like a centipede centered on the explosion, continuously spreading towards the surroundings until reaching the end of the sky. At this moment, the Whitebeard pirates, the Holy Land Marijoy, the Saboti archipelago, and even the naval headquarters in the first half, all saw the crack in the sky, as if the sky had collapsed. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky at the same time. Those with sufficient strength, such as Whitebeard, such as Marine Admiral, such as Garp, such as the 5 elders of the Holy Land Marijoy, can even feel the breath of another world from the black crack. What the hell is this? At this moment, everyone's faces were full of horror. Advertisement. Even who claims to be a god, the true god of this world, looked at the crack in the sky with an unprecedented solemnity on his face. At this moment, his blood-red pupils seemed to come alive, and the ultimate spun, and others could only feel the breath of other worlds in the crack. But he knew that there were aliens in this world. Is an alien race invading? Looking at the crack, as if he saw countless behemoths emerging from the crack, and then descending from the sky, intending to invade this world. Fortunately, the crack came and went even faster. It lasted only a few seconds before it was repaired by the world and disappeared. The sky returned to its original state. It's you, who had just breathed a sigh of relief, suddenly stood up straight at this moment, and turned his head to look in the direction of New World. But in his pupils, a picture emerged. In it, thunder surged, the entire sky was pitch black, and the surrounding space was extremely unstable. Accompanied by electric arcs, black cracks would appear from time to time, the black cracks that he had just seen just now. And in the black crack and lightning, a moon-white handsome figure was floating in the air, looking at him indifferently. Looking at this figure, his pupils were full of disbelief. Through the eyes of the behemoth and the information he just sent back, he knew that the power to break the space was actually created by the little devil in front of him. What a joke! As powerful as him, he has controlled the world for more than 800 years, and has obtained countless incredible powers, and it is impossible to break the space of this world. Unless his body breaks free from the shackles of the cage and appears in this world. It is important to know that there is a difference between space and space. The power endowed by Devil Fruit is indeed incredible. It can transmit space, create space, and even change time, stop time, and reverse time. But these abilities, in general, have not surpassed the world. But this brat in front of him can actually break the space constraints of this world and break the void. What does that mean? It means, this guy can travel through time and space at any time, and go to another world that is stronger than this world. Can even go to space, to other planets, no longer limited to this planet, this cage-like planet. At this moment, felt an unprecedented desire. He longed for this little devil in front of him to break his cage and let him out. Advertisement. Because he wanted to go home. Sorata was suspended in the air, surrounded by countless thunderbolts, as well as space cracks, flashing across his body from time to time. But his body seemed to be in a different time and space. Even though the thunder and space cracks passed by, he remained unscathed. The blue pupils looked at the huge monster in front of them, and there was a strange look in them. It's different from what he imagined. He thought the big guy in the cloud would be a living thing. But when he came up, he found that this guy was a mechanical life. Streamlined lines, sharp claws, ferocious head, and wings on the back. What appeared in front of his eyes was a steel flying dragon wearing silver scale armor. The dragon's eyes were blood red, and the pupils were like circles of Uzumaki. He has seen these eyes. In the world of One Piece, whose eyes are the most impressive, the first one must be who has not even shown his face, but only has a pair of eyes, and sits firmly on the void throne for 800 meters. And the other pair of eyes is Mihawk, known as the world's #1 swordsman. His eagle eye is also impressive. Sorata stared into the dragon's eyes and spoke indifferently. Just looking at the same pair of eyes as he knew that this guy must have an inseparable relationship with Phylong didn't open his mouth, and stared at Sorata with blood-red pupils. There was no emotion in his eyes, but there was a voice, and he couldn't distinguish between men and women. Silver hair Sorata. The flying dragon controlled by stared at Sorata, and special fluctuations appeared in the eyes, quickly sweeping across the entire sky. But when it fluctuated around Sorata's body, it disappeared automatically, as if Sorata was really not in this time and space. Who the hell are you guys? He doesn't believe that there are such people in this world. Even the flying dragon he controls can't see through. You must know that the flying dragon he controls is not a simple giant steel beast, but a terrifying weapon that can destroy the world, built by the huge kingdom based on his body and the power of a world 800 years ago. And this weapon also has a name, that is, Uranus, one of the 3 ancient weapons that has disappeared in history. Chapter 347. Want to leave now? Sorata didn't answer Instead, he stared at Phylong with a strange expression on his face. This guy gave him the feeling that he had life, but also seemed to be lifeless. In terms of strength, he was similar to the sea monster they met not long ago. But the Kraken is a living, real creature, and this guy is a life of steel. And this guy's attack should be stronger than the Kraken. If it weren't for his space blade, he believed that no one in this world would be able to take the previous shot. Even so, except for the central city of Bretis, Kekuluduo's surrounding land also disappeared into the sea in the explosion. In the end, if he hadn't used the black hole energy again to open a space crack above Bretis would have disappeared with the explosion. So immediately after stopping the explosion energy, he teleported to the sky to see what it was that could emit such a huge force. I didn't expect it to be such a huge monster, flying dragon. Looking at the flying dragon in front of him, it is full of oppression just by being suspended in the air, and it can completely disappear an island in this world with a single shot. Sorata thought of celestial dragons, and thought of celestial dragon's iconic pattern, sky dragon's hoof. Looking down, sure enough, this flying dragon also has 4 toes. This guy is the national treasure of the celestial dragons that Brother Ming mentioned. As for I am, Brother Ming probably didn't know, and this guy's real name. Sorata raised her head, met the blood-red spiral pupils of the flying dragon, and said, Uranus, Uranus. Then nod for sure. This flying dragon is Uranus, Uranus. Without waiting for I am to reply, Sorata started talking on her own. I've always been curious. 800 years ago, with the liberation fighter Joey Boy, the ally Poseidon, and 2 other ancient weapons, how did the huge kingdom be defeated by the allied forces of 20 nations? Sorata paused for a moment, stared into the eyes of the flying dragon, and continued. You should be an ally of the huge kingdom. It was only later that he betrayed the huge kingdom for some reason, which led to the defeat of the huge kingdom with so much power. What Sorata said was speculation, but her eyes were very determined. I am stared at Sorata, without the slightest emotion in his eyes, but when Sorata said Joey Boy, there was a hint of murderous intent in his eyes. After Sorata finished speaking, she opened her mouth. Want to know the truth? If you want to know, come to the Holy Land Marijoy. Advertisement. After speaking, he took a deep look at Sorata and wanted to turn around and leave. Now is not the time to kill this kid, and Uranus should not be able to kill this kid. He has to let this kid come to his body and let him out. Sorata stared at the movement of Fei Long's turn and frowned. This guy didn't seem to be able to kill him with a single shot, so he wanted to go back. He didn't believe that Fei Long had no strength left. If Uranus can only wither with 1 shot, it is impossible to destroy the huge kingdom. From Mime's point of view, it seems that he really wants him to go to the Holy Land Marijoy. There is a conspiracy. Sorata murmured in his heart, seeing the flying dragon turn around and flap its wings to leave. His body disappeared in the same place in an instant, and reappeared, already blocking the front of the flying dragon. You want to leave now? Sorata looked into the eyes of the flying dragon. In the blue pupils, the nebula flowed, and a monstrous haki shot up from him. Click. The thunder that had disappeared around him reappeared with his aura. It's just that the thunder this time is purple. Sorata held Zon Kong in his left hand, raised the hilt of the knife, and held the hilt in his right hand, staring at the flying dragon with both eyes. How could it be so easy to run away after hitting him? The opponent is obviously unwilling to fight him, but he can test the opponent's defense first. If the defense is not enough, before I am could reply, the clear and crisp knife sound resounded across the sky instantly. The blade wrapped in purple and black cut through the sky and the earth, and slashed at the flying dragon fiercely. One sword-style azure dragon. The huge sword light condensed into a dragon's head, burst out with monstrous sharpness, shattered the surrounding clouds, and rushed towards the flying dragon fiercely. Looking at the swift attack, the flying dragon turned around, and its huge tail came out from behind, just in time to collide with the attack. Clang, the sound of metal crashing like a bell, along with the scattered impact, instantly shattered the surrounding clouds, revealing that only Bretis was left below Cape Keladuo. What is this? Dragon, Tianlong, advertisement. Or a god? Those who heard the bell raised their heads and looked up at the sky. They were too far away to see Sorata, but they could see the silver flying dragon. The monstrous coercion completely stunned them in place. On the city wall, Kuina wore a Menman fruit necklace around her neck, surrounded by Ahua and others, as well as Charles and others. They also looked up at the sky. His eyes were full of seriousness. It was that silver flying dragon that almost destroyed Cape Keladuo's bombardment. Charles looked up at the sky, then looked down at Kuina, opened his mouth to say something, but couldn't. Now countless lives in the entire Kekaladuo were concentrated on the figure fighting the flying dragon above. He can no longer ask others. As if sensing Charles's worry, Kuina turned her head and smiled relaxedly at Charles. Don't worry, it was an emergency before, and the flying dragon attacked as soon as it came. This time, with preparations, Sorata will not let the flying dragon's attack fall on Cape Keladuo again. Charles looked at Kuina, and didn't know if it was Kuina's relaxed smile that infected him, or what. He also gradually relaxed, and his face was no longer so heavy. He nodded at Kuina, then bent over and said, "Thank you." Thousands of words, but only one sentence. He is really grateful to Kuina and others, especially the silver-haired figure in the sky who saved Cape Keladuo. However, what he didn't know was that the flying dragon was actually coming for Sorata and others. They just suffered from an indiscriminate disaster and were affected. Kuina took a deep look at Charles, with a trace of apology in his eyes, and then turned his head to look at the sky. Of course she knew that Fei Long was coming for them. Fortunately, there were no irretrievable major casualties. Although only Bretis was left in Kekaladuo, as long as he was fine, he could just move to other islands afterwards. Not far from here, isn't it Gus, the hometown of Dr. Indigo? Just right. Just in time to move to Gus. The pirates, there should only be small shrimps left now, just clean them up when the time comes. Clang, at this moment, there was another sound of metal crashing in the sky. The flying dragon's tail exerted force again, and this time it directly sent the purple-black slash flying. Then the entire sky split open suddenly, and the clouds were like seawater, pouring upwards and backwards. And the dazzling golden light also fell from the cracked cloud layer, exposing the entire breadths to the warm sunlight. Chapter 348 Survival After Disaster Above the Sky. Sorata was covered with golden light, and the whole person seemed to be plated with gold, shining with a golden halo. He looked at the silver flying dragon, which was shining brighter and brighter under the sun. His pupils shrunk. This guy was hit by his slash without leaving a single scar. This kind of defense is really scary. Sorata looked at the dragon's tail with a solemn face. The scale metal of this flying dragon is definitely not a product of this world. As far as he knows, there has never been such a hard metal in this world. You must know that his slashing has already reached the pinnacle of the world. And also wrapped around Conqueror's Haki. Not to say that it must be better than Mahawk's slash, but at least it is comparable. In terms of attack, his slash is definitely not the strongest in the world, but in terms of sharpness, it is not the strongest in the world, but it is about the same. And even if this is the case, no scars can be left on Fei Long's body, so who else in this world can defeat this guy in front of him? If it wasn't for his physical strength, he wanted to condense a space blade again, and try to see if the space blade could kill it. Sorata was in a daze, but Fei Long was not in a daze. After it slashed and slashed, its wings fluttered, and its blood-red pupils remained unchanged, full of indifference. He opened his mouth, with teeth as sharp as a blade and as huge as a mountain, quickly biting towards Sorata. The huge black mouth is like the mouth of the world, and Sorata is like an ant. If it bites firmly, no matter who it is, it will die. But can Sorata make him bite? Even if bitten, can it really hurt Sorata? Obviously, impossible. Looking at the monstrous giant mouth approaching rapidly, Sorata's figure disappeared in place. The next moment, he appeared above Fei Long's head. He stared at the silver scales below, found the connection of the scales, held the knife in both hands, and stabbed down fiercely with the black blade wrapped around the purple-red lightning. Boom, the blade collided with the scales, causing the flying dragon to stop instantly. Not just the metal itself. Sorata lowered her head, her eyes fixed on the point of the knife. At the point of contact between the tip of the knife and the scale armor, a layer of energy that would be invisible if one didn't look carefully was blocking the two. Advertisement. No wonder it's so hard. The scale armor of this flying dragon itself is hard enough, coupled with the defense of the energy layer, of course it can block his slash. According to his observation, although this energy layer is only a thin layer, the energy inside is as thick as an abyss. And with the huge body of the flying dragon, the energy it possesses will be extremely huge. If you want to destroy this energy layer, you must destroy the power system of the flying dragon. But to destroy the power system of the flying dragon, the energy layer must be destroyed first, and this is a dead end. Difficult. Sorata retracted the knife, and the figure disappeared again, dodging the flying dragon's wings and appearing in front of the flying dragon's head. Ding, with a knife in his right hand, he put the knife back into its sheath. Okay, stop fighting. I really can't do anything to you, but you can't do anything to me either, so be it. Sorata was suspended in the air, pulled off the wine gourd from his waist, raised his head and took a sip, then lowered his head and stared into the eyes of the flying dragon, without concealing his murderous intent, said indifferently, "Since you want me to go to the Holy Land Marijoy, I will satisfy you. I hope you won't regret it when the time comes." Although he wanted to keep the flying dragon, but obviously, with his current attack, except for the space blade, he couldn't even break through other people's defenses, so why not hit the balls? He could feel that IM must have some conspiracy waiting for him, but he wasn't worried. Wait for a while, and his strength will not be what it is now. When the time comes to destroy the flying dragon, he believes it will be easy. Regardless of the size of this guy, if he can destroy its defense, this guy is just a bigger piece of scrap iron in front of him. As for Im's body, he believed that no matter how powerful that guy was, it was impossible for him to hurt him. If that guy is really strong, it is impossible to stay in the Holy Land Marijoy all the time. According to his guess, Im was injured and hid in the Holy Land Marijoy to heal his wounds and could not come out. Or he would be like the sea monster, imprisoned in the Holy Land Marijoy by someone, and this guy wants him to go to Marijoy is also very simple, he just wants to use his power to get himself out of trouble. The flying dragon took a deep look at Sorata, then flapped its wings and flew into the sky. Leave a very arrogant sentence in place. I'm waiting for you. He. To Im's words, Sora returned a slightly mocking laugh. Then he retracted his gaze and looked down. The original huge Kokorodo, now only Bretis is left. Looking down from his angle, Bretis at this moment is like a precarious boat on the sea, which may capsize at any time. Hey, advertisement. Sorata sighed inwardly, they were supposed to be heroes on this trip. Didn't expect it to end up like this, although it was all Im's fault, Kekeladua was also implicated by them, which made him become like this. Fortunately, we can move to Gus. Thinking of this, Sorata breathed a sigh of relief, and raised his head to look in the direction where the flying dragon disappeared. No matter what you are, I will send you to hell at that time. 800 years, or even longer, you have lived long enough, you can really die. Withdrawing his gaze, Sorata's figure disappeared in place. Did you win? Bretts, countless people looked at the flying dragon that left, his standing body instantly collapsed to the ground, his face was full of aftermath. Then they all turned their heads and looked at the white figure that appeared on the city wall, their eyes bursting out like fanatics. It was him. He appeared in the sky when Bretis was about to be affected by the explosion, and then, like a god descending from the earth, he stretched out his hand and opened a hole in the sky, absorbing all the aftermath of the explosion that affected Bretis go in. That one turned their backs to them, facing the monstrous explosion. It seems to be reflected in their hearts and engraved into their souls, making it impossible for them to forget it for a lifetime. And now the evil dragon that almost destroyed Kekeleduo was beaten away in front of him. Hero. 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 I don't know who started it. Countless voices connected into a line, and then gathered together, turning into a monstrous voice like faith. Resounded throughout Bretis. On the city wall, Charles and the others were also looking at Sorata with gratitude in their eyes. Tears welled up in Charles's eyes, and then burst out of the frame. The strong king who didn't cry when Sophie came back, couldn't hold back the tears at this moment. Sophie took a step forward, tightly holding her father's trembling hands with both hands, and tears flowed down her face. At this moment, although Bretis was the only one left in Kokorodo, the despair had passed. They all believe that the future will definitely be better. So, these are not sad tears, but happy. Of course, more of them are survivors. Chapter 349. Fool, what is the most valuable thing in this world? It's time. And what is the least valuable? It's still time. It seems that nothing has been done, and it seems that a lot of things have been done, and the time passes quickly, and it is a month later. What can you do in a month? For Kekeleduo, the remaining people in Kekeleduo can be relocated to Gus. At this time, Bretts had completely disappeared above the sea. After all, the island has been severely damaged, and even the foundation under the island was shattered in the explosion. If they did not move, the people on it would sink into the sea along with the island. Gus. An island bigger than Coco Road. Since it was less than a day's flight from Kekeleduo, the migration went smoothly. This place is different from Kekeleduo's singing of birds and flowers. This is a summer island. There are large sandy beaches around the island, and there is a towering mountain in the middle of the island. The original country on Gus Island, the Kingdom of Gus, was built on the mountainside of the mountain. Since the Kingdom of Gus disappeared 20 years ago, the buildings on the island are very dilapidated, and the pirates who occupy Gus often live in coastal port towns, so the central city of Gus on the mountainside looks very dilapidated. Even the royal palace built on the top of the mountain is covered with moss, which looks like an ancient building. However, with the arrival of hundreds of thousands of people in Kekelu, the desolate island of Gus has undergone earth-shaking changes in the past half-month. Although the building is still the same building, there is more human fireworks on the island. As long as there is popularity, I believe it will not take long for the island to return to the way it was 20 years ago. As for the remaining pirates on the island, needless to say, Sorata and the others are here. Can you let them run away? Of course, all the souls are sent to hell, and the body is buried in the soil as fertilizer to contribute to the development of Gus. Mountain top. On the top of the palace castle, a huge flag was flying, with a yellow windmill painted on it, which was the flag of Sorata's team. Advertisement and at the gates of the port towns around the island, such flags are also hung. This is the second country that Sorata has given a flag to. After all, Kekeleduo is no longer a member of the world government. If they don't find a backer to protect them, even if they have an army of tens of thousands, after they leave, this place will become a paradise for pirates. And with his current reputation, I believe it is enough to protect this place, so that the passing pirates will not dare to act rashly when they see their flag. And after they leave, he will go to Brother Ming, to Whitebeard, to fulfill his promise to Zoro's world's strongest, and to Kaido. As time goes on, his reputation will be further strengthened. He believed that there was no pirate group who would not think about it and come to trouble the island he sheltered. On top of the castle, Kuina is sitting here cross-legged, on her lap, Sorata's head is resting on it, chatting with Kuina without saying a word. Hey, Sorata. Kuina's slender and white thumb pressed against Sorata's temple, gently turning it in circles and rubbing it slowly. What? Sorata opened her closed eyes slightly, looking at Kuina with a hint of doubt in her eyes. You say? Kuina raised her head, looked towards the direction of the sea, and murmured expectantly. What kind of country do you think Wano Kuni is? Is it beautiful there? I heard that there are all warriors there, so are there many swordsmen? There is Sorata in this life, so Koshiro has already made it clear to them, the origin of their family. They are the Shimotsuki family from Wano Kuni. Strictly speaking, her real name should be Shimotsuki Kuina. Sorata looked at Kuina expectantly, pondered for a moment, but still didn't say anything about Wanakuna's current situation. Anyway, she has to go, and then she can feel and participate in it for herself. Advertisement in those swordsmen. In fact, it has completely declined. Since the death of Kazuki Oden, the samurai there can't say that there are no strong men. There are, but there is no strong man who can carry the heavy responsibility of Wano Kuni. They are all like Kai Shaoju, although it is not bad, but it can only stay at the strong stage at a good stage. In this sea of New World, there are too many people like them. Therefore, it is not an exaggeration to say that Wano Kuni has declined. As for Kazuki Oden, in his eyes, the guy is a fool. Obviously he is very powerful, but he has to pin his hopes on 20 years later. He doesn't know what he saw when he followed Roger to the final island Raftel, which made him become like this. But a strong man, a world-leading strong man, gambles the future of a country on a prophecy that is not true or false. Just for this guy is stupid enough. As for his return to Wano-kuni at the beginning, and the agreement with Kurozumi Orochi and Kaido, he will not comment too much. After all, he doesn't know whether his father is still alive. Kurozumi Orochi threatened him with his father and many civilians, whether he was out of filial piety, for the sake of the common people, or just a fluke in his heart. Make an agreement to give up dignity, let 100 people dance naked once a week under the U's castle, and build a boat 5 years later to let everyone go to sea and leave Wano-kuni together. It was this agreement that completely ruined the popularity of this guy in Wano-kuni. I really don't understand why this guy is so stupid. After every dance, will the big snake let people go, and he won't look at it? If he is released, how could he lose all the support of the people? But without letting him go, this guy jumped for more than 4 years, 4 full years before he found out that Orochi and Kaido were lying to him. Isn't this stupid? He has been dancing for 4 years, and Orochi and Kaido are persecuting those who are still waiting for his awakening, but when this guy really awakens, he finds that only Kai Xiaoju is left around him. In the final battle, there are more forces willing to follow this guy to defeat Kaido, such as Leopard Guro and others who have not been persecuted, and more samurai who have not lost the hearts of the people. This last battle might not turn into a big defeat. After all, to be honest, Kazuki Oden is not inferior to Kaido at all. Due to the sharp attack of the swordsman, he even surpasses Kaido in attack power. The two of them really had a fair fight, and it was really not certain who would win. Judging from Kaido's fear of Kazuki Oden, maybe Kazuki Oden will win in the end. Otherwise, Kaido wouldn't have spent so much effort. It has to be said that Kaido is tall and thick and looks violent, but his brain is actually the front row of the 4 emperors. Brave and resourceful, that guy is the real pirate. He will do anything to achieve his goal, and he is the truly ambitious pirate emperor. Chapter 350. Starting again. Okay, let's go. Sorata sat up, looked under the castle, carrying big bags, waiting for their Iowa and others, said with a smile. It's time to start. At our speed, we should be able to reach Wano-kuni in less than a month. By then it's about slowly appreciating that legendary country. At this point, he stopped, looked at Kuina, and there was one sentence he didn't say, that is, I hope you won't be disappointed when the time comes. Kuina tilted her head to look at him, the corners of her mouth raised, and her pretty face was full of smiles. She nodded and hummed lightly. Sorata stood up, pulled Kuina up, held her in his arms with force, took a step forward, and fell from the highest place of Gus. Mr. Sorata. As soon as Sorata and Kuina landed, Charles, the king of the kingdom of Gus who had been renamed Gus, and Sophie bent down and saluted Sorata respectfully. Sorata paused for a moment, then with a thought, helped the father and daughter up. You guys, how many times have I said it, don't do this? Having said that, he shook his head, then looked at Sophie and said helplessly, and Sophie, aren't we friends? How did you become like this? When they moved to Gus, Sorata told Charles and others that the flying dragon was coming towards him and that the destruction of Kokurudo was completely affected by him. In this matter, Sorata does not need to hide from Charles and the others. But after they were stunned for a moment, their attitude towards him did not change at all. These guys seem to regard him as a god. Every time they see him, they worship him, which makes him very uncomfortable. Whether it's admiration or respect, he's seen a lot along the way, but he really hasn't seen him before. He's a person who worships him as a belief. After Charles and the others moved to Gus, the first thing the residents of the island did was not to repair the houses here, but to build his statue in the central city below. His eyesight is excellent. 1 month is enough for the civilians here to build it. So standing here, you can clearly see a very tall statue standing in the middle of the city below, with that face, that figure, who else could it be? He didn't expect that one day, he would become someone else's belief. Haha. Sophie glanced at Sorata, and the expression on her face became vivid. She blinked playfully, and bowed to Sorata again. Yes, Mr. Sorata. You, Sorata shook her head helplessly. Advertisement. Since arriving in Gus, Sophie has gradually recovered, and is no longer as taciturn as she was on the Liberty. Facing Sorata's helplessness, Sophie straightened up and laughed, then took a step forward, pulled Kuina and whispered something, and let out a crisp laugh from time to time. Turning her head and looking at Indigo standing aside, Sorata asked, Indigo, are you all right? After all, this place is also Indigo's hometown. He doesn't know the story of Indigo here. After he went to the island, he went to the back mountain alone. Wherever he wants to come, it should be the place where his family lives. Sorata went to see, there is a small village, all in ruins. And underground in that village, there is also an underground space, which contains many books and various medical machines that are completely unusable. And Indigo has stayed in that underground space recently. Calcalcal. Puff 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 puff. Indigo turned to look at Sorata, raised his feet, opened his hands, and kept fiddling. Seeing that Sorata didn't understand his words, a hint of anxiety appeared on his face. Puff 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 puff. The pace became faster. Sorata looked at Indigo, frowned slightly, speak human. Indigo's dancing movements stopped abruptly, and then his hands fell. His body seemed to lose his energy in an instant, and he shrugged and said, It's all good, I sorted out all the medical books there, and put them away, into Gus's new library. Having said that, he raised his head, regained his energy in an instant, and said happily, I believe it won't be long before many doctors will appear here. He couldn't be happier that Gus is back to prosperity. After all, this is his hometown. although he can no longer see his fellow clansmen anymore, so many people have come to Kakelu, which makes this place full of popularity. With so many people in the protection of their team, it will not be too difficult and it will not be too long to restore the glory of Gus. And when their voyage is over, he will be able to return to his hometown again without being displaced. Okay. Sorata nodded and reached out to pat Indigo on the shoulder. Then he stopped, and his eyes swept over the three of Ahua, Robin, Brooke, and Kuina, and he could feel their expectations. Advertisement after all, this is the island they have stayed on for the second longest time since they went to sea. For the sea, they have long wanted to set off. There are still many places ahead, waiting for them to take risks. He withdrew his gaze, raised the corners of his mouth, took out the glass bead containing the Liberty from his pocket, and threw it forward. The glass ball shone with a blue light in the air, and it grew bigger against the wind, and finally completely recovered, floating in front of them. Sorata's figure disappeared into the distance and appeared on the top of the Liberty's mast, raising her hands and shouting, "Let's go, brothers." "What?" Awa and the others roared, and they couldn't wait to jump on the boat first. "Yo ho ho ho." Brooke bowed to Charles and Sophie in a gentlemanly way, then Mr. Charles and Miss Sophie. "Let's go now, and look forward to the next time we come. Gus has already become completely prosperous." Charles nodded and smiled at Brooke. "Thank you, Mr. Brooke, for your blessing. I believe that I will not disappoint your trust. But me," having said that, he puffed out his chest with a confident face, "and I will definitely lead Keleduo and Gus to restore the glory of the past." Then he turned around and bowed to Indigo, "And thank you, Dr. Indigo, for helping us with this paragraph. Thank you for helping us find so many medical books. We will definitely not disappoint these medical books, thank you." Calcalcal. Yo ho 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 ho, Indigo and Brooke laughed, turned and jumped aboard. Robin smiled slightly at Sophie, reached out and rubbed Sophie's head, turned around and glanced at the slightly ancient castle behind him, with a satisfied smile in his eyes. She has been studying the history of Gus during this time. Although the history here is small, it is also very old, so she is very satisfied. She turned around and took a step forward. Instead of jumping directly onto the cruise ship like Awa and the others, she walked up the stairs of the Liberty step by step. "Okay, Sophie, I'm leaving too, take care." Kuina let go of Sophie's hand, then nodded to Charles. His body turned into a bolt of lightning, and disappeared in the same place. After Kuina boarded, Sorata controlled the Liberty to turn around, and with a bang, like a sharp sword, rushed forward. Hearing the sound, countless people who were working on the island put down their work and looked up at the Liberty with endless gratitude in their eyes. For Sorata and others, they all regard him as a hero, especially Sorata, they regard him as a god. It wasn't until Liberty disappeared completely that they looked back and worked harder. They're going to bring Gus back to glory the next time they come to Sorata. Chapter 351 Getrag. The world is forgetful. A month ago, the huge crack that seemed to have fallen like the sky and spread to a small half of the world caused New World to start this sea area, and there was a period of panic. But as time went by, a month later, few people talked about it anymore. After all, there was no news, nor did the world government report it. Except for the top powerhouses, everyone thought it was a strange astronomical phenomenon. There are so many interesting things in this world, so talking about it for a few days has passed. Getrag. New World is an ordinary island. The snowflakes are fluttering and the snow is white. The entire island was shrouded in silver clothing. This is a winter island. Creak, creak, creak. On the broad street, a handsome young man with his hands in his trouser pockets was walking forward. The young man has silver hair all over his head, which looks even whiter under the snowflakes, and the clothes on his body are also white, making the young man look like a snow elf walking from the wind and snow. On the boy's right, a girl wearing a pink robe and dark blue hair tied into a ponytail is holding the boy's right arm with both hands, looking around curiously. Her eyes are full of agility, but if you look carefully, you can see blue arcs appearing in her pupils from time to time, making her look petite, but full of indescribable majesty. These two people are Sorata and Kuina. They had sailed for several days from Gus before arriving here. New World is not like the first half of Grand Line. The people here are generally stronger than Paradise, plus all kinds of pirates and merchant ships, so New World is more open than Paradise. And the map here is more comprehensive. Sorata and the others followed the map and added the unique 3-needle record pointer here. Advertisement: they are going here, mainly to the kingdom of Darius Rosa. This is a transit island they pass by. He doesn't want to be the hero of the world, and he doesn't want to be the hero of everyone, but since he knows what happened to Darius Rosa, and he has strength, and he really doesn't like that guy Mingo, so he went to clean up that guy. Yes, it's just a matter of convenience. At this point in time, Guy Saw should have just returned to Punk Hazard. I don't know if the man-made devil fruit that this guy cooperated with Brother Ming has succeeded. Thinking of man-made devil fruit, Sorata thought of Wanokuni, thought of Shimotsuki Yasui, who could only laugh even when he was sad, and thought of Toko. Thinking of the little girl, who was in grief after witnessing her father's execution by Kurozumi Orochi, but was unable to cry because of the effect of the Sile fruit, and could only watch her father die with a smiling mask. Thinking of this, a murderous intent flashed in Sorata's calm eyes. Hope hasn't worked out yet. He doesn't know exactly when that guy worked with Doflamingo. The original book only says that Geisa got kicked out of Vegapunk's science class 4 years ago. This guy was caught by Marine after he detonated the monster, Slime, he was researching. But then with the gas fruit ability, Geisa escapes from the prison ship. Then a reward of 300 million berry was offered. This guy disappeared for a year, and I don't know where he was this year. I think it was this year. This guy found Big O and Doflamingo and asked them to provide funds so that this guy could continue his research. In fact, this guy is indeed a genius, but he is a crazy genius. This guy's research direction is mainly killing weapons, and he also started the research on titanization with the funds provided by Big O, using children as experiments body, conducting experiments on titan medicine. It can be said that this guy has completely lost his humanity for the sake of research. Wish this guy was just getting started. He used to, and just happened to send this guy to hell, so that those children would not be tortured, and Wanokuni Shimotsuki Yasui, etc., would not be deprived of the right to grieve. Didn't that guy want to study Death Kingdom? Just right, wouldn't it be better to let him really feel death and go to hell to study? Sorata nodded secretly and led Kuina into a tavern. They stayed here mainly to purchase some supplies. Gus was too short of supplies, so when they left, they didn't bring many things with them, but made a lot of purchases when they came here. After going to the island, they separated. Advertisement. As for the supplies on board, it was the three of Ahua who purchased them, and he never cared about these things. Every time he goes to the island, the first thing he does is to go to the tavern. Firstly, to hear about interesting things, and secondly, of course, to see if there is any good wine. As a man who is inspired to drink all the fine wines in this world, how can he live up to the fine wines? Squeak. The old wooden door, in this slightly quiet snowy day, sounded a slightly sharp scream. The door opened, and the wind and snow poured into the tavern in an instant, making the lively tavern quiet for a moment. When they saw that there were two little ghosts standing at the door, everyone tightened their clothes around their necks and looked away, and it returned to its original state in an instant. Guest, do you want to eat or drink? As soon as Sorata and Kuina stepped into the gate of the tavern, the beautiful maid standing outside the bar lit up and walked up to them quickly. In such a snowy day, wearing such thin clothes to come here, obviously, although the visitor is young, he must be strong. And such strong people are basically rich people, and from the two of Sorata, she didn't feel the tyranny of pirates. Looking at the clothes of the two of Sorata, the gorgeous silk is not something ordinary people can afford, plus the temperament of the two of them. Rich, noble, kind, business is coming. The maid took a step forward, stood on the left of Sorata and Kuina, bent slightly, stretched out her hand towards them, and guided them inward. Please, two guests, there is a private room here. If you want to eat, you still want fine wine, it's all here. As a unique commercial center in the New World Sea area, there are a lot of merchant ships coming and going here. Because there is a marine base on the island, pirates don't dare to mess around here. So the island is very prosperous. Regardless of the fact that there are very few pedestrians on the street outside, this is actually just because of the heavy snow outside. From the attendance rate in the tavern, we can also know that the business here is not likely to be bad. And the maids like to receive people like Sorata and the others who are not short of money and are very kind. Such a person will not argue with her for petty gains, and is often very generous. That's why she is so enthusiastic about Sorata and the other two. Sorata glanced at the tavern, nodded, and followed the maid into a box on the right. The moment the door closed, the hustle and bustle outside disappeared instantly. It seems that the sound insulation conditions here are not bad. Chapter 352 Damn Pirate Profession. In the private room. The maid opened the chair and let Sorata and Kuina sit down, then pulled out a small notebook from her waist, pulled out a pen from the notebook, and looked up at Sorata and Kuina. This is the first time she has seen the true faces of Sorata and Kuina up close. When she was at the door earlier, although she also saw it, but because the light in the room was a little dark and the outside was white, she couldn't see it clearly. After seeing Sorata's appearance clearly, her immediate reaction was panic. This face was all over the New World a month ago. She is also the receptionist and waiter of the tavern. For such a character, even if she will never meet in the future, she will remember it. She never thought that on this ordinary day, such a big shot would appear in their tavern. According to the information she got, the person in front of her doesn't care about marine on the island. He even dared to kill celestial dragons, and even drew with the hero Garp, so how could he be afraid of a marine vice-admiral on their island? The blush on his face disappeared and turned pale. She didn't dare to move, although the person in front of her didn't have any momentum, just like an ordinary person, and was full of sunshine, but that kind of psychological self-oppression made her have a kind of horror of facing a monstrous beast. Subconsciously breathing all slowed down. Hey, Sorata watched the maid's face turn from red to white, and sighed inwardly. Damn pirate career. He hates this feeling. With the increase in fame, he has now become a scourge in the eyes of ordinary people, just like the Fishman Island. If it weren't for the reputation of pirates, he would not leave in a hurry. In human society, although ordinary people will not remember his appearance when they are full, but those who work in the service industry will definitely remember him. No, the maid who was still enthusiastic just now turned into a cowardly little chick after seeing his appearance clearly. If he was not a pirate, but just an adventurer, the maid would not be so afraid, but would worship him instead. This is the reputation of pirates in this world. Okay, don't be afraid. The corners of Sorata's mouth turned up, and a gentle smile appeared on his face. It seems that you already know our identities, don't look at us being rewarded, we are actually good people. Speaking of which, he grinned, and the smile on his face should be more sincere and sincere. The maid raised her eyes and looked at Sorata cautiously. Seeing Sorata's split lips, she didn't know what to think of, her body trembled suddenly, and she almost fell to the ground. Advertisement. The already pale face became even paler. She thought of a legend that the great pirates would eat meat or human flesh when they opened their mouths. Although the person in front of her had a gentle aura, in her view, this was a wolf in sheep's clothing, full of weirdness. If it weren't for her professional skills, she would have turned around and rushed out the door. Hey! Seeing the maid's reaction, the smile on Sorata's face froze instantly, and then she slumped on the chair as if she had lost her energy. He waved his hand helplessly, and without looking at the maid, he lazily said, "Forget it, go and call your store manager. I'm just here to order some wine, and I'll leave later." The maid didn't listen to the next words at all. When she heard Sorata ask her to call the store manager, she turned around quickly. It usually took a few steps to get out of the room. Now, she walked out of the room in 2 steps, as if there was someone behind her. What a scourge. I don't know whether it was due to professionalism or what, although she was very scared, the maid stopped outside the door and closed the door carefully. The moment the door closed, Kuina couldn't bear it anymore. Couldn't help but lie down on the table and laugh loudly. Goose 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 goose. This suppressed laughter is like a big goose in late autumn, making people want to go up and grab its neck. Sorata glanced at Kuina and said helplessly, "Laugh, laugh, laugh. You're not much better." The laughter stopped abruptly, and Kuina looked up with a blush on her face. She thought about it, and it was really the case. It seems that the maid was not only afraid of Sorata, but also her. Thinking of this, a trace of helplessness flashed in his eyes. He straightened up, and lightly hammered Sorata a few times with his fists clenched. "Sorata, it seems like we're totally famous now." Having said that, a trace of worry flashed in her eyes. At the age of 17, although she is powerful, she is still a little girl after all. She doesn't want people to treat her as a big devil. If everyone was like the maid just now, wouldn't they be in panic wherever they went in the future? "Don't worry, it's fine." Advertisement. Sorata reached out and rubbed Kuina's head, and said with a smile, "This maid is also a special case. Those who work in their line of work will remember the appearance of most pirates in the New World, and after all, we have done it. All pirate groups in this world dare not doing. Those who hate celestial dragons will not be afraid of us, maybe they will even admire us. And most ordinary people don't pay attention to the information of pirates at all. They work very hard to live. How could they be distracted and pay attention to us?" Having said that, Sorata turned her head, looked at the falling snow outside the window, and said quietly, "A person's life is like this snowflake, from birth to landing, is full of randomness. No matter how powerful we are, no matter how famous we are, then it is also in the eyes of people with a heart. In the eyes of all living beings, we are nothing more than they talk about after tea and dinner. After a while, there will be more fresh things that are worth talking about. But how can they remember us? Unless one day." Having said this, Sorata stopped. "One day what?" Kuina propped her hands on the table, lay her head on her hands, tilted her head, and stared at Sorata in a daze, with a hint of doubt in her eyes. Sorata withdrew her gaze, turned her head to look at Kuina. Her eyes were full of tenderness. She rubbed her hand on the head, smoothed her hair gently, let go and smiled. "It's nothing, unless one day we become this world heroes. All living beings will truly remember us." Heroes of the world? The doubt in Kuina's eyes grew stronger. She knew what Sorata thought. It was impossible for Sorata to be a hero in the world, but Sorata talked about it now. She thought about it, as if she wanted to understand something. Sorata didn't hide from her what the flying dragon over Kokurudo was. Uranus, I am, celestial dragons. Kuina muttered these names, then straightened up, turned to look at Sorata, and said seriously, "Sorata, will you go to the Holy Land Marijoy one day to overthrow the celestial dragon's rule?" She can think of becoming the hero of the world, and that is the only thing. "Okay." Sorata nodded. There was no need to hide. He looked at Kuina and said with a smile, "When that guy I am told Uranus to leave Kokorod, he told me arrogantly that he would wait for me in the Holy Land Marijoy. Since he invited me, I will definitely go." Kuina took a deep look at Sorata, then grabbed his hand, and said softly, "You must take me with you when the time comes." "Don't worry, even if I don't take anyone with me, I won't take you with me." Sorata held Kuina's hand backhand, and said with a smile, "You know, you are my fiancé." "Well, that's a deal." Kuina nodded in satisfaction, then turned her head and rested her head on Sorata's shoulder, looking up at the snow outside the window with a gentle smile on her lips. Chapter 353. Really came to buy wine. Just when Sorata and Kuina were fighting each other. Outside the private room. The old store manager with white hair is hesitating how to open the door. What are you going to say when you open the door? Although their island is a traffic center at the beginning of the New World, and the island is even guarded by Marine Base and Naval Headquarters Vice Admiral, but they have never seen such a powerful person. In the past, those who came here were all ignorant brats who had just entered the New World. Although these little ghosts are also very powerful, but as a veteran of New World, he is not afraid. After all, no matter how powerful he was still just a rookie. After being taught by the seniors in Marine, he was naturally honest. Although the old pirates are powerful, they will not mess around on the islands guarded by Marines, because they know that if they mess up here, the only few Marine islands in New World may soon be supported by Marines, maybe Admiral and Marine hero Garp. They are not coming to seek death. But obviously, the kid in the private room is also a rookie pirate, but he is not in it. On this island, he has opened a tavern all his life, and in his decades of life, he has never seen such a powerful pirate. To be honest, when he heard that someone dared to kill the celestial dragons, he felt a flash of joy in his heart. Those fat pigs who claim to be gods but do evil things are hated by countless people in New World. Especially old people like them. Their experience is a living history in itself. A living history that witnessed the rise and fall of countless countries in the New World. And he, when he was a child, fled and came here from a country that couldn't pay the heavenly gold and was then destroyed. So he hates celestial dragons very much, but disgust is one thing. If he really wants to face a pirate who dared to kill celestial dragons and even draw with the hero garb, he still has some apprehensions in his heart. I'm afraid it's not the case. He is at this age, maybe one day he won't be able to get up, and he will report to hell, so he won't be afraid. He just didn't know what this new, legendary pirate kid was doing here. Advertisement: if such a strong person conflicts with people here, or conflicts with Marine, his small shop that has been in business for decades will be reduced to ruins in an instant. That's why he was apprehensive and worried. After thinking about it, the old man still knocked on the door, and after hearing an invitation to come in, he walked into the box with slightly heavy steps. The moment he entered, when he saw clearly the faces of Sorata and Kuina, who were younger than those on the reward order, he sighed in his heart. You are so young. The newspaper said that neither Sorata nor Kuina was over 18 years old, but he didn't believe it at first. Although this world is full of miracles, but there is no kid who is not even 18 years old, and he is already standing at the top of the world. But when he met Sorata and Kuina, he had to admit that this world is really full of wonders. These two can no longer be described as geniuses, but monsters. The old man took a step forward and stood 3 steps away from Sorata, then bent slightly, with a professional smile on his old face, and said, "Two guests, I heard from the maid in the store that you were here to drink wine. Yes, I don't know what kind of wine you two want to drink." He didn't call out Sorata and Kuina's names even though he knew them. Since Sorata said they were here for a drink, he took it as if they were really here for a drink. And he is just a tavern owner who sells alcohol. Sorata looked at the old man, was taken aback for a moment, and then showed a gentle smile on his face. He nodded and said, "We are indeed here to drink wine." He took out his wine gourd and put it on the table. "Boss, please give me the strongest and best wine here. Fill this wine gourd." "Guest, wait a moment, I'll go and give you Chen." The old man saw that Sorata didn't seem to be acting fake, and he could feel the gentle aura emanating from Sorata. He was relieved, then picked up the wine gourd on the table, turned and walked out of the room. The entrance of the tavern. The old man and the maid stood here, looking at the young figure disappearing into the snow. They didn't come back to their senses for a long time. The maid patted Xiang Wei's chest, let out a breath, and said in surprise, "I didn't expect that they really came to buy wine. It's just that his wine gourd is too amazing." Thinking of the scene of getting wine in the back kitchen just now, the maid tilted her head and took the old man's hand, shaking her hand and said, "Grandpa, what is that wine gourd?" Advertisement. The old man withdrew his gaze, reached out and rubbed the maid's head, and said with a light smile, "You ask me, who should I ask? There are so many magical things in this world, Grandpa. I'm just the owner of an old tavern, how can I know everything?" "So you don't know either." The maid let go of the old man's hand, pouted, turned around and walked into the tavern. Her steps were no longer heavy, and her cheerfulness returned. The old man looked at the back of his granddaughter, with a flash of doting in his eyes, then shook his head, and followed into the tavern. There was one more reason for his concern. That is his granddaughter. His son and daughter-in-law were both killed by pirates when they went out to sea, so although he admired Sorata for killing the celestial dragons, but at the same time, because of Sorata's identity as a pirate, he also had an inextricable hatred. In addition, his granddaughter is afraid, so he very much hopes that Sorata will leave soon. Except for the Red Line, everyone in this world lives on islands. These islands are like transfer stations in the sea. The countless evils floating in the sea will always leave the sea and hit the island. Among them, the Grand Line is the most serious. Therefore, above the Grand Line, pirates are a career that many people yearn for, but more importantly, they are the source of fear for countless people. Commoners will not be afraid of Marines, or even nobles, but they will definitely be afraid of pirates. As long as we live in this world, this cannot be avoided. And Sorata and Kuina, in the eyes of countless people at this time, are the representatives of the evil walking in the world. In the eyes of those who knew them, even if they didn't show any aura, they didn't pose any threat, but the psychological oppression brought about by their status and high rewards alone would make countless people stay away from them. For this point, Sorata knew, Kuina knew, and Ahua and others also knew. They are not Straw Hat Crew. When Straw Hat Crew entered the Grand Line, the reward was only 400 million. And Luffy only rose to 500 million after defeating Brother Ming. 500 million, although it is a lot, but in New World, it is nothing. So Luffy didn't feel much disgust from the commoners along the way. If he went back after the end of the Wano Kuni chapter, he would have encountered exactly the same situation as them. So after they bought all the supplies, they didn't wander around the island, but quickly gathered at the pier, set sail again, and headed for the next destination. Chapter 354 Virgo, in the marine base behind the town of Getrag. The head of the base, Marine Vice Admiral Drew Codrus, put down the microphone in his hand and let out a light breath. Finally gone. The serious face relaxed. He took out a cigar with its head cut off from the cigar box on the table, put the cigar on the lighter, and roasted it slowly. Looking at the flickering fire, he was a little lost in thought. Since Naval Headquarters issued an order a month ago, no matter who it is, they are not allowed to go up if they see the silver-haired pirates. He didn't know why Naval Headquarters issued such an order, but obviously, it must have something to do with the Saboti Archipelago incident a month ago. Although he is in the New World and rarely returns to the headquarters, he also knows that he can tie the hero Garp. There's also a blue-haired Kuina's silver-haired pirate group on board who can fight Kizaru Admiral for a day and a night. Now it is a veritable #1 pirate, 5 emperors. The previous title was just an exaggerated description by the World Economic News Agency for Boruto's attention. But now, I believe no one has any doubts, especially Marine. There are 2 admiral-level characters in the team. Even the current 4 emperors, no pirate group can do it. Even the red hair pirates with the fewest number and the highest bounty, he didn't think that their team would be able to reap the benefits under the attack of Garp and Admiral. Therefore, even if the silver hair pirates have no influence in New World, and they are newcomer pirates who have just entered New World, no one dares to block their way. What's more, he also received orders from the headquarters. Picking up the cigar, Drew Codrus put it to his mouth and took a deep puff. Then I didn't bother with the silver hair pirates anymore. Although silver hair is very powerful, this is not his business, but the Admiral's business. If you want to crusade against the silver hair pirates, he is just a soy sauce character. His task is to keep the island and the surrounding waters safe, prevent it from becoming a pirate's territory, and allow Marine to take root in New World. Marine EG-5 base. Boom boom boom. In the empty corridor, a Marine who looked more like a pirate than a Marine stood outside the base chief's office, and gently knocked on the door of the office. Come in. Advertisement. A friendly voice came out. Marine pushed the door open and entered immediately. What came into view was a simple office. Apart from a desk and a chair behind the desk, there was only a clothes hanger on the right. At this time, sitting behind the desk was a tall and tough man with short black hair in a white plaid coat and sunglasses. There are lightning-shaped sideburns on both sides of the man's cheeks. Seeing Marine come in, the man put down the coffee he was stirring, and put the spoon on the left side of his face. It was amazing that the spoon stuck to his face just like that, as if his face was magnetic. He picked up the coffee cup, took a sip, and then asked, "Commodore, what's the matter in such a hurry?" Overhead, that is, the one who pushed the door and came in. Marine, who looked like more pirates than Marine, looked at the man subconsciously bent down, and respectfully said, "Mr. Virgo, there have been many cases of children missing near Punk Hazard recently. Their parents are now found us here." Having said that, he paused for a moment, looked up at Virgo, and said flatteringly, "Look, how should I answer?" Answer. Virgo rested his chin on the back of his hands, propped his hands on the desk, and looked at Commodore who was waiting for him, with an inexplicable brilliance in his eyes. For the disappearance of the child, no one knows the reason better than him. After thinking for a while, he said in a deep voice, "Where are the parents of the children? You can just find a reason to dismiss them. The sea is so big, who knows who snatched the children away." As for the reported matter, Virgo thought for a while and continued, "Just reported as a shipwreck." "Yes, Monsieur Virgo." Overhead couldn't help laughing at Virgo's words. "Just kidding, how could he help civilians find children for his majestic G5 base Commodore? He's not a babysitter." Thinking of the parents outside, a cunning gleam flashed in his eyes. With the head of the base in his pocket, just find any reason to fool them. "That's okay, I'm going to deal with the parents outside." He raised his head and looked at Virgo. "Okay, advertisement." Virgo nodded and promised. "Go, be as gentle as possible, but don't be afraid, I'll be here if something goes wrong." "Well, thank you Mr. Virgo." He turned his head and gave a not-so-standard military salute to Virgo, turned around, walked out of the base chief's office with easy steps, and closed the door gently. After walking away, the office fell silent. After waiting for a while, Virgo took out a special phone bug from under the table and dialed it. The moment the phone was connected, his face changed suddenly, as if he had changed into a different person, from gentleness and humility to toughness, cruelty, and a hint of brutality. "This is his real face, Moses. Moses, is this Sir Virgo?" The phone was connected, and a woman's voice came from it. After hearing the woman's voice, Virgo's breath became gentle again, and he said, "Well, I'm Virgo." "What's the matter, Lord Virgo?" "It's nothing, I just want to ask if Guy's experiment has started. Are you in Punk Hazard now?" "Yeah, I'm at Punk Hazard right now." Punk Hazard. In a port by the sea. On a huge ship without any logo, a tall beauty with grass-green wavy long hair, golden eyes, left eye covered by bangs from time to time, is holding an arcworm microphone in her hand, looking at the subordinates who were carrying things down, spoke to the phone bug. "Master Virgo, I'm on the ship that transports the machine that Geisa wants to Punk Hazard right now. What's wrong?" "Is something wrong?" Virgo tapped his fingers lightly on the table, as if he was thinking about something. Then he raised his head and said into the microphone, "I'll come over later and see for myself. That guy, Geisa, has abducted a lot of children recently. Parents nearby found me here. I have to remind him that the research direction is mainly man-made devil fruit, as for Big O." Having said that, he paused slightly, his eyes full of fear, and then he thought of who the man-made devil fruit researched by the young master was mainly for, and the fear in his eyes disappeared. Then he said, "It can be studied, but it's better not to rob children. If Marine finds out, everything will be over." "Okay, keep busy, I'll find an excuse to come over later." After Virgo finished speaking, he hung up the phone, put the phone bug back in place, and then took out another phone bug. He didn't know who he called. His face was gentle and there was even a smirk. After hanging up the phone, his expression instantly returned to indifference. After thinking for a moment, he stood up, picked up the fur coat behind the chair and draped it over his body, walked to the weapon rack, picked up a bamboo-shaped weapon, and walked out of the room. Chapter 355 Monet Punk Hazard. Monet, that is, the beauty who answered Virgo's call. Putting down the microphone, she stretched out her hand and pushed the thick-bottomed milk bottle glasses on the bridge of her nose. There was a sense of intelligence unique to her in her golden pupils. Putting down his hands, Monet turned his head and looked at the research base hidden in the great Yamanaka in the distance, with a gentle smile on his face. The young master attaches great importance to Geisa like never before, and keeps sending her here. Even Lord Virgo, who has been staying in the marine and one of the top cadres, is also in this sea area. Marine, pirates, 4 emperors, Shichibukai, all that guy behind his experiments. Thinking of Geisa, a cold light flashed in her eyes. I hope you don't disappoint the young master. Her current identity is Geisa's secretary, a spy arranged by the young master to be next to Geisa. Except for the cadres in the family, no one knows. Interesting. On the top of the mast of the big ship that no one noticed, a handsome young man was sitting lazily on the void. The space around his body is like a huge bubble. From the outside, he is transparent, no one can find him. The handsome boy is none other than Sorata. After leaving Getrag, they sailed for a day near Punk Hazard. As soon as he came here, he discovered the ship and Monet, the beauty who was ranked number 1 in the original book. Compared with 3 years later, the current Monet has not been replaced by Luo with bird wings and bird claws. She wears thick-bottomed glasses, and she exudes a gentle and intellectual atmosphere. The whole person looks much more beautiful than 3 years later. I don't know what she thinks. There's Logia snow fruit, but also let Luo turn himself into a monster. Although after installing wings, it has the ability to fly, but there is no need to replace hands and feet with claws. It's not good to be a good person, but to be a monster. He came over first, originally to see if Guy's experiment had started. After arriving here, he immediately scanned Punk Hazard with observation hockey. In an underground laboratory, he found Guy's breath, and also found a frightened child locked in another room, them. Fortunately, although the children panicked, according to his observation, the titanization experiment should not have started yet. Advertisement because he didn't feel much power from the children, they were still ordinary human children. This discovery brought him a sigh of relief. If he could save it, he certainly hoped that the child he saved hadn't been tortured or turned into a monster by Guy. As for the conversation between Monet and Virgo, of course he heard the whole process. He was still thinking, after the incident here, should he go to the G5 Marine branch alone to kill Virgo? This is all right, this guy comes here by himself. This is the way to heaven if you don't go, but if you don't go to hell, you come by yourself. Abbreviation. Light in the toilet. Thinking of this, Sorata shook his head amusingly, then raised his wine gourd and took a sip, then turned his head to look out to sea. He just came here first, Liberty is not far from here, and the shadow can already be seen for a while. As time went by, Liberty gradually grew from a small black spot to a larger one, and finally even the pirates who were carrying the machinery were spotted. Boat, there's a boat. Hearing the shout, Monet turned around and walked outside the boat, pushed his glasses, and stared out to sea. It's really a ship. When she saw the bow of the approaching ship, she seemed to have thought of something, and her expression suddenly changed. The whole person even took a step back, and the golden pupils appeared on her body, a rare panic. For the unique windmill of the Liberty, now everyone in New World knows, and everyone knows. Didn't it mean that the Silver Hair Pirates set off from Saboti Archipelago a month ago and entered New World? It's been more than a month, and he's still wandering around in this sea area? It's nothing to wander around, but I came to Punk Hazard and was met by her. Thinking of Pika and Gladius, the top cadre of the family who disappeared in the Saboti Archipelago incident a month ago, her heart fell into the abyss in an instant. Others may be afraid of 7 warlords of the sea and 4 emperors, but the Silver Hair Pirates obviously don't. They even dared to kill celestial dragons, what else can they be afraid of? Back, find Geisa, and run away with him. Advertisement. Monet turned around quickly and ran towards the distant base. She can die, but Guy can't die. Guy Saw is the link between the 4 emperors and the young master. If Guy Saw dies here, then the wrath of the 4 emperors will be borne by him, and it will be the anger of the 4 emperors. As a senior member of the Don Quixote family, she knows very well how important Gaisa's research is to the 4 emperors, especially for the deal between Kaido and the young master. Want to run? Sorata looked at Monet's figure, the corners of his mouth turned up, and a sneer appeared on his face, then he shook his head, and the figure disappeared in the same place. Squeak. Monet ran to the other side of the boat and was about to jump off the boat when suddenly a handsome silver-haired man in a white shirt and floral shorts appeared on the fence in front of her. The man was sitting on the fence, leaning forward, with his feet crossed, his right leg resting on his left leg, wearing slippers on his feet, and he was looking at her interestingly with his blue pupils. He seemed to have been sitting there all the time, appearing silently. Looking at the man, Monet's heart stopped beating instantly. At this moment, she felt that the time around her stopped. In her ears, all the surrounding sounds disappeared, leaving only the beating of the heart. In her sight, the man's voice it replaced everything and became extremely tall. And behind the man, she seemed to see a swirling starry sky, exuding a sense of oppression that suppressed the world. Swallowing, Monet opened his mouth and let out a big breath. She was afraid that if she didn't exhale, she would suffocate in the next moment. This deep aura, like a starry sky, is this the terror of the world's top powerhouse? Even if Sorata didn't make a move, just sitting there made her whole body cold, as if her soul was going to be frozen. You should know that he is the ability user of Logia Snow Fruit. Even she felt like she was going to be frozen, which shows how much pressure Sorata put on her. It has exceeded her cognition. She has lived for so many years, even if she is 4 emperors, she is not as oppressed by this kid in front of her. Monet froze in place, but the pirates around him didn't froze, even if they thought the kid sitting on the fence looked familiar. But who were they? They are Shichibukai Doflamingo, members of the Don Quixote family. Are they still afraid of such a kid? Little devil, what are you doing here? Want to die? The pirates held their weapons and quickly surrounded them. The eyes looking at Sorata were full of cruelty. Chapter 356 Withering. Sorata withdrew her gaze from Monet, raised her head, and glanced at the pirates surrounding her. Her eyes became indifferent for a moment. Huh! A cold snort resounded across the entire beach in an instant. Along with the voice came a monstrous aura of domineering the world. Only then did the pirates realize that they had found the wrong target. This is not a kid, but an evil ghost. A boss of their boss's boss. Someone the entire Don Quixote family can't afford. No wonder it's familiar. It's you. Before the pirates had time to think about it, their eyes turned white and they passed out. For a moment the beach became silent. Monet looked at Sorata. The grass-green t-shirt and blue skirt were completely soaked with sweat, revealing a hazy and beautiful figure. At that moment just now, she felt the breath of death. This conqueror's haki, which is stronger than the young master, if the person in front of him deliberately avoided her, she felt that even she would be stunned. A trace of bitterness flashed in Monet's heart. She knew that today might be the end of her life. For the silver-haired group, other pirates may not be very clear, but their Don Quixote family is very clear. As soon as this group of people went out to sea, they stepped on the corpse of the legendary pirate and became famous in the sea. The young master has been paying attention to the news of Yinfa's group since he knew about Yinfa. This group of people is different from ordinary pirates. They are a group of righteous pirates. Although it is ridiculous for pirates to have justice in their hearts, they have already known their characters from what the silver-haired gang did after they went to sea, and they do have justice in their hearts. And I can't escape. Even if I want to escape, I can't escape. In front of this man, let alone her, even if the young master comes, I can't escape. Suppressing the constant fear in his heart, Monet raised his head for the first time, and met Sorata's blue pupils, which were as charming as the starry sky. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but couldn't. Shaking her head, she stared at Sorata again, her eyes revealing the determination to see death as home, and then her whole body started from the skin, and gradually became snow white. Advertisement: the surrounding air froze in an instant, and snowflakes fell from her body. The madness of ultimate appeared in Monet's golden pupils. She opened her mouth wide and turned into a mouth full of sharp teeth. She raised her head and roared, and rushed towards Sorata. She knew very well that if she used ordinary methods, she would not be able to hurt this man at all, but she has the ability of Snow Fruit, which can freeze the body of the person she touches for a short time, making them unable to move. She doesn't expect to defeat Sorata as long as she has access to him, she just wants to freeze him and give her a chance to escape. Even though she knew the hope was slim, but if you can live, who wants to die? Whether it's for the young master, for the Don Quixote family, or for her own sister, she must find a way to survive. However, although the idea is good, the reality is often cruel and abnormal. Sorata looked at the ice and snow monster charging towards him, without any fluctuation in his eyes. Snow Fruit may be very strong for ordinary people, but it is very limited in New World. If there is haki, it can cover every snowflake with haki. Of course it is very strong, but Monet in front of me. Sorata shook her head. She is not Smoker. Smoker is a real genius, but she is in a comfortable environment and has not practiced haki much. That guy can use 2 years to practice haki to the outside, covering the smoke. Of course it is a genius. But Monet in front of him couldn't cultivate to that level. Even if there is enough time. Stretching out his hand, the black fingers were covered with flowing pink air. Sorata looked at Monet, who was too slow in his eyes, and moved his finger forward slightly. Puff, fingers touched Monet's forehead, pierced directly through her forehead, ignoring Monet's elementalization. The black haki with pink luster, like a sword, shot through Monet's head, leaving behind her in the air a long black line that lingers for a long time. Why are you in such a hurry to seek death? Sorata withdrew her hand and scattered haki. There was no trace of bloodline on her smooth fingers. But Monet froze his body and returned to his original state in an instant. He looked at the young face close at hand. His eyes were full of self-mockery. I actually want to run away in front of such characters, ha ha. The blood flowed down the forehead, the front and back transparent holes, and kept bubbling out. The heat covered the pupils, making Monet's eyes red with blood. She dragged her heavy body, and turned slowly, facing the sea, and Doris Rosa look in the direction. Goodbye, young master. Goodbye, sugar. Boom, advertisement. The beautiful woman collapsed on the deck, like a flower that has just withered, completely breathless. Sorata looked at Monet, without any extra emotion in her eyes. As a cadre of the Don Quixote family, she may have been a poor person in her life, but she was not pitiful afterwards. There are many pitiful people in this world, but those worthy of his pity do not include the Don Quixote family. Granu, Buffalo, including the traitors in the original book, Baby 5, if they meet in the future, he will kill them without hesitation. If there is anyone in the Don Quixote family who can be let go by him, it is only the one with the fruit ability, the princess, Violet, of the original Reese Rosa kingdom. This world is also strange. The princesses he knows seem to be very strong, and all of them are qualified princesses. Vivi, Sophie, followed by Violet, Rebecca, and Wanakuna's little purple, Kazuki Hiyori. There is one failure. That is the mermaid princess of the Fishman Island, Shirahoshi. It was a child who couldn't grow up, a crybaby. But she also has a very good quality, that is, kindness. If her mother hadn't died prematurely and was trapped in the hard-shell tower by disgusting guys, she should also be able to grow into a qualified princess. Thinking of Shirahoshi, Sorata shook her head with a trace of regret on her face. In fact, when he first went to the Fishman Island, he wanted to go to Dragon Palace to meet this woman, who many people think is the most beautiful woman in the world. But then after knowing that Neptune didn't welcome him, he broke the idea. So for the Fishman Island, he still has a little regret. After all, it was only half a day. Taking out the wine gourd, Sorata raised her head and took a sip, and then stopped thinking about these things. He raised his head and looked at the quiet beach. His figure disappeared and appeared on a jar with sad black characters printed on it. This thing is the jar the guy asked for, and it is also the jar used to hold the artificial devil fruit raw materials. Sorata looked at the jar, thoughtful for a moment. As far as he knows, Geisa will produce Sadhir, and then hand it over to Doflamingo, and then in the Reese Rosa Sile factory, the villain of Lilliputian will process it into fruit. Everything is just beginning now. As long as Geisa is destroyed, the tragedy of Wanakuna's Shimotsuki Yasui and others will not happen. Guy Sarah, are you ready? Sorata raised his head and looked at the huge building complex built on the mountain ahead. His face was full of sarcasm. Chapter 357 Guy saw current buildings. The only Punk Hazard Institute left intact. Not long ago, Geisa came back here, and now it has completely become Geisa's experimental base. In a laboratory full of human remains. Black pointed long hair, with horns on his head, more than 3 meters tall, wearing purple lipstick and eye makeup. Guy, who was wearing an orange-yellow diagonal striped formal suit and a flowing white robe, was holding a syringe in his hand, looking excitedly at the man who was tied to the test bench and wearing prison stripes. The prisoner looked at Geisa with horror on his face. Rest assured. As if he didn't feel the prisoner's panic, Guy raised the syringe and said to himself, this is a muscle relaxant, which can interfere with the nerve conduction at the end of the target neuromuscular through drugs, reduce the muscle strength of the target, and make the whole body weak and rigid, unable to speak on its own. The more he spoke, the more frightened the prisoner became. If his mouth hadn't been sealed, the prisoner would have yelled loudly. Don't worry, it won't hurt or itch. After a while, you will be able to live in a culture vessel forever like other prisoners around you. Guy looked at the prisoner, without any hesitation, plunged the syringe in his hand into the prisoner's arm, and slowly injected the liquid in the syringe into it. This prisoner, including the stumps in the surrounding containers, are all prisoners who were originally imprisoned here on this island. People from Marine and World Government left without taking the prisoners. Now, these prisoners have all become his experimenters. With the injection of the liquid medicine, the prisoner's resistance became lower and lower, and finally became completely frozen. Haha, that's right. Guy pulled out the syringe, looked at the prisoner lying quietly on the test bench with satisfaction, and laughed out loud with his mouth open. Shish, shish. Now there is no Vegapunk that is contrary to his philosophy, and there is no nasty Marine to restrict him. He can experiment as much as he wants. This feeling makes him extremely satisfied. The laughter stopped abruptly. Guy looked suspiciously at the ceiling of the laboratory. Just now, he suddenly shivered for no reason, as if something bad was about to happen. Maybe it's a hallucination. The feeling came and went quickly, as if it was really an illusion. Advertisement Guy shrugged indifferently, with a relaxed face. Who is he? He is a genius scientist supported by 7 warlords of the sea, Kaido, and Charlotte Linlin. He doesn't believe that there are people in this world who dare to do anything to him. This is his laboratory. He is the king here. Shaking his head, Guy looked at the prisoner on the test bench. His eyes didn't seem to be looking at a similar person or a person, but a beast. He took out various instruments and potions from behind, and started further experiments. On the beach in the port, Sorata was of course arrogant about what Guy was doing, but he didn't try to stop it. The original prisoners on this island were not good people, most of them were pirates, and Sorata had no sympathy for them. He turned around, looked at his companions who disembarked from the Liberty, smiled lightly and raised his head to take a big sip of wine. Sizzle. Kuina emerged from the Cyan Arc, sitting next to Sorata, her legs rippling on the edge of the tin can. She put her arms around Sorata's arm, tilted her head and asked, Sorata, what are these? He didn't ask who are the people lying on the ground. Since Sorata made them faint, they are all damned, why ask them? Sorata looked back at Kuina, then pulled her down the tin can, stood in front of his partners, reached out his right hand and knocked on the tin can in front of him, and said with a smile. These things are all a mad scientist. The experiment he wants mechanics. As for the pirates around, they're all damned. Correct. Sorata turned her head, looked at the three of Awa, and said, I just stunned them, you guys remember to make up the knife later. Okay. The three of Ahua nodded. They have done this kind of thing more than once. Although these pirates pose no threat to them, to civilians, they are an insurmountable abyss. Kill them, they have no burden. Along the way, they never let go of any pirates they met. Except for Ace, of course. Advertisement that guy is here to learn from each other, not to trouble them. And that guy's personality is actually not bad, they didn't feel the malice in him that belongs to pirates alone. Ace even became their guide when they were on the Fisherman Island, making them friends. Although the relationship may not be too deep, it is still a friend. Let's go. Go and see this laboratory. Sorata raised his head and looked at the huge laboratory in front of him, an inexplicable brilliance flashed in his eyes. Is there any technology that is 500 years ahead of the world in this laboratory? To be honest, he doesn't believe in anything 500 years ahead of the world. Ever since he knew that the world's technology was long ago and not what it is now, he suspected that Vegapunk was so powerful because he had obtained ancient knowledge. No one can know it from birth, except from the future. Obviously Vegapunk can't come from the future, then he can only get ancient knowledge. It is true that he is a genius, but he cannot be a genius who is 500 years ahead of the world. Shaking his head, Sorata took the lead and walked towards the laboratory. Behind him, the three of Ahua did not follow, but turned and walked towards the countless pirates lying on the beach. Robin chuckled and followed, of course she was interested in this laboratory. After all, it is the laboratory where Vegapunk stayed in the teleportation array, maybe there are still interesting books in it. Of course, Indigo also followed, also as a scientist, although he is a doctor and has been staying in the sky with the Golden Lion. But he has also heard the legend of Vegapunk. He was equally interested in this one. Brooke didn't follow, but walked slowly to the side, took out a teapot, sat down, and slowly brewed coffee. In fact, he was not an escaped person, but he was lonely for too long, and his personality became like this. Staying on the Liberty, with the unparalleled sense of security given by Sorata, the world's top powerhouse, he gradually let go of the loneliness in his heart. Sometimes he is quiet, sometimes humorous, and sometimes escapes. Lubricant. Open the thick door of the research room. Sorata and others walked in. After entering, all that meets the eye is steel. The steel aisle, the steel portal, and the automatically lit white lights on the ceiling, all reminded them that this laboratory was not abandoned yet, and the power system inside was still there. And there are people inside. Chapter 358, okay, go shopping by yourself. Sorata turned to Robin and Indigo and said with a smile, this laboratory is not dangerous. If you look around, you may find a lot of interesting things. Aren't you with us? Robin looked at Sorata with a hint of doubt in his eyes. Captain, it seems that you know this place, why'd I feel that you were here specially? Ha ha, Sorata laughed, and then said, I do know, I won't tell you the specifics, I'm going to find a guy and send him to hell. Speaking of this, Sorata looked at the dim corridor in the distance, murderous intent flashed in his eyes. In the slightly dim research room, cool light shines through countless glass vessels standing upright. If it weren't for the corpses in the container, those corpses showing various strange postures, this room would be an ordinary laboratory at best. However, there were so many corpses that people felt their scalps tingling as soon as they entered. Because these corpses are all human. In the deepest part of the laboratory, there is an experimental table with a searchlight on it, emitting a hot white light. On the side of the test bench, Guy was wearing black gloves and was burying his head in something on a middle-aged man. From his occasional, ha ha ha, laughter, one can tell that he must be very happy at the moment. Yo, it's a good way to mend. At this moment, a chuckle suddenly sounded from behind Gaisa. Hearing someone praise himself, Guy blushed subconsciously, and then said proudly, that's right, don't you see who I am? Having said that, he suddenly realized, turned around quickly, and looked behind him. Behind him, a handsome kid with a long knife hanging on his waist was looking at him with a smile. Guy looked left and right, then at the door. When he saw the intact and completely closed door, a hint of doubt appeared on his face. Frowning, Guy slowly put down the needlework in his hands, and then a lot of white air came out of his hands, and the white air fell to the ground with the bloodstains on his gloves. In an instant, his gloves returned to their original state. Only then did he turn around and look at Sorata. Little devil, tell me, how did you get in here? When he was doing experiments, he always sealed the door of the laboratory. Only when he opened it from the inside could the door of the laboratory be opened. And now, this brat unexpectedly appeared in his laboratory without a sound. It doesn't look like an ordinary kid. Sorata looked at Gaisa, tilted her head, raised the corners of her mouth, and said in a funny tone, you don't know me. Advertisement, know you. Guy leaned forward, stared at Sorata's face, scrutinized it for a moment, and then said arrogantly, who the hell do you think you are? Why should I know you? The corner of Sorata's mouth twitched. The guy in front of him probably didn't pay attention to the situation in the sea or watch the news in the past 6 months. That's right, this guy has 4 emperors behind him, a Shichibukai and Marine, and no one can do anything to him. As a scientist, he cares more about his own research. Thinking of this, Sorata's face calmed down. Since the guy doesn't know who he is, there's no need to tease him. Taking out the wine gourd, Sorata raised his head and took a big sip, then looked down at Guy, and said seriously, it doesn't matter who I am, I'm here this time mainly to kill you. Kill me. Guy showed unprecedented surprise on his face, and his face was full of disbelief. Then a large amount of pink gas gradually appeared around his body. This guy is a Logia gas fruit capable user, can turn the body into a gaseous gas. Since it can turn any part of its body into gas, it can fly and float. This guy can also produce highly poisonous gas, which can manipulate various gases to poison or detonate targets with spontaneous combustion gas. It can also purify the gas around itself or compress the nearby gas, and can also extract the oxygen in the atmosphere to extinguish the fire and suffocate the opponent, or operate the flame that completely burns oxygen to attack. Generally speaking, this fruit is a powerful fruit. If it didn't fall into the hands of this guy, but into the hands of a physique powerhouse, this would create another powerhouse no less than Admiral. Gas fruit is not like smoker's smoke fruit, this thing is very dangerous. Sorata stared at Geisa with interest, not stopping him from transforming. After a while, the guy's lower body completely disappeared, turning into pink smoke. And his upper body was floating in the air, and the pink smoke around him was like ribbons, surrounding him. With this guy's long black hair and the horns on his head, this guy, at this moment, looked just like a real demon. Guy opened his hands and leaned forward, casting Sorata completely in his shadow. He opened his mouth wide, laughed arrogantly and said, "Little devil, you want to kill me just because of you. Shish. Who do you think you are? Who do you think I am?" Advertisement, oh. Sorata raised his head, his blue pupils had calmed down, the corners of his mouth twitched, and he smiled softly, "Who are you?" "Who I am." Guy took a step back, straightened his chest, opened his hands, and said arrogantly, "Who am I?" As he spoke, he lowered his head, fixed his eyes on Sorata, and said with a big smile, "I'm Geisa Current. I am a genius scientist, Geisa Current. You kid, don't you want to kill me?" As he spoke, he gradually leaned forward, casting Sorata in shadow once again. The corners of his mouth were raised, and his face showed a madness. "There is Shichibukai behind Lousy, there are 4 emperors, it's up to you? Just because you little brat wants to kill me, shish." Sorata looked at Guy who was laughing wildly, with a hint of helplessness on his face. "This guy is too crazy. Although you are right, with Shichibukai and 4 emperors backing you up, not many people in this world dare to do anything to you, but Lousy is not afraid of Shichibukai or 4 emperors." Jung. Sorata, who didn't want to see this guy laughing again, drew his sword and slashed upwards without hesitation. Puff. The pitch-black blade wrapped in pink gas easily sliced through Geisa's body. The laughter stopped abruptly, and the laboratory fell silent instantly. Sorata didn't look at Guy, swung his right hand to the right, and with a poof, left a blood-red bloodline on the floor on the right side of his body, then drew a knife and put the knife back into its sheath. Then he turned around and headed towards the innermost bookshelf in the laboratory. Behind him, Guy stared at Sorata's back with disbelief on his face. But the piercing pain in his chest told him that not only was this kid not afraid of Shichibukai, he was not afraid of the 4 emperors, and he really dared to kill him. He opened his mouth to say something, but what he spit out was full of blood. A huge sense of weakness instantly spread throughout his body, making him unable to maintain his elementalization anymore. His vision went dark, and his body returned to its original state. His whole body split in 2 from his chest, and he fell to the ground. Boom, the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground was especially loud in this quiet laboratory. Hearing the sound, Sorata stopped slightly, shook his head, and continued to move forward. Death deserves more than guilt. Chapter 359 The Blade of Time. Half an hour later, Sorata slashed open the door of the laboratory and walked out of the dark laboratory. Behind him, the fire instantly engulfed the entire laboratory. Although the progress of human beings is to constantly explore the unknown. But Sorata hates using humans for experiments. Even though there are many useful experimental records in the laboratory, these data will not promote human progress. They are all sad records, as well as various viruses and weapons. Record. For the people at the bottom, this is not progress, but a password to open the cage of the devil in the human heart. So Sorata did not hesitate to set fire to all of them after failing to find information about Vegapunk. Standing outside the door, a red light appeared in Sorata's eyes, and observation hockey swept across the entire research institute in an instant. Then he turned his head and glanced behind him again. Guy saw, who was lying in the sea of flames, with a hint of sarcasm hanging from the corner of his mouth. No matter how talented you are, no matter how great your background is, in the end, you will still be ashamed. He's not some little b************. As if thinking of something, Sorata burst out laughing. Shaking his head, the laughter stopped abruptly, and Sorata's figure disappeared without a trace along with the laughter. The mountain behind the research institute, Sorata's figure appeared silently on top of a boulder. Looking at the tumbling pool of poisonous gas below, a trace of curiosity appeared in Sorata's eyes. It stands to reason that Geisa is dead, and the monster slime he created with his own gas should also dissipate. But now looking at the small pool of poisonous gas that is constantly tumbling, it is obvious that there should be a big guy in it. A red light appeared in the eyes, and the mental power was attached to the color of knowledge, and fell into the poisonous gas. Sure enough, there was a living body similar to a Lord Darkhound inside. Have you eaten the fruit yet? Sorata frowned slightly, withdrew her mental power, and the red light in her eyes disappeared. A look of disappointment appeared on his face. It's a pity that he didn't find information about objects eating devil fruit in Guy's laboratory. The necklace that was fused with the door fruit was the result of his forcible fusion using the space domain and his own mental power to feel the power in the devil fruit. So the necklace is not a different kind of life. Sorata only feels the special ability given by devil fruit on the necklace. To use the necklace to open the door, the user has to pay the physical strength to open the door, not like Dark Hound. The bullets fired are all made by Dark Hound itself. Advertisement: it is also very simple to restore Dark Hound, usually just give Dark Hound a little dog food. Comparing the two, there are advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that anyone can use the artifact he forcibly fused, but the disadvantage is that it takes a lot of energy to use, and it cannot be developed again. It's not like Dark Hound. In fact, Dark Hound, an item that eats devil fruit, is strictly speaking an alternative life form. As long as it is a living body and stays with intelligent creatures like human beings for a long time, it will naturally give birth to the aura of wisdom. At that time, it will be able to develop the potential of its own fruit again. Like Dark Hound now. Compared with before, the bullets fired are obviously more powerful than when Arlo first got them. This broke his previous assumption that if the item ate devil fruit, the fruit's ability would be fixed. In fact, after he got the fruit of time, he has been thinking about whether to fuse this fruit with Zonkong. At that time, he will control the real time and space with the time knife in one hand and the space blade in the other hand. Not to mention I am, a monster that might be an alien. Even if he really meets an alien, he is invincible. Shaking his head, he put these wild thoughts behind him. It's useless to think too much. Although devil fruit is amazing, it has many bug abilities. In the last world, no one watched One Piece, and they didn't dream that they would have one day. Although it has serious weaknesses, who wants to be an ordinary person if you can be a Superman? It's a pity that he has space power that surpasses any power in this world, and he still has power without any weaknesses. Those, in the eyes of many people, belong to legends, and he still has many devil fruits on his body, which can easily create strong people, and they are not ordinary strong people. For him, it is a bit tasteless. Tiger, time, and now there are two more Logia fruits, gas and snow. Each one can drive countless people crazy, but now he can only stay in his space bag and eat ashes. Sighing for a moment, Sorata lowered her eyes and looked at the poisonous gas pool again. According to his observation, this guy doesn't have any consciousness right now. Although it is a different kind of life, its mind is blank, like a newborn baby. Do you want to kill him directly? Sorata hugged her chest with her left hand, clasped her chin with her right thumb, and rubbed against her chin, the shallow stubble that kept popping up recently. Let's kill it. Putting down his hand, Sorata held Zonkong's hilt in his right hand. Although this guy has just been born, he doesn't have any consciousness, and there are no people on the island. Advertisement, but who knows what will become of this guy in the future. After all, it was a monster made by poisonous gas. Although there was no one on this island, it didn't mean that there was no one in this sea area. Put this guy here, sooner or later he will become a real devil. And Wong Luffy wants to come here, with him, maybe without the Summit War. It will take a year and a half later. Who knows how many people this guy will kill during this time. Regardless of whether it was intentional or unintentional, as long as people come here, there are very few ordinary people who can resist the poisonous gas emanating from this guy. Jung. The cold knife light, with the sound of metal rubbing, cut across the poisonous gas pool below like an upside-down galaxy. The light of the knife cut across, and Shouton stopped rolling in an instant. Click. A crack stretched from the bottom of the boulder where Sorata stood, across the entire small pool, and spread to another big mountain in front of him, disappearing without a trace. Goo-goo. The death of the monsters under the small pool and the cracks caused the small pool to bulge up a lot of air bubbles in an instant. After that, the poisonous gas and liquid in the small pool continued to flow deep into the ground along the cracks, and the entire small pool disappeared after a while. And at the bottom of the pool, a huge purple-red monster that was divided into two halves was on both sides of the crack, and its body was melting like a candle under candlelight. Most gasified into poisonous gas, floating in the pit, and a few melted into poisonous water, flowing to the cracks. It disappeared completely in a short while. Raising his head and looking at the mountains in the distance, an inexplicable brilliance flashed in Sorata's eyes. Time to leave. At this time, Punk Hazard is not 3 years later, has not been baptized by Admiral, there is no ice and fire, and there is no fire dragon. There is no Luo, and there are no strange pirates. The other two laboratories have collapsed long ago, and there is no record of Vegapunk in this intact laboratory, let alone the two destroyed laboratories. Even if there is, it is impossible for him to go to the ruins to find it. If he has that time, he can go to the second half of New World to find Vegapunk himself. Vegapunk's whereabouts may not be known to others, and neither is he himself. When he came to this world, One Piece hadn't been serialized yet. However, the World Economic News Agency, that guy Morgans must know. Looking back, his figure disappeared from the spot. If it weren't for the crack in the ground that split the entire basin, it would be as if he had never been here. Chapter 360: The Strongest Hair Pirates at the Gate of the Institute. Sorata's figure appeared silently. Kuina, Robin, and Indigo were already here waiting for him. Behind them, followed by a group of children a few years old. When the children saw Sorata appearing suddenly, they subconsciously hid behind the three of them, then raised their heads and looked at him timidly. Looking down at the little ones, Sorata opened her mouth with a gentle smile on her face, then looked up at the three of Kuina. Sorata, Kuina met Sorata's gaze, stepped forward and said, "These children were all found in an empty room. I asked them, and they all didn't know where they came from. They only knew that they were sleeping at home, or they were shopping with their family members. They suddenly fainted and reappeared, and they were here." Seeing Sorata looking at the children behind her, Kuina then asked, "What about these children? There is no one here, and it is impossible to leave them here." When the children heard Kuina's words, they also looked at Sorata with hope. Although they don't know where this is, they know that this is definitely not the island where their home is. The beautiful sister rescued them, and of course they hoped that her sister would send them home. However, now it seems that the big brother should be the one who can call the shots. Sorata smiled at the children, then looked up at Kuina and smiled, "Simple." "Simple? Okay." Sorata nodded and replied, "We really don't know where the children's homes are, but Marine must know." Having said that, he looked overseas, with an inexplicable smile on his face. Seeing that Sorata was different, a flash of light flashed in Kuina's eyes, and at the same time, he turned his head and looked overseas. "That is an undercover agent who is in the Marine and has a pirate in his heart." Sorata chuckled, then looked away. In his eyes, Virgo was just a little grasshopper. There are 3 people on the pier, Ahua, enough to capture that guy, or kill him. Okay, let's settle the children's affairs first. It's not far from the island of the G5 branch guarded by Marine. Just call Naval Headquarters and ask Marine to come and pull people. After speaking, Sorata took out a phone bug from his pocket, stroked his chin and thought about it. Then he dialed the number on the phone bug and called. Advertisement. The last time he spoke to Sengoku in the sea outside Alabasta, he memorized the number. Blue blue blue. Naval Headquarters, Office of the Marshal. Sengoku was busy writing on his desk. A huge organization spread all over the world and all sea areas. There are countless big and small things every day, although he only deals with the reports sent up from below, but it is enough for him to be busy. He hadn't taken a day off since becoming marshal. Until now, he couldn't remember the last time he was on vacation. Hey, work hard. Pausing his pen, Sengoku picked up the paper in front of him, placed it on another stack of papers aside, and looked down at the next sheet. After looking at it for a while, he was just about to start writing when the phone bug placed on the right corner of the desk suddenly rang. Sengoku looked up and stared at the phone bug with a puzzled look on his face. Usually nothing happens, the phone in his office won't ring. Not to mention the time he is working now. Without hesitation, he put down his pen, pushed aside the documents to be processed in front of him, took the phone bug from the right, and quickly picked up the receiver. Moses. This is the Marshal's office. I'm Sengoku. What's the matter?" At this moment, a serious voice came from the microphone. "Master Marshal, Yinfa is calling and looking for you. Can I put you through?" "Who are you talking about?" Sengoku's face turned serious with the naked eye. "Silverhair, the captain of the Silverhair Pirates, Silverhair Sorata." Sengoku sat up straight with the microphone in his hands, his eyes full of seriousness. "This guy has been stable for a month, and I look for him as soon as he appears. What happened?" He thought about a month ago. That day it collapsed like a crack that affected half of the Grand Line. A month ago, the silver-haired gang rescued a young girl at the Saboti Archipelago auction site. According to reports, that girl was Kei Keladuo's princess, Kei Keladuo Sophie. And a month ago, according to the news from New World, the explosion that created the crack should be in the sky above Kei Keladuo. This was also confirmed afterwards. Coco Ludo disappeared. Advertisement. Although Coco Ludo disappeared, the Silverhair Pirates and the people on Coco Ludo did not disappear. They all migrated to Gus, an island that had been exterminated decades ago. Most people in this world don't know these things. But among them, Marine is not included. Although Marine doesn't have much territory in New World, its intelligence work is not comparable to other forces. Although it is still not clear what exactly happened in the sky above Kei Keladuo. However, the protagonist must have silver hair. He shuddered at the thought of the crack that spread to the smaller half of the Grand Line. It's not that he's afraid of silver hair, it's just a subconscious feeling of manpower when facing Tinwei. A month ago, facing the crack that spanned the entire Red Line, although it was only a short 10 seconds, it was enough for him to remember it for a lifetime. The breath that didn't belong to this world that he felt through the crack made him know for the first time that there is a bigger world outside this world. And he, like ants, that feeling made him extremely uncomfortable and gave him an extremely strong sense of crisis. And now, the silver hair, who may be one of the protagonists who caused the crack, called him as soon as he went out to sea, which made him have to take it seriously. Hey, is that Mr. Sengoku? I'm Sorata. At this moment, the young voice from the phone bug brought Sengoku back to his senses. He looked at the phone bug in front of him, hesitated for a moment, and said seriously, I'm Sengoku, what's the matter? Send. Haha. Don't be so alien, Sengoku-san, you can call me Sorata directly. To be honest, I don't like the title of silver hair. Really, you are too perfunctory. You thought we were going to compete with Shanks for the strongest hair pirates? You know that guy is very strong, and now I'm in New World. I don't have a territory, and I don't have any younger brothers. When I meet him, I won't be ridiculed severely by him, and the title of the strongest hair pirate group can only be handed over. Although I don't care. Sengoku quietly listened to Sorata's long speech, and there was no wavering on his face for the title Sorata said. At that time, he was indeed a perfunctory nickname. But this matter, he will never admit it, because the title of Silver Hair, along with Sorata's reputation, has spread throughout the world, and this cannot be changed. So no matter how Sorata complained, he just ignored it. Chapter 361 Undercover. After Sorata finished speaking, Sengoku said, "Tell me, find me as soon as you come out. Is there something important?" "Haha. It's nothing, but we killed an arrogant guy named Gaisa Current in Punk Hazard." "Gaisera?" Sengoku lowered his head and thought for a while, then asked, "Is it a Logia gas fruit ability user?" "Well, that's him. This guy arrogantly told me that he has Shichibukai, 4 emperors, and Marine behind him. To be honest, I was so scared that I gave him a knife." That guy should be ashes by now." The corner of Sengoku's mouth twitched. He knew that Sorata was joking, but he shouldn't be lying when he said there was Marine, which made him slightly silent. He doesn't know much about these scientists. These things are the affairs of the world government, and their Marine is just to protect their safety. In fact, it's just a security guard. Pushing the mirror frame, he held the microphone and asked, "It's just a scientist, and you don't need someone like you, just call me." "Tell me, what's the matter?" It's really not about that guy. When we were dealing with this guy, we found a large number of children in the laboratory. It should be that this guy robbed him from a nearby island for experiments." Speaking of this, the voice in the phone bug became serious. "We don't know where the hometowns of these children are, but you Marines must know, so we sent Marines to receive them." "Oh, right." Without waiting for Sengoku to reply, Sorata continued. "Now the base chief of the G5 Marine branch, Vice Admiral Virgo, is also here. This guy is an undercover agent sent by Shichibukai Doflamingo to Marine. Don't ask me why I know, you can check it yourself. Since this guy is here, I'll clean it up for you, don't thank me." "Okay, that's it. Remember to collect the corpse and pick up the children, goodbye." Before Sengoku could answer, Sorata hung up the phone. Beep beep beep. Listening to the beeping sound from the microphone, Sengoku didn't recover for a long time. Shichibukai should be Doflamingo. 4 emperors should be the guy who traded with Doflamingo. It can't be the redhead, it can't be Whitebeard, it can only be Charlotte Linlin and Kaido. As for Marine, Sengoku put down the phone, and then dialed the office of the base chief of the New Worlding 5 branch. Advertisement blue blue, blue blue. No one answered for half a day. Then he hung up and dialed the adjutant's office. This time it was connected, but the adjutant didn't know where Virgo went. Putting down the phone, Sengoku leaned back on the chair with a trace of sadness in his eyes. He knew that Virgo, the vice admiral, was a junior he was very optimistic about. It was only on his recommendation that Virgo was transferred from naval headquarters to the New Worlding 5 branch. Marine has only 2 branches, G1 and G5, in New World. In a commercial center like Getrag, Marine will also send people to guard it, but it is not a base, and there is only a Marine stationed on it. This type of Marine is mainly to protect the tranquility of the nearby sea area, and the sea area that can sail is very small. Sengoku can let Virgo go to the G5 branch and be the base chief there, which is enough to show that he values Virgo. Now he knows from Sorata that this junior whom he valued is actually an undercover agent of a pirate, which makes him very uncomfortable. Of course, he couldn't believe all of Sorata's words, so he called the G5 branch to inquire. Although he knew that with Sorata's strength, there was no need to lie to him about such a thing, but he couldn't help but imagine that all of this was Sorata's joke. Now he knows that Virgo is not in the G5 branch, and if Sorata is added, then he must be in Punk Hazard now. In his capacity as a vice admiral, alone, what is he doing sneaking around in Punk Hazard? Don't think about it, he does have a problem and is undercover. Thinking of Punk Hazard, thinking of Sorata, thinking of what Sorata said just now. Sengoku shook his head. From Sorata's tone, he knew that even if Virgo had no problem, since Sorata said to clean up, he would not be able to come back. Hey, sighing, Sengoku called New World again, but this time it was not the G5 branch, but the G1 branch. Since he knew that Virgo had a problem, how could he let the people from the G5 branch go to Punk Hazard? After a while, he gave the task of going to Punk Hazard to pick up the child, and investigating Virgo, the G5 branch. Punk Hazard. Advertisement at the door of the research room. Sorata put down the phone bug, threw it into the space bag, and smiled at Kuina. Here, it's as simple as that, just wait for the Marine to pick up the children later. Kuina nodded in satisfaction, turned around and rubbed the head of the child behind her, bent down and smiled and said, "Don't worry, the Marine uncles will come here later to pick you up." "Thank you, sister." The children thanked Kuina loudly, then looked at Sorata and said loudly, "Thank you, big brother." Ha ha. Sorata laughed, and then asked Kuina to take the children to wait in the research room. There were corpses outside, and the children were still young, so they couldn't help being frightened when they saw it. Kuina nodded, and together with Robin, they returned to the laboratory with the children. Only Sorata and Indigo were left at the door. Only then did Sorata ask Indigo if he had found anything interesting in the laboratory. Indigo shook his head and told him that the laboratory had been evacuated a long time ago. This was not a disorderly retreat, but an orderly relocation. Except for some experimental equipment that could not be taken away, there was no record paper. Turn up. Sorata nodded in agreement. Before he went in, he was still wondering if he could find the records of Vegapunk. In Geisa's laboratory, he did not find any useful records, and since then, he knew that there could be no other places. But it doesn't matter if there is or not, he didn't come here specifically to find Vegapunk, but mainly to kill Geisa. As for Monet and Virgo, it can only be an accident. It just hit his muzzle. Want to run. At this moment, Sorata raised her eyes and looked at the sea outside the harbor. In his sight, on the undulating sea level, there was a small boat. At the bow of the boat, there was a middle-aged man full of determination. As if sensing Sorata's gaze, Virgo, who was about to turn the bow and leave quickly, turned his head suddenly and met Sorata's gaze. The distance was too far for Virgo to see clearly, but those blue pupils, like the starry sky, seemed to reflect into his soul, and quickly filled his entire line of sight, allowing him to see incomparably from such a long distance, clear. He could even feel a hint of ridicule and banter from these pupils. Chapter 362. Unite to live, divide to die. Well, where do you want to go? Behind Virgo, Sorata appeared silently. He reached out and patted Virgo's shoulder, looked at the coffee spoon on his face, and said with a smile. Yo. Should first call you Marine Vice Admiral, or, the Don Quixote family, first-generation Corazon, one of the top cadres? Virgo is the first person to cover his whole body with armament hockey after the hockey setting appeared in the One Piece world. When he first appeared on the stage, that hockey surprised many people. If this guy hadn't been careless, misjudged Luo's strength, and used his body to resist Luo's slash with op fruit ability, he wouldn't have been defeated so quickly. Afterwards, it was cut into more than a dozen pieces by Luo, stuck to the railing of the sad manufacturing room, and fell to hell with the explosion of the sad manufacturing room. To be the top cadre of the Don Quixote family, to be appreciated by Sengoku, and to be the base chief of the G5 Marine branch, this guy is still very strong. In the original book, Smoker 2 years later, even if hockey has improved very quickly, and can cover the smoke with external speakers, he is still easily defeated by this guy. However, no matter how strong he was just a small ant in front of him. Marine won't come over for a while, Sorata doesn't mind, just play with him. When? Virgo's body stiffened instantly, the blue pupils in front of him, like the starry sky, were still there, but the person was already behind him. Gudu. Swallowing, the fog in front of Virgo gradually disappeared, and his vision returned to normal. He didn't dare to look back, or even move. No one knows better than him, the Marine Vice Admiral undercover agent, how terrifying the people behind him are. He heard the order from above more than once to run as far as he meets this guy. He used to not take it seriously. He has been staying in the G5 branch. As far as he knows, Silverhair is a person who is biased towards justice in behavior and will not come to Marine base. But he would never have thought that he would come here secretly this time to see Geis's research progress and warn him not to rob children again. That's how I met Silverhair. Looking at the quiet big boat parked on the shore, without thinking, he knew that there should be no living people on it. Advertisement including Monet. If he had to use one word to describe his mood at this time, it would have to be FK. Say something. Sorata let go of Virgo's shoulders and appeared in front of him, staring into his eyes, frowning slightly, and a hint of impatience flashed in his eyes. As if sensing Sorata's impatience, Virgo's heart shrank subconsciously, feeling like he was about to die. He stared at Sorata, his whole body seemed to be stimulated, and armament hockey covered his whole body in an instant, making him a real, pitch black man, reflecting steel luster. Haha. That's right. Sorata looked at the transformed Virgo, her brows were flattened, and a smile appeared on her face. You don't speak, and you don't move. I thought you were a dead person? Speaking of the dead, Sorata grinned at Virgo. Sorata was smiling, but Virgo couldn't laugh. He looked at Sorata and asked in a deep voice, Silverhair, what do you want? He definitely couldn't beat him, and he knew this very well. In front of this guy, even if he ran away, he couldn't escape. And this guy didn't kill him right away, but seemed to be forcing him to resist, probably for some other purpose. As for what is the purpose, he doesn't know. Haha, you will know soon. Sorata reached out again and patted Virgo on the shoulder. Looking at Sorata's hand, Virgo's pupils shrank suddenly. He just wanted to resist, but suddenly, the space around him suddenly became extremely hard, imprisoning him in place, unable to move at all. What the hell is this? Is this the real strength of the person in front of me? Instantly imprisoning Vice Admiral, this strength is too terrifying. Virgo stared at the hand that replaced heaven and earth in an instant, filling his entire vision, and panic appeared in his heart for the first time. In fact, the first time he found Sorata, he knew that he couldn't escape today. And after Sorata revealed his identity, he knew that he would definitely die today. So regarding Sorata's appearance, he didn't have any panic, and he didn't have any fear in his heart. His decades of life experience have long made his heart as tough as iron, and the softness deep in his heart will only be open to his family and the young master. Advertisement. But now, even if he wanted to, he couldn't suppress this fear that naturally arises between life and death in the face of something that a creature cannot resist. However, just when he was about to close his eyes and wait for death, Sorata just patted him on the shoulder lightly, but did not make any movement. Sorata looked at Virgo, the corners of his mouth turned up, and there was a hint of sarcasm on his face. Virgo felt the fear deep in his heart, of course he felt it. He thought this guy didn't have the emotion of fear? Shaking his head, Sorata's hand changed from clapping to grabbing. He grabbed Virgo's shoulder, lifted him up, and then floated into the air, flying towards the port. Flying to the side of the Liberty ship, Sorata stopped, then grabbed Virgo with his right hand, and threw it towards the beach in the port, like throwing garbage. The moment he threw his hand, Sorata released Virgo's restraint. So Virgo didn't fall to the ground, but landed on the beach very firmly. Before he could recover, Sorata's voice came from behind him. Hey, my goal is very simple, as long as you can defeat the 3 people in front of you, I will let you go, it's very simple. Sorata was lying sideways on the fence, with his left hand behind his head, resting on his head, holding up the wine gourd with his right hand, raised his head and took a big sip, then turned his head to look at Virgo who was confronting the 3 of Ahua. Although this guy is useless to him, but for the 3 of Ahua, he is a very good sandbag. Can exercise their hockey. The 3 of Ahua are not geniuses, they are not even considered talents. If they hadn't eaten devil fruit, hadn't been under the pressure of the Sorata space domain, and hadn't been for their own hard work, it was impossible for them to grow to this point. And when they arrived in New World, they had to fight many hockey powerhouses. Only through countless battles with different strong men can they grow again. Although it is impossible for them to reach Admiral's level in the end, Sorata still hopes that even if they can't reach that level, they can't let Admiral kill in seconds. If conditions permit, 3 will fight against 1. He hopes that even if they lose, they will still protect themselves, even Joe Zahn with Admiral. Finally, add the devil fruit he collected to make a special devil fruit weapon, which can truly not be afraid of anyone and anything in this world. This is what he expected of the 3 of Ahua. Touch the gold, Captain. If you unite, you will live, and if you divide, you will die. Sorata looked at the 3 of Ahua, and instantly thought of the trio in the novel she read in her previous life, and shook her head amusedly. Then he ignored the upcoming battle on the beach, but lay on the fence, drank the wine, squinted his eyes, and stared at the sky in a daze. Chapter 363 Destroy World. The Liberty under the setting sun seems to be coated with a layer of golden light. And the boy lying on the fence had silvery white hair, a snow-white shirt, a handsome face, and a lazy temperament exuding from the boy. Let him look at it from a distance, as if he has merged with Liberty in the world, like an ink painting written by a master with wand and brush and ink. If it weren't for the sound of collisions on the beach from time to time, all of this must be more beautiful. At this time, there was no intact flat land on the beach, and there were countless large and small potholes scattered throughout the beach. In one of the potholes, Virgo was opening his mouth. His lungs were like a bellows, constantly inhaling and exhaling, causing his whole body to continuously expand and contract. On the other side of him, Arlo was also panting nonstop. Judging from his breathing, Arlo was even more serious than him. But Virgo was not at all happy. What he thought at first was that Ahua and the other 3 should not be very strong, so Sorata specially caught him and used him as a punching bag for the 3 of them. But the ensuing battle confirmed his conjecture that the hockey of the 3 of Ahua was indeed not high. Without fruit ability, but these 3 guys fought shamelessly. Let's fight on wheels. Fortunately, it was originally a sandbag, and there were no extra requirements. But these 3 guys were about to collapse completely, but the fat man wearing glasses took out 3 carrots from his bag. After they ate the carrots, they suddenly became alive and well. How can you fight this? Isn't this bullying? It was originally a wheel war, but you are still hanging around. Uncomfortable. Looking at Aluo who was more out of breath than him just now, after eating a radish, he recovered, and then stepped aside, looking lively. The corners of Virgo's mouth kept twitching, and his face, which had always been serious, could no longer be maintained, and completely collapsed. And the pitch-black color on his body also completely collapsed with the change of his expression, and he could no longer maintain full body coverage. Opening his hands, he completely gave up control of hockey, and then his body fell backwards, and with a bang, his body formed a large font and fell to the ground. Destroy it. The world. With his eyes glazed over and out of focus, Virgo completely lay flat. Adao, who had just come out, looked at Virgo who was lying on the ground, a look of letting them do what he wanted, with a trace of helplessness flashing across his face. Isn't it just fighting and hanging up? Advertisement. Is this necessary? If Virgo could hear his inner voice, he would definitely spit out Fang Fei loudly, curse, FK, and then spit again. Hey, get up. Adao walked up to Virgo, kicked him lightly, and said softly, I promise, I won't eat radishes anymore. Get up, cheer up, and continue fighting. Man, how can you lie flat? How can you say no? Virgo didn't make any movement, just stared at Adao closely. You're so simple. Did the dog eat everything you said earlier? Adao looked at Virgo, as if he felt the words in his heart. He did say that he would eat only 1 radish to inspire Virgo's fighting spirit, but now he is a little embarrassed to be watched by Virgo. So he smiled, and pulled out Kyoka Suigetsu, his face turning cold for a moment. He hung the tip of the knife above Vigo's chest, stared into Vigo's eyes, and said indifferently, if you don't get up again, you will really go to hell. Even so, Virgo didn't respond at all. If at the beginning, he heard that Sorata promised him that as long as he defeated the 3 of Awa, he would let him go, he still had a little hope of escape. But ever since Ahua and others took out the carrot, he knew that no matter what, he would never leave alive. After fighting for so long, his physical strength has long been exhausted. Really think hockey covers the whole body, easy? Moreover, he didn't believe a word of Adao's words. This guy said earlier that he wouldn't eat carrots. Fraud. Looking at Virgo who was like a corpse, and feeling the death intent in this guy's heart, a trace of boredom appeared on Adao's face. Without hesitation, the tip of Kyoka Suigetsu's sword stabbed viciously at Virgo's heart. When death came, there was a momentary fluctuation in Virgo's eyes, but he recovered in an instant. Puff. The blade pierced Virgo's heart without hindrance, causing his violent chest to pause for an instant. See. Pulling out the blade, Awa turned around, swung his right hand to the right, swung the bloodline off the knife, and put the knife back into its sheath. Behind him, Virgo opened his mouth wide, and blood kept pouring out from the wound above his heart and mouth, staining the entire ground red in a short while. And there was a look of relief on his face. Advertisement. Then his eyes dimmed, and he gradually lost his breath. On the Liberty, Sorata sat up and looked at Virgo, who had no signs of life, without any fluctuations in his eyes. This guy deserves death too. Not to mention anything else, just knowing how the child disappeared and not reporting it, but concealing it, is enough for him to die. He looked away from Virgo and turned to look out to sea. It's finally here. Logically speaking, it wouldn't take so long for the G5 branch to get here. Judging from the call he heard between Monet and Virgo, it only took an hour. And now it's been half a day since he talked to Sengoku, and Marine is long overdue. Looking at the huge letter G1 on the Marine warship, Sorata's eyes showed a hint of enlightenment. It turned out to be the G1 branch that was notified. 2. If he were Sengoku, he would not let Marine from the G5 branch do things at this time. Who knows how deeply the G5 branch was penetrated by Doflamingo. It's okay to only have one Virgo. If there are more, and form the G5 branch, won't they let them escape? However, only Sorata knows that Sengoku is completely superfluous. Because, in the G5 branch, there is only Virgo as an undercover agent. Of course, scum like the Long Commodore is also indispensable. However, all this has nothing to do with him. After Marine went to the island, Sorata asked them to clean up the bodies on the beach, and then Kuina and Robin from the Research Institute came out with the children. When the children saw Marine, they immediately became active. If they were a little worried before, after seeing Marine really came, the worry disappeared instantly. Marine didn't stay here much. Strictly speaking, Silverhair is pirates, they are Marines. But it was pirates who rescued the children, which made them uncomfortable for a while. After letting the children board the boat, Marine sailed away without saying hello to Sorata and the others. On the boat, the children lay on the guardrail, waving to Sorata and the others standing on the shore, their little faces full of gratitude. Sorata and others also raised their hands to say goodbye. After a while, Marine's warship disappeared on the sea level, and Punk Hazard became quiet again. Chapter 364 Kuina's Progress. The next day. Early morning. The warm morning light pierces the clouds in the sky, dyes the world red, swaying the brilliance wantonly, exuding amazing charm. On the Liberty, everyone got up early. In the exercise room at the top of the mast, Sorata is lying on a rocking chair, admiring the beautiful sunrise through the glass in front of him. Although sailing on the endless sea, he admired enough of this kind of sunrise, but he couldn't get enough of it. He likes the new breath of the rising sun illuminating the sea. Looking out of the window, his left fingertips unconsciously and regularly slashed across the Zonkong blade across his legs. A jet of black hockey with a pink luster, like flowing water, kept flowing slowly on Zonkong's blade. If you look at it with a magnifying glass, you can see that hockey is like 1,000 hammers, constantly tempering Zonkong, making Zankong slowly turn black. If you listen carefully, you can even hear countless rubbing sounds from Zonkong's blade. This process has never stopped since he obtained Zonkong. Basically do it every day. Even because of his monster-like physique, hockey is much more than the average person, so as long as Zonkong is hanging on his waist, he will not stop tempering Zonkong. However, even so, after so many years, Zonkong still has not become a black knife. From here, we can know how difficult it is to really give birth to a black knife, and it is no wonder that there are only 2 known black knives in this world. Picking up the steaming coffee on the coffee table on the right, Sorata put it near her mouth, took a breath out of habit, and then took a light sip. The coffee is from Brook, and I don't know whether it's because of his brewing technique or the coffee he bought, which is much better than the coffee they bought themselves. After drinking Brook's coffee once, Sorata also gradually liked the taste of coffee. He didn't like the taste before, but after Brook combined coffee and tea, it was different. As expected of a person who has been brewing coffee all his life, even if he dies and becomes a skeleton, he is still brewing coffee continuously, and this brewing has been done for 50 years, and his skills are already close to the Tao. Advertisement. It's no wonder that the coffee he makes tastes better than that of a real chef like Awa. Putting down the coffee cup, Sorata turned the rocking chair and turned to look at Kuina, who was sitting on the middle cushion and wearing a loose white exercise suit. I saw cyan arcs flickering non-stop on her body. These arcs rubbed against the air, making a whistling sound. The electric current is like a small snake, swimming around her constantly, and in the body under the skin, more electric arcs are entangled on each cell, constantly discharging, stimulating the cells to continuously rise and fall, as if just like the cells are breathing. With the stimulation of the current, the cells become stronger and more resilient. It has been almost 2 months since Kuina got Thunderfruit. In the past 2 months, her progress can be said to be earth-shaking. Not to mention the development of Thunderfruit, just training her body through thunder and lightning made her body break the upper limit of her talent. It can't be said that she has stepped into the level of a monster now, but it is almost the same. If she fights with Kizaru and Aokiji again, she should be able to fight more easily and fight longer. Coupled with the unparalleled slash brought about by the speed of the lightning, it might be able to hurt Admiral. You must know that her swordsmanship talent is actually stronger than Sorata. With her understanding and dedication to the sword, she has the speed brought by thunder and lightning, as well as the strength after breaking through the limitations of her body. At this time, it can be said that she has completely stepped into the ranks of the pinnacle of the world. Now she, not to mention the world's strongest female swordsman, even the world's strongest swordsman, can fight for it. Of course, that's a situation where Sorata doesn't make a move. After all, for swordsmen in this world, generally speaking, the most important thing is talent and strength. Sorata's swordsmanship talent may be weaker than Hawkeye, Kuina, and Zoro. But his strength is much stronger than theirs. His spatial physique is being strengthened all the time and without limit. As long as he understands the Swordmaster's iron-slashing state, it is only a matter of time before he becomes the strongest Swordmaster in the world. He already knew about this matter. That's why he made the promise to Zoro that he was waiting for him on the throne of the world's #1 swordsman. Of course, the premise of all this is that there is no other realm above Jia now. Fortunately, Master Koshiro didn't tell him, and he didn't feel the realm above the swordsman from Mihawk. That means that a swordsman is the pinnacle of swordsmen in this world. Advertisement to distinguish the strength of a swordsman, only physical fitness, combat experience and Haki remain. As for these 3 points, except for combat experience, Haki should be on par with Mihawk, and his physical fitness is definitely better than Mihawk. So when his body grows for a while, and Haki grows for a while, even if his fighting skills and experience cannot compare with Mihawk, he can completely defeat Mihawk with his strength and Haki, and become the #1 in the world. Thinking of Mihawk, a smile formed on the corner of Sorata's mouth. This guy might be at Wano-kuni by now. After they sparred, he told Mihawk that the next time they met was in Wano-kuni, and he would personally take the title of world #1 from him in the hometown of the legendary swordsman Ryoma. And Mihawk didn't think much and agreed directly. He is a pure swordsman, and he has been pursuing the ultimate swordsmanship all his life. He can feel that Sorata is not the best in terms of body and Haki, so he is very much looking forward to another battle with Sorata. He doesn't care about being #1 in the world. What he cares about is whether there is a kendo partner who can rekindle his fighting spirit. He stayed in that position by himself for too long, so long that he couldn't see the road ahead and didn't know how to improve next, so in the original book, he searched all over the world for someone who could surpass him. And Zoro is just one of them. There are more Zoro in places invisible from the perspective of the protagonist group, but Zoro is the one with the greatest potential in Mihawk's heart, plus the relationship between Luffy and Shanks, Zoro's own tough heart, and the pursuit of the world's #1 because of his strong will. Everyone will take special care of him. What are you thinking about? At some point, Kuina stood up and stood in front of Sorata. She didn't dislike Sorata drinking it. She took the coffee cup from Sorata's hand and drank it all in one gulp. Sorata looked at Kuina with a gentle smile on his face. He shook his head and said, "I didn't think much of it, just thought of Mihawk, and then thought of Zoro." Zoro. Kuina put down the coffee cup, stretched out his hand to stroke the slanted bangs on his forehead. A flash of memory flashed in his eyes. I don't know where that guy is now. Given how crazy that guy is, maybe he's still trapped in a certain forest. Ha ha ha. Indeed. Sorata laughed and nodded in agreement with Kuina's words. Then he and Kuina looked at each other and laughed out loud at the same time. Chapter 365 Road Crazy and Orange Short-Haired Girl. East Blue. Somewhere in a forest somewhere in the ocean. 3 sword-style demon slash. The light of the knife flashed, and there was a sound of puff, and a majestic grizzly bear with a height of more than 5 meters froze in place. Ding! Behind it, a man in a white t-shirt with a turban on his head was standing up, inserting 2 knives in both hands into the scabbard around his waist. He then took down the knife in his mouth, swung it to the right, and swung the bloodline off it, then turned to look at the grizzly bear behind him, his eyes full of sneer. The weak can only be my food. At this moment, the grizzly bear fell to the ground with a bang, twitched a few times, and was completely silent. Inserting the 3rd knife back into the scabbard, Zoro raised his head and looked up at the sky, the sunlight falling through the gaps in the tree canopy, the corners of his mouth twitching non-stop. What the hell is this place? He didn't expect that not long after he went to sea, he was trapped on an island again. There must be some kind of trap on this island that keeps him from getting out, so he won't admit that he is lost. Speaking of getting lost, he thought of the Straw Hat Kid who brought him out of the forest in Goa Kingdom a month ago. That kid actually dared to laugh at him. If that guy hadn't brought him out, he would have killed him. The guy even invited him to be his crew afterward. He didn't feel burdened about this, and he didn't know what happened, as if it was destined. He always felt that although the Straw Hat Kid mocked him, his personality was very suitable for him. And he also knew that it was impossible for him to go to the Grand Line alone, so after hesitating for a moment, he agreed. But that guy has to wait a year before going to sea. A year later, Sorata is on the top of the world. How can he afford to wait? If it weren't for the heartless smiling face of the Straw Hat Boy, he thought at the time, give him a knife. But a man, since he promised, he must keep his promise, so even if he doesn't want to, he has to wait for that kid in East Blue for a year. 1 year. Thinking of the recent news about Sorata, although he agreed to the Straw Hat Boy, it was impossible for him to wait for him in Goa Kingdom for a year. He went out to sea to find the strong to fight. Only by fighting can he quickly improve his strength. So after explaining the situation to the Straw Hat Boy, he went to sea again without hesitation. This trip went smoothly, and I met many different pirates, and I felt my progress during the battle. But what the hell, he was trapped in a forest again. The straw hat took him out last time, so what about this time? Advertisement uncomfortable. Zoro lowered his head, looked at the fallen grizzly bear, and muttered, looks like I have to find 2 younger brothers. Although he didn't want to admit it, he really didn't know how to get out of such a forest. With Sokka in the past, he didn't worry about these things at all. Thinking of Sokka, his face darkened instantly. If he hadn't been careless and misjudged the pirate's strength, Sokka would not have died. Although afterwards, he killed all the pirates and avenged Sokka, but the friend who grew up together was gone. This made him blame himself for a long time. He patted his face, and his usual self-confidence returned to his face. It is impossible to get back what has passed away. If one is alive, one must always look forward. Only in this way can the dead be prevented from becoming the shackles of climbing to the top. And he will also take Sokka's share to catch up with Sorata. He didn't forget what Sorata said to him when he left. Based on the reports he saw on Sorata in the newspaper, he knew that Sorata was already the pinnacle of the world at this time, and it wouldn't be long before she could truly become the strongest in the world. For this, he is very sure. Looking ahead, Zoro's eyes remained firm, as he had always looked at Sorata and Kuina. Wait for me. Then he turned around, randomly chose a direction that looked pleasing to the eye, stepped forward, and disappeared here after a while. On the other side of the island, a girl with short orange hair wearing a striped t-shirt, orange shorts, and a dagger on her waist was holding a shovel in her hand, digging something in the mud under the cliff. Getting closer, she could hear her whispering as she dug. Strange, the map I got from the pirates is this location. As she spoke, she stood up, took out a piece of crumpled parchment from her pocket, and unfolded it. She looked at the place marked on the parchment, then raised her head to look around, then walked a few steps to the right, then nodded and put away the parchment. This is not wrong, it should be here. Looking at the ground, the light of money shone in her black and white pupils. Then he picked up the shovel, pointed at the ground ahead without hesitation, and started digging. Advertisement, familiar eyes, sober tone, and most importantly, a familiar look. This is not the little fortune cat Nami, who else could it be? Although the devil pirates have been destroyed by Sorata and the others, Nami's longing for money, which seems to be carved into his bones, has not changed at all. After going out to sea, although there was no dragon pirates, the nightmare that weighed on her heart, he was indeed much more lively. But in addition to measuring the sea area and drawing charts, she will still go to the pirate's ship to steal treasure. During this period, she also met her colleague, Karina. But that guy is a liar. The last time they were caught stealing the treasure hunter's vault together, that guy abandoned her without hesitation. This made her angry for a long time. Fortunately, all her pirates went after that guy, allowing her to escape without any danger. Thinking of this, her hand stopped slightly. In fact, she also discovered afterwards that Karina might not be the character she showed, but after that, they never met again, so she wondered why he abandoned her, wearing the treasure, and alone. The matter of escaping has never been understood. Forget it or not, in the next moment, she put Karina behind her. With that guy's shrewdness, it's impossible for anything to happen. Picking up the shovel, she threw herself into the joy of digging for treasure again. After a while, she hugged a locked box out of a pothole in disgrace. From the iron sheet on the box and the rust on the lock, it can be seen that the time that this box was buried in the ground should have exceeded the imagination of many people. Nami, who climbed out of the pothole, sat on the ground, looking at the box in front of him. His face was full of joy. Without the key, she didn't wait any longer, picked up the shovel and smashed it down on the box. With a few bangs, the box shattered. At the moment of shattering, there seemed to be a golden light coming out of the cracks in the box, which made Nami even more excited. Her eyes lit up, and she slammed the shovel hard on the box. Boom, the box instantly fell apart, and the gold coins inside, like celestial maidens scattered flowers, collapsed all over the ground. Get rich, get rich. Looking at the gold coin, Nami's eyes have completely changed into the shape of money. However, what she didn't know was that the pirate ship that she stole the map had also found her boat, and was heading here on the beach under the leadership of the captain. And in that forest, Zoro stood in place, his ears moved, he turned around, looked in the direction of the cliff where Nami was, his eyes lit up. Someone. Chapter 366. Pirates of the New World. For Zoro's fantasy adventure, Sorata they know nothing. I don't know if it's fate or what, but he still met Luffy, formed a team with that guy, and after going to sea again, he met Nami again. Does he have to go to the island where Usopp is next, and then go to Barati, and help Luffy meet the whole crew before East Blue is out? As expected of the deputy captain, after breakfast. Facing the rising sun, Liberty set sail again. This time their destination is Doris Rosa, and the voyage is expected to take 2 days. First day. Boom, the two ships meet, chase and escape. Endless shells flew towards Liberty. The tall man in the captain's hat standing at the stern of the cannonball was looking at the Liberty behind him with fear in his eyes. He turned around and yelled at the crew behind him, "Shoot, shoot all of them until the last shell is fired." He never thought that he was so lucky to meet the silver-haired pirates who had been promoted to legends during this period of time without any territory. FK. Turning his head, looking at Liberty approaching behind him, his heart seemed to be pinched at this moment. It made him short of breath for an instant, especially when he saw the silver-haired figure sitting cross-legged on the windmill through the gap of the splashing seawater. He felt that the surroundings were quiet, and only the deep blue pupils like the starry sky were left in his eyes. The banter revealed in the pupils, as well as the endless pressure, made him feel that at this moment, there was not a deck under his feet, but a vortex, a black vortex. And the depths of that vortex is hell, aboard Liberty. Is this guy stupid? Aluo, who raised his gun, aimed at the camera and saw the middle-aged man stiff at the stern in the distance, with a hint of sarcasm flashing in his eyes. Puff, boom, stupid, what's stupid? Adao jumped up, cut open a cannonball that was about to fall on the Liberty, and landed beside Aluo, looking at Aluo suspiciously. Nothing. Arlo shook his head. Adao took a deep look at Aluo and muttered, what's wrong? Advertisement then turned around and rushed towards another shell. Ignoring Adao, Aluo's eyes were fixed, and he pulled the trigger without hesitation at the middle-aged man standing at the stern in the distance. This is the fourth pirate group they met today. I have to say that the pirates in New World are really different from Paradise. When he was in Paradise, even if a pirate could block his first bullet, he couldn't block his second bullet. Moreover, when the pirates in the Paradise saw them, they would basically rush over without hesitation, as if those guys were not afraid of the sky, the earth, and really were not afraid of death. But when the New World pirates saw them, they turned around and ran away the first time. Self-knowledge is one thing. On the other hand, after a month of fermentation, the news about them in the Sabodi archipelago has already spread to every corner of New World. For them, who had 2 admiral-level powerhouses on board, the pirates, of course, ran away the first time they saw them. After all, their reputation is not good among pirates. Dangerous. The excruciating pain from between the eyebrows and the coldness from the bottom of his heart brought the middle-aged man back to his senses in an instant. Before he had time to think about it, the dark armament hockey instantly covered his head, turning him straight into a black man. Boom, bullet. Looking up at the bullet in front of him, the middle-aged man breathed a sigh of relief. However, in the next instant, the bullet expanded rapidly and exploded while his hairs were standing on end. Boom, the endless fire instantly engulfed him and the stern of the ship. Looking at the fire in the distance, there was a hint of sarcasm in Aluo's eyes. Think this is over? His knowledgeable color can make him feel the breath of life in the fire. So he pulled the trigger without hesitation and fired the second bullet. Then without hesitation, he pulled again, and the third bullet was fired. 2 explosions in succession turned the stern of the distant ship into ruins. Well, not dead yet. At this moment, on the stern of the ship in the distance, a black shadow rushed out of the fire. Soy Ying's whole body was pitch black, and his body suffered from burns, but judging from the aura emanating from his body, there was nothing wrong with it other than skin trauma. Ha ha. Adao stood on the fence, turned her head to look at Aluo, and said with a sneer, can you do it? This is immune to death, if you can't, I will replace it. Roll. Arlo turned around and glared at Adao, then turned around, his body swelled, and instantly turned into an ant-man with tentacles on the top of his head and 2 pairs of arms growing behind him. Many pirates in New World can hockey. Advertisement. Although the hockey of most of the pirates they met was not very deep, the middle-aged man on the front boat was obviously not among them. Judging from his aura, his hockey attainment should be very high, at least higher than the untransformed Arlo. There is no way, Arlo can only transform. After transforming, it can not only enhance his physical fitness, but also increase his hockey volume and compactness. Although his hockey is the bottom of the 3, the transformed hockey can be on par with Awa and Adao. This is another benefit brought by his fruit. Otherwise, he is really not a match for Awa and Adao in the usual competition, even if he is observation hockey. Observation hockey is not a panacea. Although Atao and Ahua have not awakened, but they have combat experience, they can naturally perceive the coming of danger and respond subconsciously. So in close combat, if Adao beats Awa, he will not lose to him who has observation hockey. Aluo lifted the ghost dog again. This time, his aura was obviously stronger than before. Looking at Aluo, Adao pursed her mouth, then turned around, looking at the boat ahead, her eyes were cold. When you meet us, just wait for death obediently. What are you resisting? She's not a beautiful woman. Could it be that the more she resists, the more excited she becomes? Boom, boom, 2 shots rang out. The pitch-black armament hockey, wrapped in a transparent bullet, left a twisted air channel in the air, shooting straight at the middle-aged man. At this moment, the middle-aged man who had just rushed out of the sea of flames suddenly raised his head. He felt that the burns on his body were not in pain at this moment. From the inside to the outside, it seems to be frozen instantly. Danger, ultimate's danger. It was like, when he was still very weak, facing the pirates who attacked their town. That fear filled his heart in an instant, making him forget to hide for a moment. But this is just a momentary pause in thinking. After all, he has been at sea for decades, and even if he is in a life and death crisis, he has experienced no less than dozens of times. So he reacted instantly, and then put armament hockey on the tingling head again. Boom, the piercing pain instantly spread through his forehead through his whole body. Feeling the strength on his forehead and hockey on the bullet, the middle-aged man's heart instantly fell into the abyss. Obviously, this bullet is different from the previous 3. Before he could think about it, the second bullet shot towards his heart. It was too late to mobilize hockey again. New World, although many people know hockey, but not everyone can use hockey to cover the whole body, and not everyone can exercise hockey to do whatever they want. Boom, looking at the middle-aged man who was once again engulfed by the fire, Arlo ruthlessly pulled the trigger again, this time not shooting at the middle-aged man, but the boat. For a middle-aged man, being able to fire 5 shots in a row is already enough to be proud of. After a while, the pirate ship gradually sank into the sea amidst the fire. And Liberty, still heading in the predetermined direction, rides the wind and waves, and keeps moving forward. Chapter 367 Doris Rosa. The next day. I didn't meet any pirates this day. I don't know if it's near Shichibukai, the territory of Doflamingo. I don't see many pirate ships, but there are more and more merchant ships. And these merchant ships, after seeing the Liberty, turned around and ran away like a little white rabbit seeing a beast, and like a pirate. I don't know what they are afraid of, however, only Sorata knew that these merchant ships, despite their appearance as merchant ships, were actually people in the basement. They came to Doris Rosa to buy weapons and drugs. They're all warmongers. And Doflamingo is the king of the dark world, specializing in selling weapons and drugs. This guy in Doris Rosa not only has a man-made devil fruitsal factory, but also a weapons factory that uses sugared childlike fruits to turn people into toys as free labor. And in North Blue, this guy also has a lot of weapons factories. This guy is the well-deserved king of the dark world, not only cooperating with criminal groups in many countries, cooperating with 4 emperors, cooperating with pirates, and cooperating with world government. That's why in the original book, it is stated that as long as this guy falls, the world will be in chaos. But that has nothing to do with Sorata. The world is messed up enough. Evil people, vying for the business after Doflamingo's downfall, created chaos that was only short-lived. It is impossible to let Sorata let him go because of this guy's special status. So who spared Doris Rosa, the countless enslaved people? At the bow of the ship, looking at Doris Rosa who was gradually filling the entire field of vision in front of him, and looking at the increasing number of pirate ships and merchant ships around him, Sorata raised his head and took a sip of wine, with a funny smile on the corner of his mouth. He didn't bother with these pirates. When it comes to New World, he can no longer be as extreme as Paradise. As long as he sees them, he will generally not chase the pirate ships that come to make trouble, turn around and run away. Of course, the very evil pirate group is another matter. That is, Doris Rosa, the top of a tall building in the port. Advertisement: a pirate holding a telescope is inspecting the ships to and from Doris Rosa through the telescope. Although this is the territory of Shichibukai, there are generally no unscrupulous guys who dare to mess around here. But the necessary inspections are still necessary. What if someone big or marine comes? No, when he turned his head, he saw a huge windmill head. At first, he didn't realize it, so he just skipped it. When he remembered what the windmill represented, he turned his head suddenly, and stared out of the port with wide eyes. That's right, silver-haired pirates. The pirate's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly put down the binoculars, took out a phone bug from his pocket, dialed it with trembling hands, and screamed in panic at the phone bug. Silver hair pirates, find the silver hair pirates. The phone bug froze for a moment, then exclaimed, "What did you say?" The pirate took a deep breath, and this time he said in an affirmative tone, "I found the ship of the silver hair pirates at the port. The ship is coming to the port and will land in a short while." Swallowing, the other party didn't hang up the phone, but rushed out of the room directly. The pirate knew what the other party was doing, so he didn't hang up the phone. Turning his head to look outside the port, the Liberty, which could already be seen with the naked eye, the pirate's face was full of dignity. Even though he was under Shichibukai, the guy outside the port killed 2 Shichibukai. After such a long time, Moria's death has long been exposed, and then spread throughout the sea. And just recently, killed the celestial dragons in the Sabodi archipelago. Celestial dragons, those are celestial dragons, who claim to be gods. Although they are ordinary people, they are celestial dragons who stand at the top of the world's power and no one dares to provoke them. But the silver hair is good. If you say kill it, you will kill it. Even if Marine sent the hero Garp and Admiral Kizaru to the Sabodi archipelago afterwards, there is nothing to do with this guy. It's just such a terrifying guy. If he comes to them now, who knows if he will conflict with their family. After all, the silver-haired gang has a bad reputation among pirates, especially evil ones. After this guy went to sea, he killed countless pirates. According to legend, after this guy sees pirates, he will never let them go, just like meeting enemies. Some time ago, there was even a legend that they and their group wiped out a pirate alliance composed of hundreds of pirate groups in the Paradise. Out of tens of thousands of pirates, only a few escaped in the end. Advertisement: brutal, too brutal. For the silver-haired gang who are pirates but are so vicious to pirates, there is no pirate group in New World to welcome them. Among them, their Don Quixote family is the least popular. After all, this guy has already killed 2 Shichibukai. Moreover, some time ago, he also heard that the reason why Pica and Gladius, one of the top cadres of the family who went out to work, did not come back was that they died tragically at the hands of the silver-haired gang. Although the family kept silent and few people talked about this matter, Lord Pica and Lord Gladius had not shown up for more than a month when they were out on business. And they also know that the population auction site on the Sabodi archipelago is where the celestial dragons happened. And this population auction house is their family's property. Moses. At this moment, the voice of the phone bug woke up the pirate. He quickly picked up the phone bug and said loudly, "Master Diamante, this is the port." From the voice, it is clear who is on the other side. Is it really the silver-haired pirates? The serious voice made the pirate turn his head and glance at the open sea again. When he saw the silver-haired figure sitting cross-legged on the head of the Liberty windmill and drinking with his head up, the pirate quickly looked away, not daring to look any further. Yes, Lord Diamante, not only did I see the boat of the silver-haired group, I also saw the silver-haired one just now, and that silver-haired, young face is only him. Click. As soon as he finished speaking, the other party directly hung up the phone. Obviously, the opposite party also realized the seriousness of the matter at this moment, so there was no time for him to say more. The pirate looked at the phone bug that had no sound, and didn't come back to his senses for a long time. Then I didn't know what to think of, and shivered suddenly, and hurriedly put the phone bug in my pocket, and finally took another look at the Liberty, which was already very close to the port. He didn't look at the figure on the bow, he was afraid of being spotted by Silver Hair. Such a strong person is too powerful for him, so that he dare not look directly at him. Withdrawing his gaze, he quickly turned around, rushed down the room, and headed in the opposite direction to the port. He is like an ant, it is better to escape far away. He wouldn't be so stupid as to really go up to seek death. Chapter 368 It's painful no liberty. Sorata put down the wine gourd, looked up at the spire of the empty tall building, and smiled silently. For this pirate, Sorata spotted him the first time he looked at Liberty. Seeing this guy in a hurry, he obviously knew him. And he also saw the way this guy called next time. But he didn't stop it. Here he comes, and as long as Doflamingo is on the island, the guy can't get away. So he didn't care about the tip-off of this ant-like pirate. Even if this guy turned around and ran away after reporting the letter, he didn't care. After all, pirates can never be killed in this world. Elephants, it's impossible to care about ants next to one's feet, is it? Looking back, Sorata lowered her head, looking at the bustling port ahead. An inexplicable cold light flashed in his eyes, prosperous, very prosperous. It is a famous big country in the New World. The Kingdom of Darius Rosa is a very important commercial island in the New World. And here is not only a member country of the world government, but also one of the 20 kingdoms that established the world government 800 years ago. And Don Quixote Doflamingo's family used to be the royal family of the Kingdom of Darius Rosa. Just after creating the world government, the entire Don Quixote family moved to the Holy Land Marijoy and became the Celestial Dragons. This will allow Darius Rosa's throne to fall into the hands of others. After Doflamingo became Shichibukai, he would choose this place as his base in order to regain the kingdom that belonged to their family. It's just that this guy's method of regaining Darius Rosa is a bit too cruel. Looking at the bustling Darius Rosa, in Sorata's eyes, the world is divided into two parts. The upper part is the bustling, unknownly happy, toyland of love and passion. The lower part is an abyss of despair where countless people have been turned into toys and can only work under the ground without any hope. Light and darkness have never been so clearly reflected in Sorata's perception at that moment. It is impossible to pretend the sincere happiness of the civilians living on the island. Advertisement Sorata can feel that they are really happy. But if you study deeply, you will find that under that happiness, there is sorrow deep in the soul. Forget your loved ones, forget everything about your closest relatives, and start another happy life falsely. This power that seemed to cut off time made the entire Darius Rosa live in a false happiness. However, the brilliance of human nature, no matter how suppressed, will retain the deepest rationality. That's why Sorata felt the sadness of despair in the depths of that superficial happiness. It's painful. Whether it is a person who is superficially happy and forgets the person on the island of the closest relative, or a person who is turned into a toy and cannot express any emotions, even if the loved one dies, he cannot shed tears. It must be very painful, Sugar, Doflamingo. Sorata's eyelids drooped, and his blue pupils revealed the murderous intent of a frozen soul. Playing with life so recklessly, playing with hundreds of thousands of people in a country, is simply more devil than a devil. If he hadn't felt the familiar atmosphere on the pier, he couldn't help but teleport directly to the high ground in the middle of the island and deal with Doflamingo directly. However, there is no rush. Getting rid of Doflamingo outright, while enjoyable, doesn't do any good afterwards. Sorata asked Firebird to come to Darius Rosa, just to let them witness the darkness of Darius Rosa for themselves. As long as this place is fully exposed, not only can Darius Rosa be truly saved, but also the world government can be hit. Kill two birds with one stone, and granulated sugar. Sorata no longer intends to let such things as childlike fruits appear on the sea again. After all, this thing is too buggy and too evil. This is not the forgotten fruit of Babada. This thing doesn't seem to have any restrictions. As long as it doesn't lose consciousness, it can turn people into toys infinitely. If left unchecked, this thing can literally, easily destroy any country. Good in the hands of the good, but in the wrong hands it will be another Darius Rosa of the moment. After a while, the Liberty stopped firmly in the port. None of the pirates who didn't open their eyes dared to come over, even those burly men who came off the merchant ship and looked like bad guys were far away from Sorata and others who came off the Liberty. Advertisement, Morgan's. Silver hair. Looking at the front, the small eyes, the whole body of white feathers, the big tail, and the hands in the shape of wings. He was wearing a black top hat with a red Baishang feather on his head, wearing a light blue shirt and a yellow bow tie. Sorata called out the birdman with red plaid trousers and a black cloak on his lower body. Morgans also directly called out Sorata's name. This is our first meeting, you can just call me Sorata. Sorata stretched out her right hand to Morgans and said with a smile, hello. Oh hello. Morgans also extended his right hand and shook Sorata's hand politely. Although he knew a lot about Sorata and knew that Sorata was very young, but when he saw Sorata and Kuina, he was still surprised by Sorata's youth. 17 or 18 years old, the world's top powerhouse. He didn't expect that his joke about Boruto's eyeballs at that time has become true now. Although there are only 8 people in Sorata, there is not a single pirate group in the entire New World who dares to underestimate them. Including 4 emperors. And they call it now, the 5th Emperor of the Sea. If you want to come to the New World at this moment, no one will refute it. And Sorata and the others came to New World, and I believe it will not be too far away from them becoming the real Emperor of New World. It depends on when Sorata will challenge the 4 emperors. Thinking of this, Morgans looked at Sorata with excitement. Hello big brother Silverhair, good day Kuina big sister, big brother Hua, big brother Atao, big brother Aluo. Behind Morgans, in a pink coat, is still the original Flamingo with a coxcomb head, with a camera hanging around his neck. He stepped forward and kept saying hello to Sorata and others. Now, because of Sorata's relationship, he has replaced another senior in the newspaper office, and has completely become Morgans' right-hand man. Sorata let go of Morgans' wings, nodded to the Firebird, and then asked, how long have you been here? It didn't take long, and it was only a few days ago. Morgans laughed. He is the president of the World News Economic Society, and he is very busy every day. How could he not find Sorata, so he came to Darius Rosa and waited. He had spotted Sorata and the others a few days ago, and then he set off here with the Firebird. It's just that they came here one day earlier than Sorata and the others. Chapter 369 The Doll's Secret. Okay. Sorata nodded, looked into the port, and walked in. Let's go. I will trouble you next, and you can shoot now. For Morgans, Sorata actually feels pretty good. In this world dominated by the world government and celestial dragons, there are actually very few people who dare to report the truth. Although this guy is also one of the kings of the dark world, the things he does are not dark. Instead, he often conflicts with the world government in order to report the truth. This guy is a real news guy. Oh, right. At this moment, Sorata suddenly stopped, turned to look at Morgans, and asked, Morgans, do you know the whereabouts of Vegapunk? Vegapunk. Morgans, who was pulling out the camera phone bug from his arms with excitement, paused for a moment, then raised his head to look at Sorata, and asked in doubt, Mr. Sorata, may I ask you, what is the matter with you looking for Vegapunk? Actually, it's nothing. I just want to get a little technology from him. Technology? Morgans bowed his head in thought. He does know where Vegapunk is, but it's a secret inside the world government, which makes him hesitate. How? Sorata looked at Morgans, and said in a slightly indifferent tone, is it difficult? Sensing the inappropriateness of Sorata's tone, Morgans came back to his senses instantly. What about the world government? This guy in front of him is a guy who dares to kill even celestial dragons. Although he didn't think Sorata would kill him, it was impossible to say that he was not afraid in the face of such a powerful person. Don't look at Sorata greeting him with a smile, just think that Sorata is easy to get along with. The pirates he sunk all the way can fill this port. So Morgans raised his head and quickly replied, I do know the whereabouts of Vegapunk, he is on Eggpoint Island. Eggpoint Island? Okay. Morgans nodded, opened his mouth and said, apart from world government and marine, I may be the only one who knows where he is. After all, although he hides well, it is impossible not to buy newspapers if you want to pay attention to the situation in the sea. Having said that, he raised his head confidently, and continued, as long as you buy a newspaper, you won't be able to escape my eyes. Advertisement, after Vegapunk left Punk Hazard a year ago, he was sent to Eggpoint Island by the Marine and World Government. Oh, now that you know, you must have a chart to go to Danjian Island. Sorata's tone returned to gentleness, which made Morgans feel relieved. He nodded, took out a map from his pocket, and handed it to Sorata. This is the map drawn by our World Economic News Agency, not to mention all the islands of New World, but most of the islands can be found on it. Sorata took the map, unfolded it for a look, and put it away. This is a good thing. The map drawn on it is much more detailed than the public map in his hand. Thanks. Sorata thanked Morgans, then turned and walked towards the street ahead. The moment they set foot on the street, Sorata and others were attracted by the countless lively sounds on the street. The streets are filled with the fragrance of flowers, young men and women can be seen everywhere kissing in the corners of the street without any scruples, and there are many beautiful dancers in hot long skirts. Of course, dolls are also indispensable, dolls holding weapons and patrolling to maintain order. These dolls. Kuina looked at the puppet soldiers passing by, with a flash of curiosity in her eyes. She tilted her head to Sorata and asked, why does it feel like it has life? Is it the ability of Devil Fruit? It's amazing. It is indeed Devil Fruit's ability, but it may not match your imagination. Looking at the doll, Sorata's eyes flashed an inexplicable look. Doesn't match? Sorata nodded. Seeing that there was no change because of their arrival, the street said in a deep voice, these dolls do have life, because they are all living people. What? Everyone was shocked, and looked at the countless dolls on the street again, their eyes filled with horror. Behind everyone, Morgans was also surprised. He came a day before Sorata and the others, and of course he knew about Darius Rosa's doll. But I never thought that these dolls are actually real people. Big news, big news, big news. The sharp sense of smell made him and Huonayo look at each other, and they both saw excitement in each other's eyes. No wonder Sorata had them here. Advertisement. It turns out that there is a big secret hidden here. As far as they know, there are tens of thousands of toys in the entire Doris Rosa. What about in the dark? And behind all this, how huge darkness will there be? They never thought of Sorata lying, because with Sorata's current strength, it is impossible to lie, let alone deceive them. Morgan certainly knew who Doris Rosa belonged to and what Doflamingo was for. But he didn't expect that these thousands of dolls were actually real people. And looking at the bustling streets, so many people disappeared without any impact. Behind this, there must be a big secret hidden. What could it be? Raising the camera, they took a burst of snaps at the street. How happy it is now, how dark it will be later. Withdrawing her gaze, Kuina turned her head to look at Sorata, waiting for Sorata's further answer. Sorata stretched out his hand and rubbed Kuina's head, then tilted his head and swept over the three of Ahua and Indigo, and then said, "Do you still remember Buzzbada?" "Remember." Everyone nodded. How could they not remember the first island they entered the Grand Line, the first country they gave their flag to? As if thinking of something, Kuina said in a deep voice, "Did these dolls have the same fruit ability as Bada's forgotten fruit?" "Okay." Sorata nodded, turned her head to look at the high ground in the middle of the island, and said, "Paramisha childlike fruit. Children's fun fruit." Morgans put down the camera, as if thinking of something, looked at the dolls on the street again, his eyes full of surprise. "It seems that you know this fruit." Hearing Morgan's voice, everyone turned their heads to look at him. Morgans withdrew his gaze, glanced at Sorata, and then explained to everyone, "I do know. The childlike fruit can turn the person it touches into a toy that the ability user wants, and the type and style of the toy is completely determined by the ability user's preference. And the size of the toy object is proportional to its original height before it was turned into a toy, and people who have a relationship with the toy object, such as relatives or friends, will lose their relationship with the toy object. All memories of the person you've been with." Chapter 370. Hey, looks like we're moving again. All memories. After hearing what Morgan said, everyone looked at the dolls on the street again, their eyes were completely different. "That's not all." Just then, Sorata spoke, "Not only that? It's all like this, what else can it do?" Sorata withdrew her gaze from the central highland, lowered her head to the ground, her gaze seemed to have penetrated the deep rock formations on the ground, and landed on the countless weapon production factories that used toys as labor. Although these dolls have been turned into dolls, they will not lose their language ability and independent thinking. But because they have disappeared from historical time, even if they appear in front of relatives or friends, they will be regarded as crazy toys. Having said that, he paused slightly, raised his head again, looked at the patrol dolls on the street, and said in a deep voice, "The moment they turned into toys, their bodies have been controlled by the ability user of Tongshu fruit, and signed the contract. First, don't hurt humans. Second, work for the Don Quixote family or fight to the death. No matter how unwilling they are, even if their relatives die, no matter how much they resist in their hearts, they cannot violate these 2 points." This, after hearing Sorata's words, everyone fell silent. Is this the secret of Doris Rosa, Shichibukai Doflamingo? It's really, really, scary. Morgans didn't think much, he had seen a lot of darkness in his life, and it was not that he had never seen anything darker than this. So after a short period of contemplation, his gaze also turned to the ground. He saw Sorata's actions just now. With a strong person like Sorata, he will not look at the ground for no reason. Thinking of Doflamingo's weapons factory that has never surfaced, a hint of understanding appeared in his eyes. It turned out to be underground, and since there are Tongshu fruits, the laborers who come to produce weapons should be the people who were turned into dolls by Tongshu fruits. These people who are turned into toys will not feel pain even if their limbs are torn off by external force, and they can tirelessly produce weapons indefinitely. It is simply a capitalist, the favorite laborer. Thinking of this, he already knew what Sorata asked them to come here for. Exposing this place will destroy the majesty of the world government. With the strength shown by Sorata and others, it will not take too much trouble to defeat the Don Quixote family, but it really only needs their World Economic News Agency to spread the things here. Hey, looks like we're going to move again. Advertisement. He sighed in his heart, but Morgan's face was full of excitement. Nothing can compare to big news that shocks the world, even if it offends the world government. He doesn't have a good reputation with the world government anyway. As for moving, isn't that already a habit? Just when Sorata and the others first landed in Doris Rosa. Center Heights. In the original palace castle, any news about Monet? In front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, Doflamingo, who was wearing a white shirt, patterned cropped pants, pointed leather shoes, and a pink feather coat with his chest open and his 8-pack abs, was leaning on the sofa with a gloomy face. In front of him, a pirate kneeling on the ground trembled after hearing what Doflamingo said. The pirate didn't dare to look up at Doflamingo, he bent down even lower, almost lying on the ground, and replied, "No news yet." Don't look at Doflamingo's opponents calling them family members, just think that he will be very good to his opponents. Doflamingo is indeed good at his opponents, but that is only limited to the cadres in the family, and the minions under the cadres, in Doflamingo's heart, are nothing but cannon fodder that can be discarded at any time. And although he is also a member of the family, he does not get the treatment of a cadre. It's quite clear that Doflamingo's cruelty. Okay, let's go. At this moment, on the sofa on the right, wearing a pair of small sunglasses, with a half nose hanging, Bangs on the top, glue like hanging hair on the bottom, bare feet, shackles on the feet, and shaven upper lip, and sparse teeth. The uncle said calmly. Yes, Lord Torbull. The pirate kneeling on the ground kowtowed his head on the ground, slowly moved back a few steps, then stood up, and quickly walked out of the room. Every time he came here with good news, he was in a happy mood. However, if the news is bad, he has only been in office for a few months. Anyway, his predecessor's predecessor. He heard that they all came here and never went back. But this time, the news he brought must be bad news, that's why he was so scared. The pirate went out and closed the door behind him. In the room at this time, there was an instant silence. Advertisement except, besides sitting on the sofa on the left, wearing a moderate dotted dress, wearing a unilateral glasses on the left eye, and having a small cut, he kept inserting purple grapes from the basket in his arms and feeding them into his mouth. Girl chewing. I didn't care about the little girl. Torbull tapped the ground with the palm of the plum blossom symbol in his hand, turned his head to look at Doflamingo in the middle, and said, Dover, why don't you call Virgo and ask, he happens to be in that sea area. Monet has been away for 4 days, and it stands to reason that he should have called back 2 days ago. And in the past 2 days, no matter whether it is Monet or Guy, there is no news at all. This gave Doflamingo a bad feeling in his heart, but with the strength of Monet and Guy, even if something happens, it's impossible for no news to come out. And Guy's character is clear to him, if it really comes to a life and death crisis, he can't hide it, and he has already told who is behind him. At New World, he doesn't believe anyone can ignore him as a Shichibukai and 4 emperors. If there is, it can only be Marine, and if it was Marine who acted, it was impossible for Virgo not to inform him. But now 2 days have passed, Monet and Guy seem to have disappeared, and there is no news at all. Thinking of this, Doflamingo straightened up, took the phone bug on the coffee table in front of him, dialed a number, and called. After a while, the phone went through, but the voice on the phone made the atmosphere in the room drop to freezing point in an instant. Doflamingo. Hearing the voice, he knew it was not Virgo, and only Virgo knew about this call. So, no need to think about it, Virgo has been exposed. As for who is on the other end of the phone. Don't even think about it, click. Doflamingo didn't speak, just hung up the phone. Then he stood up with a gloomy face. Dover, what are you doing? Of course Torbull knew what Doflamingo was up to, but he couldn't resist standing up. No one knows better than him how important Guy is to Doflamingo. That was the link between their family and the 4 emperors' business. If Guy throws a problem, then they won't be able to get what Kaido wants. Thinking of this, his face was already covered with profuse sweat. Chapter 371 The Pressure from Sorata. Just when the room was particularly depressed because of the influence of Doflamingo's emotions. Squeak. The door was suddenly pushed open from the outside. Dover, something happened. The person who came was dressed in a red cloak, dressed like an aboriginal tribe, with a fur-brimmed hat on his head, and 2 red stripes on his face, extending from above the eyes to his chin. He is one of the top cadres of the Don Quixote family, code-named Block, who leads the Don Quixote family's fighting group. Diamante, the person with the ability to fly fruit, and the bannerman. Diamante rushed into the room, instantly breaking the oppression in the room. Something happened. What happened? Before Doflamingo could speak, Torbull, who was also the top cadre, looked at Diamante and asked doubtfully. Silver-hair pirates, Silver-hair Sorata is here. There is no nonsense, Diamante replied directly with a serious face. Silver-hair. As if the name had some magical power, the room fell silent instantly, even the sugar who had been eating grapes, whose appearance was only 10 years old but whose real age was over 20 years old, stopped moving. How could this guy come here? Doflamingo stared at Diamante in disbelief. I don't know either, Diamante replied in a deep voice, since I received the news, they should have already landed. Having said that, he looked up at Doflamingo and said solemnly, Dover, what should we do next? Although we don't know why the silver-haired pirates came here, we all know the character of the silver-haired guy. If he discovers the darkness hidden on the island, that guy will definitely come to us. He didn't say anything depressing, but from his anxious expression, one could tell that his heart was not at peace at the moment. If it was a few months ago, even if Silverhair killed Golden Lion, was able to fight Admiral, and killed 2 Shichibukai, they wouldn't be so afraid of Silverhair and his gang. But since word of the Saboti archipelago spread, there's no one in the world who can't take the silver-haired gang for granted. And the Saboti archipelago incident, their family is not a fringe spectator, but personally involved in it. Advertisement where celestial dragons died was the family's auction house. Outsiders don't know, but the people in the room are all high-ranking members of the Don Quixote family. Of course they know that one of the top cadres of their family, Pika, and another cadre, Gladius, also died in the auction house a month ago. They went to see it afterwards, and judging from the wound, it was beheaded by someone. Even so, even if they knew who the enemy was, they would not dare to settle accounts with Yinfa and his gang. I can only bury it in my heart and grieve alone. After all, in this world, the strong are respected. Now, the man who killed their family, who hates pirates, especially evil pirates, has come to their territory. But here, there is darkness that shocked the world. How to do? Even if they follow Doflamingo, who have always regarded Doflamingo as their king, at this moment, facing the few people they haven't met yet, who are comparable to the silver-haired gang of 4 Emperor's pirates, their hearts are instantly terrified. Doflamingo, who had been sullen since Diamante came in, spoke at this moment. Foo 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 foo. He laughed out loud, full of madness. So it's this guy. Diamante doesn't know what Doflamingo is talking about. But Tory Bill knew, because they were still discussing just now. Thinking of this, there was a hint of understanding in his eyes. If there is anyone in this world who is not afraid of Shichibukai and 4 emperors, except for Marine and other 4 emperors, it is only the silver-haired gang. Judging from the time when the silver-haired group came to Doris Rosa, it happened to be the time when Monet returned from the boat. At this moment, Diamante also wanted to understand the reason, and of course, his face became more serious and gloomy. Since the disappearance of Monet and Geisa had something to do with the silver-haired gang, it is not difficult to guess that they came here. They couldn't be passing by, but they came here specifically to find them. Thinking of this, his heart slowed down by half a beat. Advertisement. It's not that he underestimates himself. Although their family is powerful, besides the 4 emperors behind Dover, it's because of his original identity in the world government. But all of this, in the face of not taking the celestial dragons seriously and killing them, after the heroes Garp and Admiral Kizaru went to Sabodi Archipelago, they were safe and sound, and calmly left the eyes of the silver-haired gang of Sabodi Archipelago. It's like shit, it's nothing. Diamante pondered for a moment, then raised her head abruptly, looked at Doflamingo, and said solemnly, Dover, now is not the time to act impulsively. Since Silverhair is here to look for us, I think we'd better get out of here first. As the king of the underground world, Shichibukai, backed by the 4 emperors and world government, their Don Quixote family, to be honest, there is really no such unsightly pirate who dares to trouble them. But for the silver-haired group, they knew in their hearts that if they didn't leave, they wouldn't be able to leave. That guy doesn't care about any power, he kills pirates, but he never holds back, killing them all. It's useless. Now that Doflamingo has calmed down, he sits back on the couch with his legs bent, before leaning forward with his legs spread apart, his hands crossed, his chin on the back of his hands, and his arms resting on his legs. With a gloomy face, he said, since that guy came to the island, we can't leave. In this world, only the 4 emperors can escape from the hands of the 2 admirals. What's more, that guy with silver hair. His knowledge can cover half of Doris Rosa, let alone silver hair. That's why he said that since silver hair came to the island, it was impossible for them to leave. And that guy is different from ordinary strong men. Although the newspaper did not clearly state what kind of ability silver hair has, he is not an ordinary person. He has long known from the world government and Virgo about the ability of that guy with silver hair. If it was anyone else, even the 4 emperors, he was sure to leave. But the silver hair, he knew, that guy didn't want him to go, even if he left everything about Doris Rosa, he couldn't go if he wanted to. Then what to do? After listening to Doflamingo's words, Diamante and Torpal seemed to have thought of something, and a trace of panic appeared on their faces at the same time. They also thought of Silverhair's abilities. After all, it was the top cadre of the Don Quixote family, the 2 of them, the dead Pica, and the missing Virgo, who pulled Doflamingo up from the endless hell and pushed him to the throne. So in the family, only they dared to call Doflamingo, Dover. And Doflamingo will not hide any big or small matters in the family from them. They even knew that Doflamingo was a celestial dragon from the very beginning. Chapter 372. How to do. Doflamingo lowered his head, and because his back was facing the window, his entire face looked extraordinarily gloomy due to the alternation of light and dark. How to do? How did he know what to do? It's useless to sit here and think. Raising his head, Doflamingo stared at Diamante, with a flicker of madness in his eyes, and said with a smile. Foo 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 foo. Gather your men, since that guy is here to look for us, he will come here sooner or later. If he wants to fight, then fight with him. If they want to eat us, then they don't want to feel better. Maybe it's Doflamingo's laugh, and hockey on display, that gives him confidence. Let Diamante also gradually relax. He nodded to Doflamingo and said, okay, I'll go down and gather my men. After speaking, he turned around and walked out of the room quickly. Now is not the time to delay. The whole island belongs to their Don Quixote family, and the island is full of their family. Although the strength has reached the level of silver-haired, the number of people in front of him is useless, but the silver-haired pirates are not only silver-haired, there are other people. Looking at Diamante's back, Doflamingo's eyes showed ultimate madness. Boom, there was the sound of closing the door. In the room, it became the same as it was when Diamante didn't come, but this time, it was much more depressing than before. Looking at Doflamingo, even if he joined the family, he was in the family like a princess, and beside him was the sugar who was always protected by the top cadre Torbull. At this moment, he dared not speak easily, let alone eat grapes. Dover. At this moment, Torbull spoke. With a runny nose, he opened his big mouth full of gaps and said seriously, since Guy may be in the hands of Silverhair, should we call Kaido and Big O? Let them send people to support us. Big O doesn't know, but Kaido definitely can't let Guy do nothing. At this point, a trace of madness flashed across his face, and he continued, given the importance Kaido attaches to man-made devil fruit, maybe that guy will come here in person. Doflamingo nodded, raised his head, and stared at the phone bug on the coffee table. Torbull's idea was, in fact, his idea. Let him face the silver-haired and the blue-haired 2 alone, that is courting death, even if he uses the birdcage that no one can break, and drags the whole Doris Rosa to be buried with him, he cannot be the opponent of the silver-haired 2. Advertisement only at his level did he know the gap between them and the world's top powerhouses. That is not courage, the distance that man can catch up with, let alone the gap that the number of people can bridge. So from the moment he knew the silver hair came to Rosa, he has been thinking about how to break the game. After thinking about it, the only thing he can rely on now is the devil fruit factory in his hand, and Guy saw. If Kaido wants to create a real beast's pirates, he cannot do without him and Gaisa. As for the Big O pirates, although Charlotte Linlin also attaches great importance to Guy, she can't quench her thirst far away. If she wants to come to Rosa from the Toto Land Kingdom, Guo, she can't come here in a short time. But you can still give her a call to spread a wave of hatred for the silver-haired guy. As for Kaido, he knew that with Kaido's ability, he could really come to Rosa from the second half of New World in a short time. Because that guy can fly. Others may not know what Kaido's fruit ability is, but he does. As long as Kaido wants to come, he will definitely be able to come here for a short time. As long as Kaido comes, the silver-haired guy will face Kaido, and he just needs to hold back the blue hair and wait for the follow-up support from the Big O pirates and Kaido's Beasts pirates. And as long as the four emperors move, Marine will also move. With the level of world government's fear of silver hair, seeing Shichibukai plus 4 emperors pirates, maybe they will order Marine to join hands with silver hair. No, it's not that maybe, it will be. Thinking of this, the madness in Doflamingo's eyes seemed to condense into substance, forming 2 dazzling red lights. Without hesitation, he directly took the phone bug and dialed it. And the only way to do this is for Kaido to come to Rosa, and he must hold the silver-haired gang before Kaido arrives at Rosa. After all, in the second half of New World, Rosa is still a bit far away. Although it is flying in the sky, it takes time anyway, doesn't it? Fortunately, after the silver-haired group came to the island, they wandered around the island instead of going straight to the palace heights. When Diamante came in and told him that the silver-haired pirates had come to Rosa, he scanned the port with his knowledge and found the silver-haired pirates. That's why he didn't escape. Although there was no trace of Gaisa on Silverhair's boat, when he peeped at Silverhair, he felt a vague crisis lingering in his heart. Advertisement. He knew that when he spied on the silver-haired gang, the silver-haired was also peeping on him. As long as he makes the movement to escape, maybe that guy will appear in his room instantly. That's a damn long delay. If you don't want me to have a good time, then you all go to die. The shocking battle of 4 emperors, Shichibukai, Marine, and the silver-hair pirates made him tremble just thinking about it. Not scared, but excited. Hey, who is it? After a while, the call was connected. Although there was only one voice, the incomparable sense of oppression made the people in the room, as if through a phone bug, see the monster figure sitting on the throne with a figure so huge that it occupied the entire line of sight. Kaido, I'm Doflamingo. So it's Dover. At this time, the voice in the phone bug turned relaxed. Is there something wrong? Has the first artificial devil fruit been completed? Worororo. It should be very good to be able to hear Kaido's mood at this time from the voice. No, staring at the phone bug, Doflamingo said directly, something is wrong and I need your help. After Doflamingo finished speaking, the laughter on the other side of the phone bug stopped abruptly. At this moment, even Doflamingo raised his heart. After waiting for a while, Kaido said, what's the matter? Guy Saw was caught by a group of pirates, and that group of pirates is now in Rosa. I need your help. Pirates? He didn't react for a while, and after waiting for a while, Kaido asked again. What pirate makes you helpless and wants to find me? Although Doflamingo was nothing in his eyes, he was still a big pirate, and he couldn't be compared with him, but he was also the most peak pirate in the sea besides their level. What kind of pirate is that to make Doflamingo come to beg him? The silver hair pirates. Doflamingo didn't make a fool of himself either. Now that time was running out, he just said it. Chapter 373 The Actions of the 4 Emperors and the World Government. 5 words. Say 5 words at once. As if there was some magical power, the room was instantly quiet. Even on the opposite side of the phone bug, the 3 of Doflamingo could feel Kaido's breathing speeding up at this time. Worororo. After a while, Kaido's loud laughter broke the silence in the room. After laughing for a while, he stopped laughing, and then said, it turned out to be that little devil. I also said that I was waiting for him in Wano-kuni, but I didn't expect this little devil come on me now. Yes, in his opinion, arresting Gaisa and going to Rosa is to trouble him. With Gaisa's character, it is impossible not to tell Silverhair that he is behind the 4 emperors, but even so, he still caught Gaisa and went to Rosa. Isn't this making trouble for him? Man-made devil fruit, after all, is the most important cornerstone of his real beast's pirate's ambition. If this is broken, then his beast's pirates are somewhat misnamed. After all, even though devil fruit is a 4 emperors, it is actually very difficult to collect it. Unlike Guy, it can be mass-produced. Thinking of Guy, Kaido's tone became serious. Since that kid wants to die, let him die, and I'll come over later. After speaking, he hung up the phone. If it was an ordinary pirate, he wouldn't go there at all, but it was Silverhair equal to the hero Garp, enough for him to do it himself. And the first time he heard this guy's name, he became very interested in Silverhair. After all, strictly speaking, Golden Lion Shiki is still his senior. Of course he knows how powerful Shiki is. Although Golden Lion is old, not everyone can kill him. And being able to draw with the real hockey powerhouse Garp will arouse his interest even more. It's better to come early than to come early. I happened to go to Rosa to see for myself whether the silver-haired guy was really as powerful as the legend said. Thinking of this, he lifted the wine gourd next to him, raised his head and took a sip, then stood up from the ground with his huge body. Amidst the bang-bang, he picked up the huge mace at the side and walked out of the room. He did not immediately go to Darius Rosa. Instead, he found Jin, and asked Jin to lead his men to Darius Rosa for support. Then he turned into a giant dragon, stirred up the situation, and rushed towards Darius Rosa. He is not stupid, on the contrary, he is very smart. Ordinary pirates, he went alone, even if it was Marine, he didn't hesitate. But the Silver Hair Pirates are different. That is a pirate group with 2 admiral ranks. Advertisement. What's more, the wound on his chest that still hurts from time to time reminds him all the time that he can make a fuss at will when facing other people, but it's better to be careful when facing the great swordsman. That's the guy who could really hurt him, although I don't know if the silver-haired and blue-haired swordsman can be as powerful as Kazuki Oden, Your Highness the Fool, but since they can be called great swordsmen, even if they are worse than Kazuki Oden, it is impossible to be so bad. Therefore, letting Jin go to pick him up was also the right thing to do. After all, the time he spent fighting with Silver Hair certainly couldn't be short, and he might even lure Marine over. No, it's not that maybe, but Marine will definitely come. He doesn't want to go to the Marine right now and get blood drawn again by that Vegapunk guy. After all, he is now the 4 emperors, so he still needs some face. Darius Rosa heard Kaido's accurate answer. Doflamingo breathed a sigh of relief, his body completely relaxed. If the first step is successful, it means that this crisis will turn into the shocking battle he expected. Chaos, chaos, the more chaos the better, he then called the Big O Pirates. It's different from what he expected. His idea was that the Big O Pirates would send 4 generals over, but what he didn't expect was that the monster Charlotte Linlin would actually come over in person. It can't be because of Guy. Although Geisa is very important, in Charlotte Linlin's heart, it is definitely not to the point where she can come to Darius Rosa especially for Geisa, and fight to the death with the silver-haired gang. Putting down the phone, Doflamingo rubbed his chin, thought for a while, then seemed to think of something, his eyes lit up. It's for the guy with silver hair. There have long been rumors that the silver-haired guy is of a special race. Although he didn't know where the rumors came from, there were only a few peak forces in this world. The only conflicts with the silver-haired gang are Marine and world government. And the only thing that can make this rumor spread across the sea in a short time is the world government. As for why the world government released this rumor, it is not difficult to guess, it must be to bring hatred to Yinfa. With Charlotte Linlin's monster's obsession with special races, as long as she has definite news about the silver-haired gang, she will come here by herself without being provoked by others. After figuring out the reason, Doflamingo completely relaxed. 4 emperors. No, it would be wonderful to add Marine and world government. Thinking of this, he made another phone call to world government. Call Marine, afraid of silver hair and the strength of the 4 emperors, although Marine will send Admiral over, but not necessarily do it. Advertisement. They usually watch the excitement from the sidelines, disperse the crowd, and wait for them to fight almost, maybe they will make a move. But call the world government, and with the order of the world government, Marine will definitely do it. Based on his knowledge of the world government will not let go of this opportunity to get rid of silver hair. Thinking of this, he became even more relaxed. Silver hair, let me see how you die this time. Since you dare to trouble me, then go to hell, foo 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 foo. His laughter completely blew away the depression in the room, and completely relaxed Torbol and Granos, who were watching all this, with smiles on their faces again. They don't believe that anyone in this world can survive from the hands of the 4 emperors, plus the possible admiral. So as long as Kaido agrees to come over, the crisis of their family's possible extinction will be completely resolved. World government. Sanctuary Marijoy. After knowing Doflamingo's plan, 5 elders agreed after thinking about it. They didn't know the result of the last battle between Lord I.M. and Silver Hair, and they hadn't seen Lord I.M. since the monstrous crack across the red line a month ago. If they hadn't known that Tianlong would arrive at the Holy Land unscathed, they would have thought Lord I.M. defeated. And Lord I.M. came back and didn't say anything to them. Apparently, I.M. and UNFA have come to an agreement. It's just that at the level of Lord I.M., there's no need to explain it to them. Now that Doflamingo has made this plan, it has been confirmed that Kaido will leave Wano Kuni and head for Darius Rosa. Then they can send Marine there too. Silver Hair fights with Kaido and Charlotte Linlin. No matter who wins or loses, it is the victory of world government and Marine. Therefore, after 5 elders received Doflamingo's call, they did not let Marine and Kaido join forces to kill Silver Hair as Doflamingo expected. Because they know it's impossible. No one knows the horror of Silver Hair better than them. It is an existence that even Mr. Yimu has not been able to kill. So the order they gave Marine was to watch a play. That's right, just watching a play. Of course, if both sides suffer, they will all be killed. But this is just their fantasy. In their thinking, even if Kaido and Charlotte Linlin join forces, as long as Silver Hair can show the power that makes Mr. I.M. helpless, he can't be defeated. The losing side, by a large percentage, should be Kaido and Charlotte Linlin. Chapter 374. Looking forward to. Restaurant. After Sorata and the others went to the island, they were not in a hurry to find trouble with Doflamingo. Instead, go shopping, eat, and play. After all, Darius Rosa, although under Doflamingo's rule, has always been accompanied by unknown darkness. But at least on the bright side, this place is really prosperous. It was the most prosperous country they had ever seen after leaving Sabodi Archipelago. They are in a restaurant now. There were 8 people in their team, plus Morgans and Firebird. They just sat at a big round table. At this time, the big round table is full of special delicacies from the kingdom of Darius Rosa. While admiring the sexy dance of the beautiful dancers in the hall and on the stage, everyone slowly savored the delicious food on the table. At this moment, Kuina, who had been resting her head on her hands, with electric arcs and red lights flashing in her eyes, suddenly raised her head and looked at Sorata. Sorata also tacitly withdrew her gaze from the stage, and turned her head to look at Kuina. He smiled slightly and asked directly, "What did you hear?" When Doflamingo swept towards him with knowledge, his knowledge also swept towards him, with his murderous intent in it, letting that guy know that he came here this time to find him. And as Doflamingo, he should also know that no one in this world can escape from him, so he played with ease, not worried about that guy escaping. In doing so, he also wanted to know, what would this guy do in such a desperate situation? And Kuina, after entering the hotel, has been listening to Doflamingo's phone with electromagnetic waves. That's why he asked her, what did she hear? Kuina looked at Sorata, the arc and red light in her eyes gradually disappeared, the corners of her mouth were raised slightly, her tone was slightly dignified, and she said excitedly, 4 emperors, 100 beasts Kaido. Okay. Sorata nodded, as expected. Given how much Kaido attaches importance to Guy, it makes sense to go there in person. Anything else? He continued. As Doflamingo Celestial Dragons, there should be world government. Although the world government may not necessarily send people over, after all, although the people at the bottom don't know about IM, the 5 elders must know about it. Even IM can't do anything to him, as long as the world government doesn't have a bag on his head, the 5 elders won't send people over to seek death. Advertisement not necessarily, after all, 5 elders has not personally seen the scene of him confronting Tianlong. Although he knows that he is very strong, he does not know how strong he is. This time there is 4 emperors Kaido, maybe they will have a hot head, send someone over, join hands with Kaido, and get rid of him together. Of course, this is just his idea. 4 emperors, Big O pirates, Charlotte Linlin. Speaking of Charlotte Linlin, Kuina's cold eyes burst out with monstrous fighting spirit. Although her goal is the world's strongest female swordsman, how could she not be excited about Charlotte Linlin, the world's strongest among women? With her current strength, although she may not be able to beat Charlotte Linlin will not be able to easily defeat her. And fighting this kind of monster can also make her stronger. So after hearing the call between Doflamingo and Charlotte Linlin, her heart was always in a state of excitement. Linlin? Sorata froze for a moment, seeing the excitement in Kuina's eyes, he smiled. Of course he knew what Kuina was thinking. If we say that in this world, the pinnacle of men is One Piece, and the pinnacle of women is Charlotte Linlin, one of the 4 emperors. Charlotte Linlin, a real monster. I've been a monster since I was a kid. He has never practiced seriously, and he can reach the top of the world just by virtue of his physical fitness. When she was young, she was a member of the Rocks Pirates. After the Rocks Pirates were defeated and disbanded, she gradually became one of the 4 emperors of New World through continuous power development. Constantly trying to have children, 39 daughters, 46 sons, 43 husbands, all abandoned. Gradually, she became the center, with his son and daughter as the generals and cadres, the 4 emperors of New World, the queen of the Toto Land Kingdom, and the Big O Pirates. Therefore, his children and subordinates all call her Mother. His mother is a real mother, and Whitebeard can be different. Although the Whitebeard pirate group is also a father-son relationship, the people in the Whitebeard pirate group are all the godsons recognized by Whitebeard, not their biological sons. How should I say it? Charlotte Linlin, if she hadn't been adopted by a nun and didn't have cravings, she might have grown up to be a very righteous person. But there are no ifs in this world. No matter how righteous her ideal is, it cannot change the fact that she is a very evil pirate. Advertisement, although her utopian ideals are just. But what she did was very evil. Because all citizens living in Wangguo have to pay 1 month of life every 6 months as a fee for Big O protection, or they have to leave. However, anyone who tried to leave was sentenced to death. So, in the final analysis, as long as you live in all nations, your life is no longer your own. And this kind of darkness makes the world look prosperous, but in fact it has long been rotten from the bottom. Since Kuina wants to fight Charlotte Linlin, Sorata won't say anything? There are only so many strong people in this world. Now the only ones who can play against Kuina are 4 emperors and admiral. Here Sorata and Kuina talking, the 3 of Awa looked indifferent. Indigo and Robin showed a little interest. Brooke, like Morgans and Firebird, had bright eyes and a face full of excitement. No matter what mood everyone was in, no one showed fear or fear. The partners have fully realized the power of Sorata after experiencing the Kokurudo incident. And there is also the heaven-defying Menman fruit necklace, even the explosion that destroyed the entire Kekeleduo can leave them unscathed. Although the 4 emperors are very powerful, no matter how powerful they are, it is impossible for them to be as powerful as the flying dragon that can destroy a country with a population of hundreds of thousands in one blow. So even if they heard that 4 emperors were coming, they would not have any fear. On the contrary, their hearts are still full of expectations. As for Morgans and Firebird, they are simple journalists. They can only be excited about the upcoming shocking battle that is destined to be engraved in history, so how can they be afraid? Looking at the calm Sorata, Morgans happily raised the wine bottle in front of him, and took a big gulp with his head raised. He didn't say anything, didn't ask anything, although he doesn't know if Sorata can beat the 4 emperors. It is impossible for Sorata, who can draw with Garp, even if it is the 4 emperors, to beat it. How lucky. This shocking battle will again be the exclusive report of their World Economic News Agency. Thinking of this, he cast a good look at Firebird. Under Morgan's gaze, Firebird puffed up his chest, with even more smiles on his face. Chapter 375 The Girl in Armor and the One-Legged Soldier Toy. After eating, Sorata and others went to the very famous bullfighting arena in Doris Rosa, that is, the arena. The bullfighting arena under the sun seems to be rendered with a layer of golden light. When you see it from afar, you seem to be able to hear the battles and fights of warriors in this historic open-air venue. It's a pity that after getting closer, I realized that there is no program today. The door was closed tightly and no one was inside. But Sorata came here, not to watch the weak fight, but to. Walking through the corner of the arena that was eroded by the years and rubbed off by countless pedestrians, it became bright, and there was a tall statue standing in front of it. The appearance of the statue is that of a majestic man wearing a helmet in the style of an ancient Roman soldier. The man withdrew his hand and held the sword in front of him, staring at the front with a serious face. In front of that statue, there are 2 people. A one-legged soldier doll with one leg missing, just like the little tin soldier in Andersen's fairy tale world. The other one is a 13 or 14-year-old girl who looks like a statue, wearing a helmet in the style of an ancient Roman soldier, golden armor, and golden shoes. The little girl has long pink hair, which should be braided behind her back for the convenience of fighting. She wears a dark green cloak behind her, and a 2-handed sword hangs on her waist. At this moment, the 2 of them felt the arrival of Sorata and others at the same time. They turned around and looked up at Sorata, and immediately met Sorata's blue pupils as deep as a starry sky. Both of them were startled. At this moment, in their eyes, the blue pupils grew infinitely larger, as if they had turned into a real starry sky, instantly filling their entire field of vision. Let their vision gradually blur, leaving only this pair of deep and charming pupils in their eyes. At this moment, the owner of the pupils blinked for a moment, making their eyes go black, and then recovered quickly, only then broke free from such abnormality. As his body became more and more mature, his eyes were no longer the same as before, they could only be used to observe space nodes. Now his pupils, even if he didn't control them, as long as ordinary people stare at his eyes for a long time, they will have a strange feeling that their souls are pulled into a different space. He knew this ability, but he couldn't control it. When he stared at Virgo in Punk Hazard last time, he took the initiative to stare, but it only made Virgo slightly stunned, and it had no effect. Advertisement. I don't know if his pupils can become a kind of magical power in the future. If it turns into a supernatural power, then his one look can pull people's souls into the weird space in his eyes. Just thinking about it makes him feel terrible. But that's all for the future. What we have to do now is the 2 people in front of us. Sorata stepped forward, looked at the girl who had regained consciousness, and was looking at her vigilantly, showing a gentle smile. Although the little girl is only 13 or 14 years old now, she doesn't have the body that can make people's blood boil 3 years later, but she is already quite large in armor. So Sorata didn't stare at the little girl too much. Instead, after showing kindness with a gentle smile, he lowered his head and looked at the doll holding a white cylindrical weapon in both hands standing in front of the little girl. This is a great fighter, a great father. Even if he is turned into a doll, he can rely on the power of will to break free from the orders given by Granu as the owner of the fruit. Although his strength is very weak in Sorata's eyes, so weak that he can be crushed to death with one finger, but the fire in his heart, as well as the tenacity in his brain and soul, even he deeply admires it. Human, I can feel that you are very powerful. What are you going to do? Holding the weapon in both hands, the doll looks up, eyes fixed on Sorata. Although it has been turned into a toy, the perception of the strong will not disappear. Not to mention the strange feeling that the soul was pulled into a special space before, but Sorata just stood in front of him, and he felt that what stood in front of him was not a human being, but the sky high above. Everywhere, high above, full of oppression. This is not because Sorata did it on purpose. He usually walks outside, and he always restrains his aura. The strong can naturally feel his specialness, but the doll in front of him. Sorata stared into the doll's eyes, and there was a ripple in the blue pupil. Interesting. Also, with such a strong will, if there is nothing special, how could it be possible to break free from the control of the sugar? I think the person in front of me must have awakened observation hockey. Sorata didn't talk nonsense, stared at the doll, and spoke directly. Mr. Doll. No, it should be Mr. Cyrus, advertisement. Having said that, he stretched out his hand, hello. The doll was stunned. After being turned into a doll, the name Cyrus seemed to have disappeared from the world. His wife, his daughter, the whole of Doris Rosa, it seems that there has never been such a person. If it wasn't for the statue outside the arena, if it wasn't for the deep image in his memory, if it wasn't for the daughter beside him, if it wasn't for the deep pain in his soul when his wife died, maybe even he thought all of this was nothing, yes, a dream of his doll. A distant dream. And now what did he hear? He heard a stranger calling his real name again, not Mr. Soldier, not Mr. Doll, nor the angry Thunder Soldier on the arrest warrant, but Cyrus. After being dazed for a while, Cyrus finally came back to his senses. And the little girl behind him was obviously stunned when she heard the name Cyrus. This name has never appeared in his memory, but it has a very familiar feeling. The way he stared at the back of the doll carried a touch of sadness that she didn't realize. Who is it? Why do I feel throbbing that seems to go deep into my soul just when I hear this name? At this moment, tears burst out of her eye sockets. She numbly reached out to wipe it off, but she couldn't wipe it off. Why? Why am I crying? The little girl didn't know why, but with a blank face but tears running down her face, behind Sorata, Kuina and the others looked at it, and they all showed distressed expressions. To be honest, they don't know who the two people in front of them are, let alone their relationship, but they do know Tongshu Fruit's ability. Judging by the appearance of the doll, it is obvious that it should be a very important person to the little girl. Maybe it will be the little girl's family. And this kind of family is by her side, but she doesn't know, and she doesn't even remember everything about the doll that accompanied her at this moment. No wonder, the little girl became like this after hearing her name. Although the ability cuts off time and erases history, that feeling really exists in the depths of the little girl's soul. When that familiar name appeared in front of her again, even though she didn't know who it was. However, the instinct of the body knows it.